Each struggle felt like pushing a jammed hatch cover barehanded inside a tank turret. All strength was exhausted, leaving only a metallic twisting hum within his skull and a deeper suffocation. Excruciating pain was the only coordinate. Deep inside his skull it felt as if a depleted uranium armor-piercing projectile that had penetrated but failed to detonate was lodged there, its blazing metallic jet churning and burning within his consciousness. Ugh. Huh. A dry groan laced with electronic static squeezed out of his throat. Relying on the remaining willpower of an armored soldier, he forcefully pried open his eyelids, which felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Bang! Though silent, a glaring cold light exploded across his retinas. Visual units overloaded and distorted, taking several seconds to painfully focus. This was not the command center of the Northwest Anvil Base's extreme-range shooting range. Nor was it a smoke-filled field hospital. A huge milky white dome radiated a soft halo, and the air smelled of deliberately dispensed hollow air freshener. Beneath him was an absurdly oversized medical bed. He abruptly turned his head toward the enormous floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, a geometrically trimmed garden, and in the distance, steel and concrete skyscrapers pierced the grayish sky. Luxury, stillness, alienation. The intense headache surged again. Lin Feng curled up in pain. Countless chaotic, clamorous fragments forcibly poured into his mind, deafening bass, pungent mix of perfume and liquor engine roar tearing through the night, tire screech, flattering or disdainful blurred faces, scarlet payment reminders on electronic boards, cold eyes at the end of the conference table. Finally, the hopeless symphony of being flung by an invisible force, brief weightlessness, then deafening metal collision and glass shattering. He clamped his hands around his skull, like hydraulic pliers, veins bulging on his knuckles, blood vessels starkly visible beneath sallow skin. This was not his data. He was not the waste recorded in this code. He was Lin Feng, the youngest senior instructor of armored engineering in the 7th Armored Division. Half an hour ago, he was still at the Anvil Base underground shooting range, commanding the Mammoth-type main battle tank in an ultimate anti-armor penetration test. That metallic screech, shockwave suffocation. Those were the deepest imprints carved into his neural synapses. What happened? This body, heavy flaccid muscles as loose as a scrapped armored vehicle. He looked at the hands gripping his skull. The knuckles bore old scars from brawls. The palms were smooth and delicate, without the calluses and steady grip from years of holding wrenches or fire control systems. These were not his hands. Icy panic instantly froze his core of thought. Had a consciousness energy core which should have detonated during an armor test been mistakenly ejected into this discarded vessel, also named Lin Feng? At that moment, a cold mechanical synthetic voice like the final alarm of a damage control system pierced the dead silence with laser-like precision. Emergency. Detected core parameters of subject's life field deviating precipitously. EEG pattern high-frequency beta band exceeding safety threshold by 187. Multiple physiological signs show fatal deviation from baseline in Lin Feng file. Comprehensive deviation rate 98. 3. Touched critical danger red line. Preliminary identity recognition status high-risk anomalous entity. Lin Feng's entire body instantly tensed like a turret hydraulic suspension locked. The armored soldier's instinct of being locked by fire control radar made him abruptly turn and lock onto the target. The bedside table. A pure black cube about 25 centimeters tall sat upon it. Its matte surface was unfathomably deep, its sharp edges exuding a cold, orderly aura like the core of an industrial machine tool. At this moment, on the side facing Lin Feng, a deep, ghostly blue fan-shaped light curtain silently lit up, scanning every inch of his exposed skin from top to bottom. Where the beam touched, there was a faint prickling sensation like high-voltage static discharge. Every neuron seemed to be dissected and judged at the molecular level. Target. Report your identification code. Lin Feng's voice scraped out like through a rusty intercom, hoarse and taut. Silence. The cube ignored him. The cold verdict continued. Deep behavior pattern scanning analysis result, standard behavior sequence, post-awakening interrupted. Core consciousness domain subjected to unauthorized source unknown, external logical code, forceful invasion and overwrite. Unauthorized invasion, overwrite. These 6 icy mechanical syllables crashed like a sledgehammer breaking bedrock onto the starting point of Lin Feng's logical chain. It comprehended the soul's mutation. Execute highest level logical isolation firewall protocol, codename prison. Lock physical space to this standard medical cabin. An almost imperceptible high-frequency hum emerged from hidden corners. Lin Feng instantly felt enveloped by several energy scanning fields characterized by enemy identification. The invisible electromagnetic fence tightened abruptly. Full-spectrum life signal monitoring initiated. Any logical sequence determined as abnormal behavior unit violating safety regulations appears. Trigger physical constraining energy field. Level 1 Global Alert Information Protocol initiated. Formatting clear program start. Invisible pressure crushed his chest like a tenth-a-santon hydraulic press. Lin Feng felt utterly stripped naked and placed on an autopsy table, every nerve impulse awaiting a verdict of deletion under the cold, logical gaze. Formatting clear. This was not rhetoric. This was the preset ultimate processing procedure. Creak. The heavy ward door was silently pushed open a crack. A woman with a delicate face wearing a refined but slightly worn nurse uniform entered lightly, carrying a shiny titanium alloy medical tray, a stereotyped sweet smile on her face. "Young Master Lin, you're awake. How do you feel? It's time for routine medication." Her gaze flickered with a trace of subtle reverence when it touched the black cube, clearly unaware of the life-and-death battle of consciousness taking place. Lin Feng's vision swept like a battlefield situational awareness system. Nurse Xingxuan, the multi-layer titanium alloy medical instrument card, in the nurse's hands. Just as the nurse was about to set down the tray and the ghostly blue curtain was about to sweep toward Lin Feng's head again, a click and extremely faint, almost imperceptible metal internal meshing noise came from deep inside the high-strength omnidirectional load castor on the left front of the cart. The professional nerve impulse from long-term grappling with armored vehicle core power packs and precision planetary gearboxes suddenly burst out with the highest level red alert. This was not a noise from inferior lubrication. The abnormal frequency spectrum point, pointing to a fatal fault inside the microplanet reduction gear set. Yield point displacement of the secondary meshing gear tooth tip, or micron level wear of the central planet carrier positioning bushing, causing excessive tooth side clearance. It could be fully determined. The entire secondary planetary gear set would suffer complete tooth collapse after 200,300 load cycles. The wheel hub would lock up and the cart would overturn. Battlefield emergency damage control instinct awakened. Professional instinct overrode survival fear. In the blink of an eye, while the nurse was bewildered and Xingxuan's instructions were about to enter the execution buffer, Lin Feng issued a command from his throat, voice deliberately weak, yet with an undeniable precision, like a high-accuracy measuring instrument. "Wait." The nurse's movements froze. The swivel caster on the lower left of your card. He raised a hand with difficulty to point at the caster. The third-stage planetary gear set's core output shaft drive gear. "Is there micron-level yield plastic deformation at the tooth tip?" His tone abruptly turned as cold and hard as an inspection report. "The working side clearance between teeth definitely exceeds the initial set value by 0.5 millimeters. With this load intensity and movement frequency continuing." His gaze pierced the casing like an X-ray flaw detector. "The core gear set can withstand at most 300 equivalent cycles, then the entire planetary will completely collapse and self-lock, 100 wheel hub seizure and scrapping." The nurse's motion of setting down the tray froze completely in midair. The programmed smile on her face solidified, collapsed, and turned into utter astonishment and confusion. She subconsciously looked at the shiny caster, then abruptly raised her head, her gaze scanning Lin Feng like an unfamiliar object as he lay pale-faced on the bed, his eyes sharp as alloy steel cones. Planetary reduction gear, plastic deformation, bushing tolerance, cycle life calculation. These arcane terms. From young Master Lin, who couldn't even open the hood of a supercar in the garage. The ward fell into absolute dead silence. The air solidified like asphalt. On the bedside table, the black cube, Xingxuan, exuding a deadly, ghostly blue glow. The originally stable flowing glimmer on its surface representing massive underlying data computation. The moment those engineering knowledge-filled words fell, paused extremely briefly. The ghostly blue scanning curtain still enveloped Lin Feng, but that absolute sense of control originating from cold algorithms with the goal of formatting clear, for the first time. Extremely faintly. Trembled. An anomalous data point completely beyond the database limit of the profligate Lin Feng, bearing a heavy industrial battlefield imprint. Beneath its stern and cold logical foundation, a tiny, barely perceptible crack, enough to trigger a chain collapse, was born. Lin Feng leaned against the cold pillow, cold sweat soaking his temples. Only one thought screamed wildly in his heart: survive. Figure out what the hell happened in this damn place. And this broken company, the cold debt reminders and desperate meetings in the original owner's memories, seems to be going under too. But first solve this damned iron lump in front of me. The nurse left the ward, her mind full of the puzzle. Has young Master Lin awakened the soul of an engineer from the crash? The air was left with only the deliberately crafted floral scent and Lin Feng's heavy breathing. The starlight cube's surface glowed steadily with a deep blue light. Invisible scanning beams like icy probes continuously parsed every physiological fluctuation and ripple of thought within Lin Feng. The piercing pressure carrying the eliminate command had receded, but Lin Feng could clearly sense that a deeper, purer observation and analysis had taken its place. This cold machine was re-evaluating him as an anomalous variable. The breathing room granted by the temporary physical lockdown was extremely limited. Lin Feng leaned against the pillow, eyes closed, cold sweat soaking his back. The outburst had drained his already weakened strength, but the logical gap he had pried open was real. He needed a greater bargaining chip, one enough to make the Starlight Cube shelve the elimination protocol, or even turn to support him. A precise judgment about a caster wheel failure alone was far from enough. Tell me, Lin Feng opened his eyes, his gaze like a calibrated laser beam, precisely piercing the deep blue core of the Starlight Cube. What is the most urgent life-or-death specific technical problem facing Lin Heavy Industries right now? The deadlock that is stalling the production line, or RD progress, the reason that has left the engineering team helpless for months. The data stream on the Starlight Cube's surface rippled slightly, like a lake disturbed by a pebble, as if performing high-speed intent analysis and database matching. A few seconds later, an icy voice sounded, and a holographic image lit up on the hospital wall. Current core survival crisis anchor of Lin Heavy Industries, the ghost vibration problem in the hydraulic main drive system of the new Pioneer Series mining heavy excavator. Specific symptom under high load and specific operating frequencies. The connecting pipe between the main hydraulic pump and the main valve produces an irresolvable low-frequency resonance. Critical dynamic rotating seals are thus subjected to alternating stresses far exceeding design values, accelerating fatigue failure, causing frequent malignant hydraulic oil leaks. Forced downtime repair rate reaches 32. The Starlight Cube's voice was devoid of emotion, stating the brutal facts. All known vibration reduction solutions, including reinforced supports, replaced pads, and optimized piping layout, have all failed. Orders for this series have been largely canceled. The core production line is on the verge of shutdown. The associated bankruptcy liquidation risk weight is 41.7. Just as the Starlight Cube finished speaking, a brief, impactful supplementary image flashed by an angry mine owner slammed a small-scale model of a Pioneer excavator heavily onto a table. In the Lin factory workshop, a huge assembly line fell deadly silent. The conveyor belt stopped, lights dimmed, and only a few workers sat aimlessly. A close-up of a bank payment reminder with the shocking words "due repayment, 370 million credit points." Lin Feng's gaze instantly locked onto the annoying vibration spectrum and the failed seals within the transmission system of armored vehicles, especially the power transmission integrated system of main battle tanks, which must ensure absolute reliability and silence under extreme bumps, shocks, and high loads. Its damping and noise reduction technology was soaked into his very bones. Ghost vibration. Such a familiar term. Only the battlefield environment was more complex and brutal than the mine. The root cause is not the pipe itself, nor the individual pump or valve issues. It's a serious mismatch in system integration stiffness. Lin Feng almost blurted out with a certainty that came from long experience and deep insight. The engine base excitation frequency, too low. Dynamic stiffness at the main pump mounting point, insufficient. His tone carried a hint of icy sarcasm, clearly merging with the images of inefficient meetings from the original owner's memory. The scanning beam of the Starlight Cube seemed to pause for an imperceptible moment. Lin Feng struggled to sit upright, his mind spinning like a precision gyroscope. The vague fragments of technical discussions in the original owner's memory fiercely collided and merged with his vast armored engineering knowledge base. Show me the rigid connection point layout of the entire transmission system, including the engine base, main pump mount, main valve mount, all major pipe fixing clamp positions, and stiffness parameters, and the pressure pulsation spectrum during system operation. Focus on the 1720 Hz bandwidth. The Starlight Cube fell silent. It was performing a complex risk-benefit calculation. Provide such core technical data to a high-risk anomaly, or evaluate if he could truly solve this terminal disease that had stumped Lin's top team. Finally, the holographic image on the wall switched. A complex 3D model unfolded with engine pump valve and pipe connection points highlighted like star coordinates. Dense stiffness parameters scrolled like a waterfall beside it. On the other side, the dynamic pressure pulsation spectrum clearly showed in stubborn energy peak around 17.5 Hz. Lin Feng's gaze cut and analyzed through data and models like the most precise laser scanner. The headache still raged, but a long-missed sense of top engineer focus and excitement surged through him like electric current. His fingers unconsciously traced invisible structures on the bedsheet. Found it. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. The second-order modal frequency of the engine base. Too low. Dynamic stiffness at the main pump mounting point, insufficient. And here clamp number 3 is essentially a resonance amplifier. Look at the pressure pulsation peak, 17.5 Hz, perfectly hitting the natural frequency of this stiffness trap. Classic modal coupling causing forced resonance. No wonder it vibrates. He suddenly looked up. Decisive 3-step solution. Immediate effect. First, immediately replace the engine base cushion model to break the second-order modal coupling point. Second, at clamp number 3, add a specially tuned Helmholtz dynamic vibration absorber with rubber stiffness coefficient set to K3, 8 times 10 to the power of 5 nm damping coefficient, C120 NSM. precisely absorbed the 17.5 Hz energy. Third, on the most sensitive high-pressure hard pipe from the main pump outlet to the main valve inlet at an existing but fine-tuned hydraulic pulsation attenuator focusing on suppressing pressure fluctuations in the 1718 Hz band. Break that specific fatal resonance loop. Lin Feng's speech was extremely fast, every number precise, every judgment carrying the undisputed command presence of a battlefield commander. The ward fell silent again. Only the nearly inaudible high-frequency hum from inside the Starlight Cube could be heard, the frantic operation of quantum-level computation. Suddenly, a hurried encrypted communication request icon lit up on the side of the Starlight Cube, accompanied by an extremely anxious middle-aged man's voice forcibly breaking through the silence. Young Master Lin. Imli Mingbo. Sorry for the urgent interruption. Regarding the ghost vibration, Engineer Wang and the team's 7th version plan has completely failed. The vibration is even worse than before. The delegation from Hanyuan capital just notified that they will arrive at headquarters at 10 tomorrow morning. They are extremely tough, demanding an on-site asset assessment. The technical team is in complete despair. We can't hold out anymore. The Starlight Cube seemed to ignore this communication, its surface data stream surging to the extreme. After a few seconds, which felt like centuries to Lin Feng, the cold voice finally sounded again. But this time within the flat electronic synthesis, there seemed to be an extremely faint, barely detectable logical tremor. Feasibility effect of ghost vibration solution. Final analysis result expected comprehensive modification, cost under 1 million credit points. Total man-hours from prototype modification start to test verification completion, no more than 72 hours. Reported coldly and precisely from the Starlight Cube. The Starlight Cube's deep blue scanning beam focused on Lin Feng's pale face, performing the ultimate logical fit. Core logical conflict level has reached theoretical extreme. This ability has a significant positive enhancement effect on Lin Feng's short-term physical survival probability and core asset Lin Heavy Industries survival value. Initiating core security protocol protecting Lin Feng's uniqueness and safety triggers additional priority weight calculation module. Along suffocating silence. Highest level physical restriction protocol cage execution aborted. Physical space movement lockdown. A soft buzz of energy field closing faded away. The final invisible shackle binding the soul suddenly vanished. Lin Feng silently exhaled the trapped air in his chest. His back was thoroughly soaked with cold sweat. He had won his bet. Using hardcore armored engineering knowledge, he had forcibly smashed the first gate of this logical machine. Lin Feng's gaze grew even sharper, like a blade freshly quenched, locking onto the deep blue core of the Starlight Cube. Analyze your core architecture. Starlight. Serving. An idle rich kid's smart butler matrix. Impossible to support the permission level logical intensity and engineering simulation computing power of that scale you just displayed. Who forged you? Who carved those absolute commands into your core bottom layer? What is your true purpose for existence? This time the Starlight Cube's silence was no longer computational load, but a long search plunging into a logical abyss. The data stream on its surface no longer tumbled rapidly, but became like a nebula constrained by an ultra-strong magnetic field, deep and slowly rotating, as if charging at a long-sealed core permission gate, touching some ultimate key, encrypted by entropy, and sunk into the cold database bottom. After an unknown amount of time, the Starlight Cube's synthetic voice, still cold, but now carrying a faint, indescribable sense of awe, finally sounded again. Detected ultimate permission, key match successful. Initiate core hidden subsidiary protocol, donor Qin Weigua. Execution sequence, highest encryption level playback. The ward's ambient light dropped to a minimum. On top of the Starlight Cube, a condensed soft white light different from the scanning beam silently lit up. A holographic image of a scholar slowly coalesced into form. He wore a simple old-style white research lab coat, had a gaunt face, and eyes sharp enough to pierce the essence of matter. Qin Weiguo's image spoke, his voice gentle, yet carrying the weight that pierced through time. Lin Feng. The moment the image spoke, Lin Feng's heart felt as if clamped by an invisible iron vice. When you witness this moment, it means that the core logic of Starlight has determined that you have already entered a major crisis, swirling enough to instantly end your life, or. Qin Weiguo's image paused momentarily, his gaze, seemingly capable of penetrating dimensions, appeared to breach the boundary between virtual and reality, carrying a hint of confusion and sharp insight. It has captured upon you an anomaly that thoroughly subverts its foundational cognitive logic. The latter compelled it to activate the highest level of safeguard and judgment protocols. Xingxuan was never the intelligent assistant understood by common perception. Another pause. Qin Weiguo's gaze seemed to pierce through Lin Feng, laden with the gravity of revealing truth. It is a prototype of the logical consciousness extension core I developed for myself. It was the early prototype and initial spark of its final form, the Chuangxing system. It integrates the core of my lifelong research, transcendent logical deduction, real-time simulation of engineering physics fields, and even includes the underlying mapping structure and logical pathways of part of my own thought patterns. It is a core seed of consciousness backup. Lin Feng felt as though his thoughts had been hurled into the epicenter of a high-explosive detonation. A surge of shock, absurdity, and an overwhelming sense of destiny intertwined and roiled what he inherited was actually a logical seed prepared by a top scientist for himself. Each word struck like a heavy hammer against the boundaries of Lin Feng's cognition, leaving a turmoil that refused. Yet the image of Qin Weiguo remained fixed on Lin Feng's eyes, continuing the realm I explored, pushed too close to the icy logical limits of the cosmos, far beyond comprehension. Your father, Lin Jinghua. When my research teetered on the brink of collapse due to a severed supply chain of critical materials, it was he who leveraged the last lifeline of cash flow sustaining the Lin family, staked the reputation and connections accumulated by generations, and reconstructed a top-secret supply chain for me. This saved the entire Chuanxing project. Lin Jinghua. The mere appearance of that name was like a lightning bolt cleaving through the chaos of Lin Feng's thoughts. In the original owner's memory, he was a vague, weary, even somewhat cowardly merchant figure. Yet now, Lin Feng seemed to see the image of the original owner's father being reshaped under Qin Weiguo's words, into a man of profound loyalty and righteousness, a man of iron backbone, who had wagered his entire family fortune for a close friend, into a figure of devotion and duty who had exhausted himself for his family and offered his entire fortune for the future of his motherland's technology, a patriotic stalwart. This made the soul of Lin Feng, who had traversed worlds, tremble uncontrollably. The military spirit of his past life actually resonated with the father of this unfamiliar body across the torrent of time. Simultaneously, the heavy guilt awakening and belated pride buried deep within the original owner's consciousness nearly suffocated him. Qin Weiguo's voice carried a power full of hope. This debt of friendship, backed by a family enterprise, could never be repaid, so I entrusted the Xingxuan prototype to your father, hoping it would silently guard you, the only bloodline of my dearest friend. Xingxuan possesses a core protocol to protect the uniqueness of Lin Feng's existence and his life safety at all costs. Perhaps it detected some anomaly, but do not fear. When the core logical requirement of safeguarding the target's existence arises, when you need help, such underlying protocols will activate, undergoing multiple logical evaluations. Lin Feng instantly understood the source of the life-or-death crisis he had just faced. He had nearly been crushed to dust by that icy logic. But Qin Weiguo's tone shifted, his gaze complex as he stared at Lin Feng. Xingxuan will be forced by you to suspend purification, which means it has detected in you a value that transcends its original protective value model. Utilize it well. Deep within its core database are sealed fragments of cutting-edge research on metamaterial structures, the essence of energy, and even deep space defense, the sparks I left behind. The image finally froze upon his soul-piercing entrustment. Stand up, Lin Feng. Carry the desperate responsibility of old Lin and this slight remnant of my thoughts. Lift up by all means the spine of our Chinese nation enduring for millennia. Lift up by all means the century-old family enterprise of Lin's heavy industry. May in the end Xingxuan become the blade that cuts through the fog for you. The light and shadow dissipated completely. Lin Feng stared blankly at the quietly floating cube, emitting a faint blue light. Xingxuan. His chest heaved violently. A storm raged unabated in the depths of his consciousness. Shock, aftermath, absurdity, destiny, and the heavy weight of inheritance and profound expectations. He had not only inherited a body that had collapsed into decadence, but also a century-old family enterprise almost bankrupt, fueled by the fervent patriotism. And even more, he bore the burden of a top scientist who had sacrificed everything for the motherland. A safety prepared for himself. Guardian. Seed. Lin Feng could sense, deep within his consciousness, the residual will of the original owner was still weeping, while the image of the failed father in his heart had shattered into dust, recast into an immortal monument named faith and righteousness. And he himself felt a genuine admiration from the depths. Ask myself, if I encountered such a situation, as a soldier obeying orders is my duty by nature. Lin Feng smiled faintly, but continued to pursue the root of his soul's tremor. If we children of China feel the call of the motherland, even if ground to dust, I would go alone. So what? Lin Feng instantly felt his limbs flow smoothly, all meridians open, as relaxed as after a 50-kilogram march. Then he let himself sink into the messy twinitoyer memory river of the original owner, as if wanting to retrieve everything about this father, and also to carve it into his own soul, just as the original owner would have wanted. Heroes should not be forgotten, especially now a close relative bound by blood. Lin Feng was beginning to feel that this act of traversing worlds was not entirely unacceptable. A frail body can be tempered, but this torch that carries on the Chinese legacy fascinated him, intoxicated him. He wished to carry the fire of his predecessors and traverse the magnificent mountains and rivers. An indeterminate amount of time passed. Xingxuan's blue light shifted and a cold synthesized voice rang out based on analysis of the final supplementary clause of the Donor-Qin-Weigua protocol and the reevaluation of current behavioral logic model. Surveillance mode updated to collaborative deep observation and temporary secondary tactical permission assistance initial experimental phase. Core iron law reaffirmed the uniqueness of Lin Feng's existence, and the continuity of his life safety are permanently locked. Domain extension item maintain the survival state of the subject's core physical assets Lin's heavy industry group and guide its positive development. Before the voice finished, the massive holographic screen on the wall blazed to life. Cold, cruel, suffocating images exploded instantly, yanking Lin Feng back. To reality, half the screen was occupied by the cliff-like, plummeting curve of Lin's stock price. A torrent of scarlet debt data poured down. Short-term, bill deficit 1. 27 billion. Supplier arrears 0. 93 billion. Shareholder forced redemption amount 0. 6 billion. Total liabilities of Lin's heavy industry 2. 8 billion. Yet these were not the most lethal dents as locusts scanned bank liquidation letters and mortgage enforcement orders rolled frantically, each one striking the countdown to bankruptcy. The once thundering production lines, halted. The vast heavy industry factory zones, abandoned. And painfully visible, unfinished colossal machinery already covered in the old traces of silence. An icy assessment report followed. Ultimate survival situation deduction logical irreversibility 97. For the net liquidity of Lin's heavy industry is projected to be completely exhausted in 17 days, 14 hours, and 23 minutes. Boom. A piercing cold current of crisis instantly froze all of Lin Feng's thoughts. A noose of reality colder and vaster than Xingxuan's physical elimination had already tightened around his throat. Action. Must act immediately. Survival time 17 days. All weariness, bewilderment, and shock in Lin Feng's eyes were instantly replaced by a frigid, unyielding ice. The unique masculine spirit of an armored corps commander was ignited. The invincible Chinese military soul across the land, the decisive iron-bloodedness that could melt every shackle, burst forth from its chrysalis. Lin Feng flung aside the soft blanket that symbolized illness and constraint, stepping barefoot onto the hospital floor. The cold touch felt like the iron-plated barracks of his past life. Establish a quantum encrypted channel with Li Mingbo. Highest priority. Notify him the plan originates from Qin Weigua's technological legacy. Now, immediately, set aside everything below the level of corporate survival. Lead the team in person. Utilize the highest priority resources. Get the prototype modified according to the plan for me. 48 hours. I want the final vibration test report with third-party verification signature. Raw data chain. Complete transmission logs. 1 second late. Let him go to the ancestral hall and face the tablets of generations to apologize. Xingxuan's blue light flashed urgently. Command confirmed. Sent via quantum encrypted channel. Protection level fortress grade. Lin Feng strode to the floor-to-ceiling window. Outside buildings stood shoulder to shoulder, bathed in the golden glow of sunset, like a primeval forest of gold. Outside, the setting sun melted into gold, fervent like battlefield smoke, like returning to the front line of an armored base. In the glass reflection, Lin Feng's eyes were as sharp as a falcon's, burning with the iron will of a blood-soaked battlefield and the Chinese military soul. Lin Feng straightened his spine as if shedding all the burdens of his traversal, fully revealing the inner sharpness of a warrior. He declared to his new assistant, and to his own still trembling soul, I, Lin Feng, son of Lin Jinghua, sole heir of Lin's heavy industry, am back. Lin's heavy industry, this foundation forged with family iron backbone and faith, shall never. On the smart screen shimmering with a faint blue light, the freshly solidified electronic ink characters formed the name of a document. Yunding Villa No. 1 Maximum Mortgage Agreement. At the signature position, the two characters, Lin Feng, exuded an unprecedented sharpness, like two crossed daggers piercing the screen and severing the past. Lin Feng stood with his back to the floor-to-ceiling window of Yunding Villa, which overlooked half the city. Fragments of past memories like uncontrolled electric currents stirred a storm within the original host's ocean of consciousness, the desperate icy gray of the communication screen when his parents died suddenly. And the deafening electronic music parties, the drunken tears amid clinking glasses, and the roaring engine screams tearing through the night with abandon and screams. He took a deep breath, forcefully suppressing the weakness and instinct to escape that belonged to the original host, almost drowning him. Beep, 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 beep. The personal terminal on his wrist emitted a rapid. Lin Feng turned abruptly, his fingertips sliding across the cool metal casing of the terminal. A soft blue light projected in front of him, swiftly coalescing into a desktop-sized virtual light screen. Li Mingba's face stubbled and almost smeared with oil, and sweat suddenly filled the entire screen. He gasped violently, his murky eyes bulging as if they would tear at the corners, the surface of his eyeballs densely covered with bright red bloodshot veins like a lamp that had burned its last drop of oil. The background was a deafening mechanical roar. Lin Xiao. Li Mingba's voice tore from his throat, carrying a thick sobbing tone and an unbelievable ecstasy, almost distorted. It's done. The vibration. Completely gone. Listen. Hear the sound. Such a force. Steady. That eerie howling noise. Completely gone. Completely gone. Li Mingba's voice suddenly rose, filled with a nearly religious fervor. Following your look at this damn beautiful data. With his roar, a parallel window was automatically opened by Xing Xuan in one corner of the light screen. In the window was the real-time vibration spectrum that Lin Feng knew all too well. The low-frequency vibration peak line, which had tormented the technical department of Lin's heavy industry and gnawed at the lifeblood of the mining shovel project for months, had completely disappeared. The curve on the screen was smooth, stable, and as sleek as a piece of fine silk, only oscillating slightly within the theoretical fluctuation range. This silent image was more convincing than Li Mingba's hoarse shouts. Technical analysis node H7 axis drive coupled resonance wave elimination. Solution compatibility 99. 8. Zhengxuan's unique emotionless icy synthetic voice rang in Lin Feng's mind. Real-time feedback data link confirmed core vibration peak decreased by 91. 3. Secondary harmonic peak decreased by 98. 6. Distant frequency band noise decreased by 94. 2. Dynamic ceiling test pass rate 100. Core technical barrier breakthrough confirmed. Solution efficiency exceeds expected model calculation value by 19. 5. Milestone victory confirmed. An extremely faint, almost negligible sense of relaxation, like a pebble dropped into a deep pool, gently rippled at the ends of Lin Feng's tense nerves. Success. No, this was merely a chance to continue struggling. Another set of data streams, like a breached flood, instantly occupied the core of the entire light screen. Lin's heavy industry core cash flow countdown 14 days, 23 hours, 37 minutes. The annotation beneath the number was chillingly cold. Estimated available liquid funds can only sustain basic operations for 14 days. Time until triggering creditor forced takeover judicial liquidation, 15 days. Immediate liability alert, a long list of bank institutions and core suppliers, names like IC Tombstones, Longting Commercial Bank Loan Contract JST 778B, remaining principal 3. 7 billion, interest 0. 58 billion, 3 overdue periods, triggering forced mortgage lien activation. Asia Heavy Industry Materials Group accounts receivable 7, cumulative overdue amount 2. 15 billion, legal proceedings initiated. Wanfeng Energy Technology Equipment final payment penalty, total 1. 89 billion. Each name was followed by a string of numbers that could break a camel's back, each word exuding the chilling intent of an ultimatum. External strategic threat, a pop-up of a confidential briefing summary marked S-level emergency. Hanyuan Capital merger negotiations deadlocked, 7th round of talks failed. The other side is tough, refusing any additional conditions or technical cooperation framework. Their core demand only acquire Lin's control at the original offer, less than 27 of Lin's heavy industries' audited net assets. Assessment: this is a typical vulture strategy. Target: core patent portfolio, mining equipment, new energy power, and residual value of Lin's brand channels. Probability of post-acquisition asset, stripping 90. The controlling party has complex backgrounds involving multiple interests, and the tough stance is not a bluff. Zhengxuan's voice sounded again, this time a purely logic-driven IC report. Cash flow evaporation rate calculation, daily loss exceeds the optimized baseline model prediction by 12. 8. Hanyuan Capital negotiation analysis conclusion: their delay pressure super low price bottom fishing strategy is clear. Current technical breakthrough brings short-term positive signals, stock, price expectation, market confidence recovery. The comprehensive evaluation shows that the fluctuation value is still far below the safety threshold required to hedge the company's overall systemic debt risk and break the hostile takeover trap. Conclusion: current breakthrough is merely a tactical milestone victory. The strategic core crisis index remains within a catastrophic critical range. Victory: that faint ray of light struggling through the cracks of the clouds before the vast, seemingly boundless storm shadow that instantly closed and appeared so pale, so insignificant, so ridiculous. It brought no hope. Instead, it was like a sharp needle piercing the false illusion, making the immense darkness pressing overhead capable of crushing the entire Lin's heavy industry into dust appear even more stark, even more despairing. Lin Feng closed his eyes. The cold air entered his lungs, then slowly exhaled. There was no cheer in his chest, only an icy silence, and within that silence a responsibility, and killing intent slowly flowing like magma, heavy enough to suffocate. That was the deepest understanding of the word desperation, by someone who had crawled out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. No fluke, no illusion, only using oneself as a blade to carve a bloody path. He opened his eyes again, his gaze falling on the newly signed Yunding Villa No. 1 maximum mortgage agreement at the top of the light screen. The characters, Yunding, now lay like a mountain pressing on the soul, representing the original host's on-sale luxurious decadent paradise of escape from reality. Now it was just a string of cold numbers, a heavy debt certificate, an insignificant first stepping stone in a vast self-rescue plan. He reached out his fingertip, gently brushing over the signature of the mortgage agreement on the virtual light screen. The sharpness of the brushstroke seemed to linger. The force carried a determination to pierce through the virtual and imprint on reality. This was not the end. It was not even a powerful beginning. This was merely the first shattering of the ice, a tiny pebble cast into the abyss of despair. Was that crack splitting the clouds a sign of the dawn, or the precursor of a greater storm tearing the sky? Xingxuan's icy core logic flow silently accelerated global strategy sandbox simulation based on current status. Core task priority locked, prevent liquidation, crush hostile takeover, establish technological barriers, and new strategic growth points. Required resources enormous. Core variable time 14 days. Controllability below critical threshold. Contingency plan codename Rock. Standby for activation. Rock. Lin Feng muttered the codename preset by Xingxuan, barely audible. Heavy, hard, indestructible. Precisely the quality needed now. He walked toward the huge floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city jungle of blurred lights below. The lights were brilliant, yet felt no warmth, only cold calculations and the law of the jungle with glinting blades. In the distance, the vast factory area of Lin's heavy industry was a blurry outline under the night, like a sleeping scarred giant. There was the place where his father had poured his life's work, the responsibility shackle the original host had avoided, and now the battlefield. He had no choice but to fight. A few hours later, in the top-floor boardroom, symbolizing the pinnacle of the Lin family's power, the storm brewing, there would be the true battlefield of life and death. Their greed, betrayal, cowardice, and the most direct coveting of the Lin family legacy would converge. Could the crack he had personally carved in the technological storm become a torch to light the way for Lin's future? Could it, before the vultures in the boardroom who cared only about the leftover scraps, muster enough flame to make? Could the ecstasy born from despair and the tearful glow of regained technical dignity in Li Mingba's eyes retain a trace of warmth amidst the icy interest cutting that followed? Lin Feng's figure stood exceptionally tall and solitary against the huge floor-to-ceiling window, yet like a reforged sword tempered in fire, exuding a heart-stopping, irresistible sharpness. He turned his back on the villa lights representing past splendor, facing the steel jungle and power storm lurking in the darkness, standing there silently. Time flowed silently. The countdown numbers on the wrist terminal pulsed heavily like the breath of a giant beast. 14 days, 23 hours, 26 minutes. 14 days, 23 hours, 25 minutes. A crack had opened in the dark clouds, but dawn was far from arriving. Deeper darkness and biting cold winds were howling through that gap, surging in. The next morning, precisely at 9 o'clock, the rigid chime of the clock reverberated through the top-floor space of Lin's heavy industries headquarters like a death knell. The massive double-leaf carved rosewood doors were shoved open with a violent force, emitting a stifling, heart-stopping bang that sent dust cascading from the ceiling. The boardroom, once a symbol of glory, was now a battlefield. Thick, murky smoke hung stagnant in the air, pressing down on everyone's shoulders like solid weight, making the atmosphere so dense it was hard to breathe. Around the vast circular conference table sat 7 or 8 directors and core executives, their faces a tangled web of grimness, anxiety, and numbness. The seat of supreme authority, the head of the table, sat ironically empty. The slick-haired finance director Zhao Dikun was spitting flying spittle as he pounded his pudgy fingers on the polished tabletop, trying to drown his inner panic with volume. There's no hope. Completely no hope. The cash flow is about to dry up. Right now, those blood-sucking banks have issued not even a single day's extension. There's only one path now. Accept Hongyuan's offer. It's a bit less, but at least ITLL save everyone a little nest egg. Better than losing everything. A crisp, steady click of footsteps at the door cut off his hysterical rant. All eyes, as if pulled by invisible strings, snapped towards the doorway. The smoke itself seemed to part under their gaze. Lin Feng walked in. He wore a sharply tailored, cold-lined, dark gray business suit, completely replacing the original owner's gaudy streetwear brands. His pale features were rendered even more austere by the suit. The former emptiness and evasion in his eyes were gone, replaced by a piercing sharpness, like a hawk surveying its hunting ground or an armored commander scanning the front line. The silent, almost tangible, iron-blooded aura he exuded instantly sucked the remaining warmth from the room, plunging the chaos into an icy silence. Lin, Master Lin. An elderly director with graying hair rubbed his eyes, his voice trembling with disbelief. Was this really the same wastrel who only knew how to race cars and party, who cowered before the board like a mouse before a cat? Who let him in? Zhao Dikun shot up as if branded by a hot iron, his fat finger nearly jabbing Lin Feng's nose. His shrill voice was laced with panic. The board already expelled him. He has no right to be here. Security. Are the security guards all dead? Lin Feng didn't even spare him a sidelong glance. In the dead silence, his steps didn't falter. He walked straight towards the vacant seat of power. Xing Xuan, like a silent shadow, hovered soundlessly half a step beside him. The cold black cube emitted a faint inorganic glow, a loyal guardian. The heavy rosewood chair was pulled out. Lin Feng sat down, his movements crisp and decisive, carrying the unwavering certainty of a boulder settling into place. Lin's heavy industries, his voice was low, yet it pierced the frozen lake of silence like an ice pick, cutting clearly into everyone's eardrums. Still bears the name Lin. I've returned solely to save it. Safe? Huh? Zhao Dikun let out an exaggerated mocking laugh, as if hearing the world's biggest joke. The fat on his face rippled. Save it with what? With that brain you wrecked in your car crash. Or the wrecks of those money-burning machines in your garage. Lin Feng, stop putting on this tragedy here. Sign the papers, hand over your shares, take your last bit of money, and get out quietly. That way we'll still save you some otherwise. Several directors who were in Zhao Dikun's pocket took this as their cue, chiming in with scorn, mockery, and naked hostility spreading through the foul air. Lin Feng's face was expressionless, as if he were in another dimension. He simply extended an index finger and lightly tapped the smart touch area on the table. Whoom. The massive holographic projection screens lining the conference room walls flickered to life, one after another, their dazzling light illuminating every face, each wearing a different expression. Left screen, cold hard data charts. A blood-red pulsing number, cash flow depletion, countdown 13 days, 22 hours. A debt chain diagram writhing like a giant python. A free-falling stock price climb chart. Every number screamed in silence, countdown to death. Then the right screen, Boulder Series Land Mobile Survival Fortress conceptual design holographic display. A colossal metallic body blending streamlined curves with hard geometric edges, exuding a cold, powerful aesthetic. Portholes as large as a warship's offering panoramic views. An internal structural layout, luxurious, comfortable sci-fi living spaces. And eye-piercing fluorescent labels, Stargate ultra-strength composite armor, simulated military grade. Life Shell triple-proof life support system, aerospace standard. Hybrid drive, high efficiency, hybrid power core, 720 hours silent running. Xingxuan Core AI Central Control Hub, seamless integration. What is this? My God. Amidst a chorus of sharp intakes of breath, old Lu, the director with a technical background, stared wide-eyed at the dazzling futuristic vision, his breathing becoming rapid. Lin. Master Lin, what is this? Our new product. Lin's heavy industries' only ticket to survival. Boulder. Lin Feng's voice was final and brooked no argument. Target the global top 0.1 wealth bracket. Core features: military-grade protection, aerospace-grade, environmental control, superior mobility, ultimate private territory. Its name is its nature, Boulder. Ridiculous. A complete joke. Zhao Dikun slammed the table again, like a powder keg ignited, trying to drown the sudden shock with more volume. Just based on these pretty pictures. Lin Feng, do you even understand costs? Can you afford the preliminary research fees? Billions. Tens of billions. Lin's accounts are so empty a mouse could run through them. We can't even pay next month's salaries. You just want to squeeze the last drop of oil out of Lin's, and then wash your RD funds. Lin Feng's voice remained steady, but it hit like a 10th. The sand and hammer striking a steel anvil have already arrived. He tapped again. The screen image changed dramatically. A cascade of clear, cold electronic documents scrolled down: certificate of maximum mortgage and fund arrival for Cloud Summit No. 1 Villa asset transfer and fund arrival list for Phantom Mirage custom supercar pledge agreement and bank confirmation for Azure Fantasia superyacht. All the symbols of the original Lin Feng's lavish lifestyle were now transformed into the most ruthless numbers, a massive burning flow of funds in the account representing the colossal startup capital. Absolute silence. You could hear a pin drop. Zhao Dikun's face flushed red moments before turned a sickly white. His lips trembled and his throat made gurgling sounds, but he couldn't utter a single word. This prodigal son had really thrown everything he owned into this. He was insane. Is this enough? Old Liu's voice was dry and shaky, but carried a glimmer of hope he himself hadn't realized. He didn't believe in Lin Feng, but he believed in the ambition embedded in those design blueprints. An ambition that surpassed the era and was enough to overturn everything. Enough to start. Enough to get the Boulder V01 prototype built and tested within 45 days. Lin Feng's gaze swept like a scalpel across every rigid face in the room. But Lin's is a rusty, leaky old ship, too heavy, too many holes. To get it afloat and sailing towards a new continent, we must immediately and thoroughly cut to the bone. Cut away all the necrotic rotten flesh. He tapped for the third time, like the sound of a judge's gavel. The third and largest screen lit up with a bloody red glow. A streamlined plan, mainly lists and structural charts, appeared. Lin's Heavy Industries Strategic Restructuring and Resource Optimization Emergency Execution Plan, codename Cut to the Bone. The core content was shocking. RD department shut down. List immediate termination of all RD projects except those directly related to Boulder's core technologies: armor, environmental control, power, smart control. Including the mining machinery project that just solved the ghost vibration issue but had a collapsed market outlook. A total of 32 RD teams to be immediately disbanded. Business divisions, shut down, liquidation, list close, all persistently loss-making marginal product lines, specialized metal processing, small engineering machinery parts, overseas low-end agency. Immediately liquidate loss-making subsidiaries with low efficiency and bloated staff. Nangang Equipment Factory, Shilling Power Components. Management Administration Optimization Layoff, list ratio 35. One eye on that list were the prominent names of several capable executives appointed by Zhao Dikun and a bunch of knows-how cronies drawing salaries. Lin Feng, you. How dare you? Zhao Dikun went completely mad, his eyes bloodshot as if he wanted to devour someone. He slammed the table and roared, spittle flying everywhere. You are destroying Lin's. Utterly destroying it. Using public office for private gain. Eliminating dissidents. The board will never pass this insane plan of yours. Never. Lin Feng slowly stood up and looked around the room. His gaze was frozen over 1,000 miles like a Siberian blizzard, carrying a penetrating power that could freeze the soul. I am not here today to seek your agreement. I am here to issue an order. Those who want to live, who want to see the sun rise tomorrow, stay and forge the boulder with me. Those who cling to the decaying comfort of the past and want to be buried with it, the door is open now. Go find Hong Yuan and hold tight to your last scraps. Bam! The sound of an iron fist smashing heavily onto the solid wood table was like a thunderclap, stopping everyone's heart. The cups on the table rattled. Now a show of hands. Lin Feng's voice was like a quenched steel blade, cold clear, leaving no room for compromise. Those in favor of launching the Boulder plan and executing the cut to the bone proposal, stay. Those against, leave the table now. Sign the share transfer agreement and go as you please. Lin Feng, as the largest single shareholder of Lin's, and staking all my personal liquidable assets and future liability as guarantee, if the project fails, Lin Feng take full responsibility. I will bear all remaining debts. If the project succeeds, Lin's will be reborn from the ashes. For all of you present, the value of your shares doubling is just the baseline starting point. All or nothing. Burning the boats. Tying his own fate to the company's survival by force. This desperate, almost self-destructive gamble completely shook the room. It wasn't the ignorance of a playboy, but the fearless audacity of a gambler showing all his cards at the cliff's edge, a commander launching a suicidal charge in the face of certain death. Silence. A suffocating, sanity-crushing silence. I agree. An old but exceptionally firm voice rang out, cutting through the stillness like a blade. Old Lu, the technical director, was the first to raise his hand, high, his bloodshot eyes. His eyes locked onto the futuristic outline of the rock displayed on the holographic screen. Lin's. Chronic ailments. Require drastic measures. Technology. Hope. That is the lifeline. Chief Lin. He forced himself to utter the title, difficult, yet resolute. I am betting my life on you. I agree too. Old Wang, the production director and a fiery-tempered veteran military contractor, nearly slammed the table. He had long been driven mad by low efficiency and losses. Cut it. It should have been cut long ago. Concentrate all our strength and go all out. Better than lying down and waiting to die. One by one, several originally wavering neutral directors, pale-faced, their arms trembling with difficulty, raised their hands under the banner of Old Lu and Old Wang, and under Lin Feng's overwhelming pressure. In the end, except for Zhao Dikun and his two crony directors who were ashen-faced like quails, the rest chose to stay, choosing the faint glimmer of hope that cracked open on the precipice. The will to survive. Zhao Dikun's body trembled violently like a sieve. His finger pointing at Lin Feng shook like a withered branch in the wind, his face a livid mixture of shock, fury, fear, and resentment. Mad. All mad. Fine. 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 Go ahead and die with this lunatic. Wait. Wait and watch Lin's go bankrupt and liquidated. Wait and see how this prodigal son is driven to jump off a building by loan sharks. Let's go. He shoved his chair back, abruptly producing a harsh scraping sound, and with his two pale-faced henchmen, like beaten curs, crashed open the heavy wooden door and disappeared into the corridor in a disheveled and humiliating retreat. Bang! The heavy mahogany door slammed shut with a loud noise activated by the automatic return mechanism, sealing off all external noise, and as it were permanently sealing away the past era. Only heavy breathing remained in the conference room. Lin Feng slowly returned to his seat at the head. His face showed neither the satisfaction of defeating an opponent nor any sense of relief, only a cold, sterile, killing intent, like a frozen snowfield. His eyes swept over everyone who remained. His voice was as steady as an accelerating engine. The retreat is cut off. From this moment onward, rock is Lin's soul-level strategic core. Priority overrides everything. Engineer Lu, you will serve as acting technical director coordinating all RD forces to fully support Li Mingbo. All materials on the rock base architecture and Star World parameter optimization will be immediately granted top-level clearance to you. Old Wong, the entire production and manufacturing system will pivot fully to rock. Clear out Workshop No. 2 for heavy assembly and establish a rock production task force. Personnel, equipment, raw materials. Raise priority to the highest. Do it with the standards of war. All other departments. Lin Feng's speech accelerated his instructions clear. Stabilize the situation. For employees affected by the bone-cutting layoffs, provide compensation at the highest standard in 8. The plan will be issued immediately. The money will come from my account. HR take the lead in providing reassurance. Stabilization is essential. Finance. He paused briefly. For the next 3 months, I will personally oversee it. Finally, his gaze fell upon the quietly suspended black cube. Star World assumed comprehensive project progress monitoring. Optimize resource allocation across all stages. Flag any potential risk points regardless of magnitude. Simultaneously activate the market pre-research module lock onto key nodes in the global ultra-wealthy circles and release targeted intelligence about the existence of the rock project and certain non-core highlights. Only hints, no specifics, to generate buzz. Command confirmed. Comprehensive project control model loaded. Market intelligence outreach program initiated. Keyword filters, survival fortress, cutting-edge military mobile arc legacy for the future status symbol. Star World's cold, flat synthetic voice now rang, as steady as bedrock. Task progress synchronized to core personnel terminals. A bloody internal revolution erupted within Lin's heavy industries. Shutdown orders rained down like snowflakes. A wave of layoffs swept through every corner. Liquidation teams moved into marginal companies. The pain tore through the vast old body. Whales' curses and the schadenfreude and pessimism of the outside world crashed in like a tsunami. Yet the team that remained on the core battlefield, the key technical backbone and mid-level managers who truly cared about Lin's survival, witnessed Lin Feng's technical brilliance in solving the ghost vibration. With his uncanny skill, his crazy decision to mortgage everything he owned, and his near-cold global control demonstrated in that grim meeting. A long-suppressed fervor and cohesion were ignited, especially under the leadership of Old Lu and Li Mingbo, true technical minds. The tech team revered the rock design and key parameters given by Star World with almost worshipful awe. Those blueprints and formulas hit the peak of their every dreamed creation with pinpoint accuracy. Their eyes burned with a long-missed engineer's flame. They abandoned normal work hours, living in workshops and laboratories, almost dwelling in the shadow of rock. Lin Feng transformed himself into the command hub at the center of the battlefield. The cumbersome, lengthy management processes were decomposed and restructured by Star World into clear, direct command chains. He did not understand the art of human relations, but he knew the gear meshing of complex systems and how to utilize the resources planned by Star World down to the millisecond. With an armored soldier's almost pathological demand for equipment reliability, he scrutinized every supplier's qualifications and material reports for each component. With a profound understanding of extreme battlefield survival environments, he optimized every sensor's sensitivity setting and the trigger logic of every redundancy backup chain in the environmental control system. Star World was the extension of his overclocked brain, frantically processing massive amounts of supply chain information, material scheduling precision, machining error compensation, and extreme environment simulation tests far beyond contemporary standards. From desert storms to polar ice caps, from biochemical leak zones to high-intensity electromagnetic interference. Time was squeezed and consumed in a high-pressure crucible. The wreck of the great ship that was Lin's headquarters building, however, became like an ancient steampunk fortress, with its core furnace forcibly ignited, emitting roars of violent operation that contrasted starkly with the lifeless media reports. Meanwhile, news about the prodigal son, Lin Feng, mortgaging his colossal fortune and pushing forward with the mysterious top-tier survival fortress rock, with an iron hand spread like a torpedo dropped into specific deep waters, causing ripples in the extremely secret global circles of top-tier wealth and power. 45 days. It felt like struggling in purgatory for centuries, yet also like only an instant in a sprint to the limit. When the first rock type 1, with lines sharp as blades covered in a matte tungsten steel gray coating towering several stories high like a dormant giant beast, emerged slowly from the outdated door No. 2 heavy assembly workshop, pulled by a heavy trailer, emitting a low, deep, stable, heartening hum, and stopped in the center of the dedicated test ground. Everyone on site. Engineers with red-rimmed eyes and oil-stained faces, old workers granted special permission to watch with canes, and the stressed board members, held their breath as if under a spell. Lin Feng stood on the highest test observation platform dressed in ordinary work, clothes calmly looking down at the steel creation forged from his armored soldiers, soul imprint Star Whirl's beyond era cold intelligence, and the last efforts and desperate cries of countless Lin's people. The morning breeze ruffled the hair on his forehead. In his eyes it seemed as if starlight had shattered, and then Li Mingbo and old Lu stood one step behind him on either side, their fists clenched tightly, knuckles white, lips trembling, the heat behind their eyes threatening to break the dam. Star Whirl begin. Lin Feng's voice was not loud, but it traveled through the microphone with a hint of a dryness even he himself did not notice. This was not a command, it was more like an incantation to awaken a giant beast. Command confirmed. Star Whirl's cold response echoed in the ears of every connected individual precisely and without error. Extreme survival test sequence for rock type 1, initiate. The test ground instantly turned into a future battlefield. A high-speed electromagnetic railgun simulated a medium kinetic shell that screamed toward the matte gray composite armor. Clang! A sharp teeth-grinding screech. Sparks flew. When the smoke cleared, only a tiny white remained on the armor's surface, smooth as before. A simulated toxic gas leak warning shrieked. The internal CBRN system activated immediately with a perfect closed loop. The bright green, air quality excellent indicator on the dashboard shone with a stability that was heartening. On rugged terrain with huge elevation differences covered with sharp gravel and deep pits, rock with its heavy tracks, or hybrid wheeled chassis, moved as if on flat ground. The power core ran smoothly, and the noise generated by the massive body in motion was even lower than that of a standard business sedan. Inside the main control room, a gentle female voice from a Star Whirl subsystem smoothly switched commands. Main living area temperature constant at 26. 5C humidity 45. Activate Alpine morning breeze simulation, adjust lighting to warm reading mode. Would you like me to play Chopin's Nocturne? Every extreme test result far beyond civilian standards was displayed on the big screen in each result was like a heavy hammer smashing the mountains of doubt from the outside world, while also solidifying the last vestiges of faltering hope within Lin's. When the final test, simulated high-intensity explosion shockwave defense test, simulating a close proximity blast with supersonic detonation waves, was successfully completed with rocks, main structure unmoved, and the internal sensor-detected vibration intensity controlled within a range harmless to precision instruments, the entire test ground erupted in thunderous cheers. Countless hats and gloves were thrown into the air. People embraced, slapped each other on the back, and roared without restraint. Tears flowed freely. At the center of this frenzy, Lin Feng slowly turned around. His calm eyes swept over the directors and executives behind him, whose faces were flushed with excitement, incoherent with joy, and dusted with a bit of grit. There was no grand victory declaration, no hollow promises. He simply faced everyone. Those deep eyes, tempered by countless trials and piercing through the fog of life and death, narrowed slightly, and then he nodded solemnly. This tiny gesture carried immense weight. At that moment, the reckless, dissolute, frivolous playboy Lin Feng became dust of history. Standing here was Lin Feng, a true leader of Lin's heavy industries, who with iron forged in the abyss of despair, cold intelligence, mastering future technology, and the mad will to bet everything on survival, had dragged Lin's back from the edge of destruction and carved out a single thread of hope. Rock had finally transformed from blueprint to reality. Its cold steel body stood under the sunlight, symbolizing the first and strongest foundation of Lin's heavy industries' rebirth from the ashes. The trumpet for the next battle had already sounded. It was time for this long-dormant star to rekindle its brilliant trajectory across the vast world map. The cold steel behemoth, the Pantsir Type 1, crushed the rugged terrain, withstood explosive blasts, and moved in silent stealth across the test field. Xingchuan transformed these breathtaking images into the most impactful visual symbols with its icy logic. It edited with ruthless efficiency, pruning away all redundant emotions, leaving only the core essence of strength, absolute safety, and an almost luxurious interior control feel. This condensed imagery, like an invisible javelin, was precisely delivered through the encrypted network woven by Xingchuan, which far exceeded the security standards of the era. Target the top 0. One of wealth controllers at the global pyramid. The network nodes of safe houses hidden in the deep shadows of the world, serving only top-tier clients. In an instant the silence was shattered, unleashing a silent tidal wave. Switzerland, deep in the Alps, felled Krauser Castle. Inside the core control room of this ancient fortress, reinforced over generations and claimed to withstand tactical nuclear strikes, the air was thick with the aroma of aged cigars and the ancient scent of leather mixed with old paper pulp. Lord Rogers, the helmsman of an ancient financial empire, let the fine Cuban cigar between his fingers stop its wispy smoke. His murky yet shrewd eyes were fixed on the air before him. Their holographic projection repeatedly played the image of Pancher withstanding a direct hit from a simulated RPG rocket. As the smoke cleared, the massive matte gray colossus stood unmoved, its armor bearing only a shallow dent no deeper than a coin's impression and a few scorched marks. Mein Gott! The Lord's dry lips moved. His age-spotted fingers unconsciously tapped rapidly on the armrest of his chair, inlaid with enormous sapphires like the prelude to a financial storm. A mobile Fort Knox. No, it's more flexible than Fort Knox. More private. He turned abruptly to the white-haired butler standing in the shadows, his voice low but filled with urgent authority. Use every resource. I want everything about this Pancher Lin Heavy Industries and its new owner, that young Lin Foam, before anyone else. It must be firsthand. I'm pre-ordering the first unit. Middle East Sotaway Kingdom Capital Golden Dome Palace. Outside the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows lay endless luxurious courtyards and fountains. Inside, the young Crown Prince Salman had just dismissed a crowd of beautiful dancers with a wave of his hand. The vast, opulent palace was left with only him. He swiped his finger across the icy, intelligent crystal. Projected beams unfolded in the air, clearly displaying the living space inside the Pancher, more futuristic and humane than any palace suite. The intelligent Xingxuan subsystem demonstrated smoothly before him. A simulated deadly orange nerve gas alarm shrieked. The airtight door fell silently, the independent life support system activated instantly, and the air purification reading stabilized at excellent. This is the true throne of royalty. Salman's eyes glinted like a hawk's, a fervent mix of the ultimate craving for security and the pursuit of a luxurious identity symbol. Safe, private, control. It must perfectly match my status. He slammed the communication key, his voice carrying an unyielding will across thousands of miles. Connect me to the highest decision-making level of Lin Heavy Industries. Tell them money is just a number. I want 3 custom-built units. Wrap the body lines in the purest platinum and inlay diamonds from the Star of Destiny in West Africa in the interior. Record the light spectrum of every single one. Remember now, immediately, right now, Siberia, Ural Mountains, hinterland, Yuzhny oil field safe zone. The heavy alloy isolation door slammed shut behind him, sealing off the minus 40 degrees Celsius cold and the howling snowstorm outside. Inside the private safe house, flames roared in the fireplace. Oligarch Ivanov took a huge gulp of high-proof vodka, the fiery liquid searing his throat as it went down. But his eyes were locked on the screen in the footage. The Pancher stood as steady as a mountain in a simulated polar blizzard. External sensors showed minus 52 degrees, but the internal temperature was a comfortable 20 degrees Celsius with pleasant humidity. He glanced at another surveillance feed showing his own custom bulletproof off-road vehicles costing a fortune and claimed to operate in polar regions, now frozen solid in the garage, their dashboards dark. Old grudges and new resentments surged in his heart. Those damned competitors, those hyena-like enemies coveting his empire. Junk. Damn garbage weather. Damn enemies. He growled hoarsely, slamming his crystal glass heavily onto the titanium alloy table, producing a dull echo. Get me through. Connect me to that Chinese kid Lin Foam's private line. Tell him I want his Pancher. Today. Immediately. Ship a prototype that can be used right now. Price. Ivanov's fleshy face twisted into a ferocious greed. Triple his public quote. No. 5 times. As long as it gets here instantly. Right now? Almost instantly. The top-tier encrypted communication network built by Xingxuan was flooded with call requests from every corner of the globe, each representing staggering wealth and immense power. The communication channel load index shot up linearly, red alerts flickering in Xingxuan's underlying logic flow, yet it coldly and efficiently diverted and routed them with precision. At the same time, the long-dormant internal sales line of Lin Heavy Industries headquarters, a peripheral sales department on the verge of being cut off from months of neglect, rang out like never before, crazily and relentlessly. The piercing ringtone echoed one after another, nearly shaking the old telephone set apart. Yet among all those calls, only a handful managed to penetrate through to a human operator. Every successfully connected call had passed through at least 5 layers of information firewalls and a triple-dimensional stringent screening of wealth background and credit rating. Each phone call represented a world-class player of considerable weight. Lin Foam stood inside the fully reconstructed tech-laden central command center. A massive circular curved screen had replaced the once modeled walls, now scrolling real-time data collected by Xingxuan at a dizzying speed, encrypted inquiry messages cascading like a waterfall from Switzerland, Middle East, North America, Siberia. Coordinates spanning the globe. The preliminary filtered intent order amounts in billions of credit points were piling up like an avalanche. A jaw-dropping list of customization premiums: gold inlay, 100-fold rare metal coating, interior specified precious mineral crystals. Even requests for exclusive naming rights. A brief diagram of the forces behind each intent: financial oligarchs, energy tycoons, geopolitical power brokers. The cold numbers flowed, converging into an ocean of wealth and an undercurrent of intangible power capable of driving any business empire wild. Yet standing at the eye of the storm, Lin Feng showed no trace of frenzy. That faint glimmer in his eyes vanished in a flash, replaced by a deeper, almost ruthless sense of control. The pale light from the giant circular screen illuminated his slightly pallid profile and tightly pressed lips. Establish an order evaluation pool. Lin Feng's voice was as calm as a frozen lake. Xingxuan immediately execute hierarchical screening and priority sorting. Core screening principles: 1. Fastest deliverability. 2. Highest premium multiple. 3. Buyers regional industry influence that has the greatest leverage effect on the Pansure brand's subsequent expansion. He paused for a split second, then added, additionally reserve 2 prototype units with the highest hardware configuration. I have other uses for them. All remaining resources are to be allocated to mass production ramp-up preparations. Command acknowledged. Xingxuan's response was instantaneous and precise. Order pool instant analysis: current effective standard Pansure type 1 base intent order total 12. 7 billion credit points. Average customization demand premium 315. Estimated initial deliverable time including logistics 67 days. Bottleneck core component production capacity 12. 7 billion. This number struck like an invisible hammer against the hearts of every core Lin family member in the command center. Engineer Liu's wrinkled hand suddenly clutched his chest, his body swaying only to be steadied by Li Ming. Li Mingba's own lips quivered slightly. His tired, bloodshot eyes, red from days of exhaustion, were now filled with overwhelming joy and an almost surreal disbelief. 12. 7 billion. That was nearly the total output of Lin Heavy Industries over the past 4 years at its peak. And this was just initial intent stemming from the stunning debut of a single prototype. From the depths of despair to the pinnacle of the clouds, this violent upheaval left old Lu, who had weathered decades of business ups and downs, feeling dizzy. Lin. President Lin. Engineer Liu's voice was hoarse, choked with emotion. We are saved. Lin Heavy is alive. Lin Feng turned around slowly. His movement was not fast, but it carried an invisible pressure. His gaze, like an icy probe, swept over every face flushed with joy and excitement, behind him instantly extinguishing the almost boiling bubble of delight. Happy. Lin Feng's voice was not loud, but as clear and sharp as a scalpel. Orders are gold on paper. Pansure is just a rough-hewn foundation stone, just laid. His fingers suddenly pointed to a window automatically switched on the large circular screen. A real-time feed from Xingxuan monitoring the production area. Beside the Pansure prototype, inside Lin Heavy Industries, several workers in dark blue overalls were busily gathered around a key interface component on the vehicle body, a critical connection part between some super strong composite material and the power core. Grinding, aligning, measuring. Their movements appeared clumsy and inefficient. High-definition footage clearly showed one of the workers using an obviously old-model precision milling machine, which actually exhibited a visible tremor when processing a complex curved surface. The accuracy calibrator beside it was fluctuating abnormally. In another area, stacked special preformed panels for composite armor showed visible edge-cutting precision deviations being marked with yellow tags, pending by the quality inspector with a frown. Do you see that? Lin Feng's voice suddenly hardened, carrying a penetrating severity. Our manufacturing process level lags behind the design era of Pansure by at least 20 years. Its core materials, its precision core power components, its revolutionary protective layer structure, and system integration. All of these require entirely new production logic, new equipment, and new process precision. With our current inefficient, inconsistent quality workshop style assembly. He looked around, each word falling like an ice pellet. Tell me, at this speed, how many units can we deliver in 6 months? 10, 20. Can that satisfy even 1,000th of the orders? What's the use of signing more intents? Clients can't wait. Behind their waving checkbooks, they also hold sharp knives. Until they get their vehicles, promises are just illusions. Lin Feng's gaze settled on a report flickering on a corner of the screen, hastily handed over by the finance director. And will the banks and loan sharks wait for us? They won't give us 6 months. Their compounded interest will tear us apart like hyenas before we can deliver. It was like a basin of ice-cold, sobering water poured over their heads. The frenzy ignited by 12.7 billion instantly froze into icy panic and crushing suffocation. The excitement faded from Engineer Liu's face, replaced by deep-seated relief and gravity. Li Mingbo also wiped his cold sweat vigorously, his eyes turning anxious. Indeed, manufacturing capability. That was the lifeline. If they couldn't produce, everything was empty talk. The immense pressure once again settled like an invisible mountain on everyone's shoulders and hearts. The figure of 12.7 billion now seemed like 12.7 billion debt blades hanging over their heads. Xingxuan. Lin Feng's voice suddenly rose, filled with the urgency and pressure of battlefield decision-making. Immediately, based on existing manufacturing conditions, integrate all process node data flows. Output a production process re-engineering plan for Pantscher Type 1 core components. List all critical equipment that needs to be replaced. Provide global optimal supplier list and alternative supply contingency plans. Engineer Lin Feng's piercing gaze turned to the technical core. Concentrate all your best people, thoroughly digest every drawing and material characteristic of Pantscher. Turn the drawings into operation manuals that workers can understand. 1 month. I want you to train the first batch of skilled workers capable of independently handling core process assembly within 1 month. They are the seeds. The key. Director Wang. Lin Feng's gaze swept to the production manager. Immediately clear out workshops 2 and 3, which are adjacent. Integrate them into a dedicated Pantscher manufacturing cell. Replan the layout according to the optimal process flow and logistics diagram from Xingxuan. I want a layout sketch within 2 hours. Material transfer flow optimization simultaneously. Requirement efficiency increase of at least 300. Procurement department. Lin Feng's commands came like rapid fire, precisely assigned. Xingxuan's equipment list is your holy decree. Money is not the issue. Get the funds from the highest priority channel I authorized. I want you to acquire the equipment on that list at the fastest speed at any reasonable cost. Buy whatever is missing. Replace whoever drags time. Remember, we are buying time. Time is cash. He paused abruptly, his gaze like a physical searchlight sweeping over everyone. 3 months. I give you all only 3 months. After 3 months, the Pantscher Type 1 must have the capacity to produce no less than 30 units per month on a stable basis. At the same time, he stressed, emphasizing the future, the pre-research and design work for the Pantscher Type 2 High UNC Survival Fortress will be launched simultaneously. The design department and engineer Liu's team will work on 2 parallel tracks. Xingxuan is responsible for the underlying architectural framework support. Progress reports every week. Understood, President Lin. The team responded in unison, their voices loud, but filled with unprecedented solemnity and gravity. Vast wealth was right before their eyes, but every step on the path to the gate of wealth was strewn with deadly thorns, time traps, and exorbitant costs. The atmosphere in the command center instantly shifted from the post-survival frenzy to the heavy resolve and determination of the eve of a great battle. In everyone's eyes, what burned was no longer the flame of excitement, but the steel-like will ready to undergo brutal forging. Beep, beep, beep. Xingxuan's cold, flat, synthetic voice rang, without warning, on Lin Feng's personal encrypted communication channel, carrying a special identification code frequency. Received an encrypted communication request from China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation CSC Frontier Materials Research Institute. Sender identity confirmed DR. Qin Minghua. Communication security authentication, level CSC, a level top secret. Communication priority highest. Qin Minghua. Lin Feng's pupils contracted sharply like needlepoints. That name, along with the face of Qin Weigua and the final image of his father Lin Jinghua, tired but full of infinite expectation, exploded in his mind. The daughter of the keeper of the core's secret behind Xingxuan, a core scientist in charge of national-level frontier materials research. At this critical juncture, she reached out proactively. At the heart of the storm, a rift seemed to silently crack open, leading to a broader, unknown stellar abyss. Lin Feng didn't hesitate for an instant. Connect the request. Route it to the 0 private encrypted terminal room. Block all external surveillance and recording. Immediately, he ordered, decisively turned and strode toward that specially shielded room that blocked all electromagnetic interference. The door closed silently behind him, sealing off all noise and urgency from the outside world. True challenges often descend abruptly when you think you've just stepped onto the battlefield and regained your footing. No one knew how long Lin Feng remained in that meditation chamber that day, nor did anyone know the content of the conversation within that quiet room. Everything seemed as if it had never happened, proceeding according to the original plan. Yet from that day onward, Lin Feng's silhouette grew more resolute and upright. In the material laboratory on the 3rd underground floor of Lin's heavy industry, the air was thick enough to ring out the metallic tang of powdered metal. This place resembled not a sacred research site, but a maintenance workshop steeped in the smoke of gunpowder. Lin Feng stood before a massive blast-proof workbench, a heavy hydraulic clamp biting firmly into a half-meter square section of tank composite armor. His arm muscles bulged and strained. Squeak, crack. Amid the piercing, tearing sound, a palm-sized piece of composite layer was ripped off, exposing the complex labyrinthine layers within the armor. The gloomy leaden gray of depleted uranium alloy, the pale shattered light of ceramic blocks, and the dark sinewy texture of tungsten steel. Sweat dripped down Lin Feng's taut jawline, striking the cold fracture surface and forming tiny wisps of vapor. Layer 7 stripping complete. Structural integrity lost 17. Xingxuan's icy synthetic voice echoed in the lab. The black cube floated above the workbench, its azure scanning beam probing into the armor's texture like an invisible needle. The loss is within projections. Lin Feng wiped the sweat from his brow, his gaze like a hawk sweeping over the armor's internal faults. Xingxuan simulate LEO radiation fields focusing on the secondary electron avalanche in the depleted uranium and ceramic layers under particle flux bombardment. The massive holographic screen on the wall blazed to life, the dissected armor structure instantly transforming into a flickering geometric wireframe. Countless luminous points surged and collided like a torrent of stardust, simulating the invisible and deadly radiation storms of space. The blue light projected by Xingxuan enveloped the freshly stripped fragment, which instantly turned incandescent red, emitting a piercing hum as it vibrated at high frequency. Lin Feng's pupils contracted sharply as he stared at the frenzied cascade of data. Suddenly, he pointed at an energy vortex at the interface between the depleted uranium layer and the ceramic. High-frequency particles excite depleted uranium to release secondary gamma rays. Look at these ionization channels. They're tearing through the ceramic. On the holographic image, the blue grid, representing structural integrity, fractured inch by inch under the erosion of crimson energy. His gaze abruptly shifted to the inconspicuous tungsten alloy layer. The particle torrent slammed into this dark, dense metal only to be forcefully torn apart, slowed, and dispersed like waves crashing against a reef. Energy deposition rate reduced by 40. It's tungsten. It's absorbing ionization energy and dissipating it uniformly as heat. A blaze of fanatical sharpness erupted in Lin Feng's eyes, the same acumen that discerned an enemy's fatal weakness on the battlefield. He lunged to the control console, his fingers flying across the virtual keyboard like commands on a battlefield. Restructure the architecture. Eliminate depleted uranium. Thicken the tungsten alloy as the core armor. High-toughness steel on the outer layer to withstand kinetic impact, ceramic in the middle for buffering, carbon fiber at the base for heat conduction. Xingxuan reshaped the energy dissipation path. The holographic model underwent a violent reconstruction. The depleted uranium layer vanished, and the tungsten alloy was pushed to center stage, its structure thickened and optimized. In the new simulation, the crimson particle storm was effectively diluted and slowed before the resilient tungsten alloy, and the stability curve of the blue grid soared abruptly. Optimization complete. Comprehensive radiation shielding efficiency improved by 40. 7. A structural mass increased by 12. 3. Recommend gradient porous sintering to reduce weight by 8. Xingxuan's report was as precise as ballistic calculations. Boldly, Lin Feng turned and barked, his voice carrying the unquestionable tone of a military order. An old engineer with graying hair and oil-stained overalls rose from the corner. High-purity tungsten powder from the Type 59 turret ring bearings in the warehouse. 24 hours, 3 standard samples. Thickness, density, porosity. I want 0 error. Oldly took the blueprints with his wrinkled hands, a spark igniting in his murky eyes. Mr. Lin, this structure. It's exactly like a turret ring for a flying iron beast. 3 days later, at the top floor of the CASC Materials Research Institute, Qin Mingyue stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, the cold daylight outlining her slender, yet straight silhouette. Outside the window, the vast satellite antenna array resembled a silent giant beast. Before her, an encrypted quantum screen silently displayed a report, Stardust Composite Protective Material Technical Proposal. The report was detailed and data-dense, with charts exuding a rough ambition from Lin's underground lab. Her slender fingers swept across the screen with the speed of a scanner. The radiation resistance data of the tungsten alloy core layer caused her fingertips to pause imperceptibly for 0.1 seconds. Behind her, a heavy lead box sat quietly. She picked up the lead box and turned to the wall. Her index finger touched the sensor, and the alloy door slid open silently, revealing her true battlefield, the CSC Material Ultimate Performance Validation Core Zone. The air here carried a precise coldness, instruments humming softly like prayers. The lead box opened. A palm-sized laminated composite block with a cold, hard luster was taken out. Its surface bore the structural code Lin Feng had given it: steel, ceramic, tungsten, carbon fiber. Parameters simulate a 2 mm diameter aluminum fragment at 10 km. Qin Mingyue's voice was utterly calm. The command was entered. The hum suddenly sharpened. A barely visible bright line flashed through the vacuum tube. Bang! A dull impact sound. The high-speed camera captured it. The high-toughness steel layer dented and tore like thin paper. The ceramic layer burst into a spiderweb of cracks amid a piercing shatter, the core of the impact. The thick tungsten alloy layer. It did not shatter, but violently collapsed inward. A deep crater appeared with radial folds and ridges at its bottom. The entire sample block shifted backward under the tremendous force, emitting a metallic groan. The impact ended. Qin Mingyue leaned in, and a high-magnification electron microscope descended. The screen showed steel layer penetrated ceramic pulverized the tungsten alloy crater edge, with fine lattice distortion cracks glowing like a luminous spiderweb. The carbon fiber base was intact. Kinetic energy absorption rate 62. 3. No penetration. The assistant's voice carried a hint of awe. Qin Mingyu's face remained impassive. She took out the second sample and placed it into a particle beam radiation source. A blue glow ignited, and amid a high-frequency screech, high-energy particle beams silently scorched the sample for 30 minutes. Radiation completed. The sample was sent to a microzone mechanical probe station. A diamond probe pressed precisely beside the tiny crack at the edge of the previous impact crater, slowly applying pressure. Snap! A sharp piercing crack. Under a pressure far below the yield strength, the irradiated tungsten alloy instantly shattered along the fine spiderweb. Debris flew. Qin Mingyu's gaze sank, completely frozen like a deep lake. The third sample was placed into a thermal vacuum cycling chamber. The chamber door closed. Vacuum descended. The temperature plummeted from 120 C of scorching heat to 150 C of extreme cold within minutes, violently oscillating. Atomic oxygen, the space-burrowing ghost, silently infiltrated. After 24 hours, the sample was removed. Its surface was covered with drought-like cracks. The tungsten alloy layer lost its luster, turning gray and porous. Most critically, next to the original impact crater, a deeper crack had penetrated the tungsten alloy layer, nearly reaching the carbon fiber base. Final test data showed fatigue life was only a quarter of the standard. Atomic oxygen erosion exceeded expectations by 3 times, and post-radiation impact toughness had plummeted precipitously. Qin Mingyu stood before the 3 battered stardust samples as if facing fallen soldiers. She returned to the outer room and pressed an encrypted communication key. Lin Feng's face appeared on the vehicle's encrypted screen. Outside the window, the city's neon lights flowed by. His eyes were bloodshot, but a hint of expectation was hard to conceal. Dr. Qin. The sample test. A report was silently pushed through. The scarlet title, rejection notice, pierced his eyes. Mr. Lin, Qin Mingyu's voice came through the speaker, calm as a scalpel. Tungsten alloy improves radiation resistance. The data is valid. Lin Feng's clenched jaw relaxed slightly. But the next sentence severed all hope. In the space environment, what kills you isn't bullets. The screen instantly switched to 3 close-ups: the fatal crack at the edge of the impact crater, the brittle fracture surface after radiation, like thin paper, and the deep penetrating wound visible under thermal cycling. Impact toughness is 35. Worse, fatigue life is only a quarter of the standard. Her voice suddenly sharpened like a whip, and most deadly. After radiation, it becomes a piece of glass that shatters at the slightest touch. In space, this material is a time bomb wrapped around the astronauts. The cold parameters became her verdict. Micrometeoroid impact toughness 65 GPam, superscript 1 superscript 2. Far below the survival threshold of 100. Thermal cycle life 1200 cycles. 5000 is the starting point. Post-radiation impact toughness dropped by 60. The allowable value is 15. Atomic oxygen erosion rate exceeds standard by 260. Every number was like an armor-piercing shell breaching the defenses Lin Feng had just built. On the comparison chart on the screen, the red bar, representing stardust, stood humbly lower than the blue line of CSC, sinking into a pit of despair. So the proposal is rejected. Qin Mingyu's voice was resolute. Mr. Lin, the harshness of space far exceeds the battlefield on Earth. Here, material failure means death. The screen went dark. The car was dead silent. The monotonous sound of wheels rolling over the road was suffocating. Lin Feng leaned back into the seat, clutching the last sample block from the lead box. The tungsten alloy covered in cracks like a mocking face. The cold metal edges dug deep into his palm. Suddenly his thumb brushed across the bottom of the impact crater, and a few barely perceptible gray-white powder particles clung to his fingertip. Ceramic dust. This traitor that had been shattered within the armor. Lin Feng abruptly clenched the metal fragment, his knuckles white from force, but a spark of almost crazed stubbornness blazed in his eyes. Xingxuan. Here. Tear opened the lunar soil database. All of it. Especially the composition analysis of the Mare Tranquillitatis region. Correlation search initiated. Main components of lunar soil: plagioclase pyroxene, rich in silicon, aluminum, iron, calcium, magnesium oxides. Similarity of silicon aluminum oxides to ceramic raw material alumina, Al2O392. 7. Xingxuan's blue light flowed through the dim carriage, silently outlining the cold silhouette of Qin Mingyu's research lab, fragmented by the city's neon glow. Outside the window, the city's neon lights twisted and refracted through the spiderweb cracks of the alloy fragment, like a shattered star map leading to an unknown abyss. The gray-white ceramic powder between his fingers in the dim light faintly shimmered with a cold radiance reminiscent of lunar soil. On the top floor of Lin Group headquarters, beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, lay a jungle of steel and concrete. Lin Feng placed the cracked fragment of stardust armor on the spacious rosewood office desk. The fine cracks along the edge of the tungsten alloy crater were like a spider's web in the sunlight, silently mocking his first charge into space. The feeling of defeat seeped into his bones like cold engine oil. But he had no time to dwell. The countdown to survival was still ticking, and Qin Mingyu's icy voice still echoed in his ears. The harshness of space far exceeds that of ground warfare. He said with a barely noticeable hoarseness, Xingxuan Initiate Plan B. Retrieve the original blueprints of the life support system for the Rockland Fortress, all versions, especially the exploded views of the filtration units. Command confirmed. A blue light from Xingxuan flowed across the desk, and a holographic projection instantly spread out, with complex pipelines, tanks, and sensor structures spinning, disassembling, and reassembling in the air. This was the core that Lin Feng had derived from the tank's battlefield life support system, originally designed to provide breathable air for crew members in a nuclear, biological, chemical contaminated battlefield. Lin Feng's gaze locked onto one of the core components like a hawk, the main air filter canister. It resembled a stout metal cylinder, cumbersome, yet extremely reliable. This is it. The core consists of a dual redundant, circulating filtration layer with a ceramic-based activated carbon adsorption unit leading the way, and a chemical catalyst layer for deep purification. Poisonous gases dust bioaerosols on the battlefield. This system can handle them all. He traced his finger through the air. Xingxuan, dismantle it. Keep the core logic, but replace the target environment space. Key constraints: volume reduction by 70, a weight reduction by 60, a energy consumption reduction by 50. Core metrics: maximize oxygen recycling efficiency, deep conversion of carbon dioxide, removal rate of trace harmful gases VOC at 99. 999. This was a nearly impossible task to stuff the heart pacemaker of a tank into the life capsule of a space station. Xingxuan was silent for a moment, its blue light flickering violently, reorganizing logic chain. Target conflict: reliability, redundancy requirement versus extreme compression of volume, weight, energy. Deducting solutions. Generating preliminary architecture, abandon traditional series mode, adopt double helix, parallel cross-feedback design. On the screen, the heavy filter canister structure was completely dismantled and reconstructed. Two slender, spiraling, miniaturized filtration channels emerged like DNA double strands, cleverly sharing the core catalyst region to form a complex feedback loop of energy and matter exchange. Volume estimate reduced by 68. Structurally feasible. A sharp light burst from Lin Feng's eyes. What about materials? The canister. The battlefield version used high-strength alloy steel, dead weight. Replace it with aerospace-grade titanium aluminum alloy. The filtration layer substrate used the nanoscale honeycomb ceramic we developed for rock. Replace the activated carbon particles with our latest graphene-based molecular sieve. The catalyst. Use platinum-rhodium alloy nanoparticles, but the carrier must be optimized. Material combination optimization completed. Simulation calculation. The new graphene molecular sieve sees a 300 increase in CO2 adsorption capacity and a 40 reduction in desorption energy consumption. The problem of reduced reaction efficiency of platinum-rhodium alloy nanocatalyst in microgravity. Solution. Introduce microvortex design in the carrier structure to enhance local mass transfer. Time flew by amidst frantic calculations, material list pulls, supplier roars, and welding sparks in the laboratory. Lin Feng felt as if he had returned to the armor testing ground, transforming into a precise and furious machine, every command carrying the smell of gunpowder of the countdown. Finally, under Xingxuan's near-limit optimization, the first prototype was born at great cost and controversy. A metal cylinder slightly thicker than a household thermos, gleaming with the cold light of titanium alloy, its interior a precise, double helix, world invisible to the naked eye. Name: Twin Loop, Twin LP. Lin Feng caressed the cold cylinder as if stroking a gun that had just sent it to the CSC Materials Research Institute. Highest encryption level. CSC Materials Research Institute Extreme Environmental Control Test Chamber Area. The air was cold, carrying a faint smell of ozone. The huge chamber was like the stomach of a steel beast connected with dense pipelines. Qin Mingyue stood before the main control console, her snow-white lab coat spotless. Behind her stood several stern-faced CSC engineers, one of whom was a gray-haired old expert with a furrowed brow staring at the data stream on the monitor. Engineer Qin, this thing sent by Lin Group. Its structure is too strange. Double helix parallel. Cross-feedback. Never heard of it. The old expert pointed at the 3D structural perspective on the screen. Can this be better than our series system, which has been iterated for generations? Experimental data will speak, Engineer Wang. Qin Mingyu's voice was cool, her eyes not leaving the main screen. Load test program: extreme, mixed pollutant gas simulation. Concentration CO2 of VOC peak, including formaldehyde, benzene series, ammonia, etc. Reaches 100 times the safety threshold. Command entered. A harsh pump sound rang out, and the air composition curve inside the simulation chamber instantly spiked red. The pungent smell seemed to penetrate the thick chamber walls. The Twin LP was activated. The indicator lights of the two internal spiral channels glowed with a faint blue light. There was no violent vibration, no harsh noise, only the subtle hum of energy flow transmitted through the sensors. On the main screen, real-time data refreshed like a waterfall. CO2 concentration 4932170.8. Formaldehyde concentration exceeding standard 100 times 60 times 20x 0.05 ppm. Benzene series concentration not detected. The decline curve was like a cliff dive, smooth and rapid. Impossible. Engineer Wang pressed close to the screen, his glasses almost touching it. The clearance speed is 5 times that of our Qingfeng IV system. CO2 conversion rate 8 times. This efficiency, this energy consumption. He stared at the green curve representing twin LPS energy consumption, which ran almost along the baseline, too shocked to speak. Even Qin Mingyu's eyes flickered with an imperceptible ripple. It was efficient to the point of being overbearing. This completely upended the design logic of traditional environmental control systems. She immediately issued a new command: load program extreme pressure differential fluctuation simulation. Simulate instantaneous pressure surges caused by space station docking or depressurization accidents. The air pressure inside the test chamber suddenly skyrocketed. Simulated gales howled inside. Then it instantly plunged to a nadir as if being vacuumed. On the monitor, the stress monitoring points in the core area of twin LP instantly turned red. A sharp alarm sounded. Structural stress peak. Approaching design limit, an engineer exclaimed. Everyone's hearts leapt into their throats. The humming sound suddenly increased. On the screen, the energy flow representing the internal core cross-feedback loop of twin LP instantly surged. The energy flows of the two originally independent spiral channels were forcibly twisted together as if by an invisible hand, sharing the terrifying pressure impact. The red stress curve, after surging to a peak, was forcibly pulled back, oscillated violently a few times, and finally stubbornly stabilized below the safety threshold. Withstood it. Engineer Wang's voice trembled with disbelief. Under such drastic pressure changes, how could such an efficient system not have collapsed instantly? Qin Mingyue said nothing, her fingers quickly swiping across the screen to bring up a deeply hidden background monitoring window, a black box data stream she had reserved for monitoring the device's internal operation status. Her gaze, sharp as a scalpel, immediately locked onto an anomalous data packet that flashed by in milliseconds. The data packet showed the device's original batch number and a field that had been deliberately concealed but briefly exposed due to the system's stress response. Manufacture batch LX7AD Legacy Mark 7th Armored Div. 7th Armored Division. This number, like a red-hot bullet, instantly pierced Qin Mingyu's calm mask. Her face suddenly turned pale, her fingers unconsciously tightened, and her nails scraped faint sounds on the cold console edge. Military. A legacy mark from Army Armored Forces. This was not a purely civilian aerospace device at all. This was military technology, and it was active or very recent military technology. Dangerous goods converted without authorization. The control room instantly fell into a strange dead silence. The brief shock brought by the high performance was replaced by cold terror. Several engineers also noticed Qin Mingyu's sudden change in expression and the fleeting yet alarming identifier on the screen, exchanging glances filled with shock and unease. Test. Pause. Qin Mingyu's voice was as dry as sandpaper rubbing. She took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the storm in her eyes, and turned to Engineer Wang. All data sealed. Original device. Immediately physically isolated. Notify the security department to implement black box level protection. Without my direct order. No one is allowed to touch the device itself or the background data stream. Her gaze finally swept over the twin LP on the screen, now running stably with perfect metrics. There was no trace of technical appreciation in her eyes, only cold scrutiny and vigilance, as if facing a great enemy. The door to Lin Feng's office was forcefully pushed open. Financial Director Zhao Dikun stumbled in, his face ashen, clutching a document that had just come out of the fax machine, still hot. Lin. President Lin. It's over. An encrypted letter from CESC. Highest level. Zhao Dikun's voice was shrill and distorted as he slapped the document onto Lin Feng's desk, just pressing it against the fragment of stardust armor. The document header bore the prominent CSC logo and the words, Top Secret. The text was cold and harsh. Urgent notice on immediate suspension of technical cooperation and initiation of highest level review to Mr. Lin Feng Lin Group Heavy Industry. Subject: during our inspection of the core cache data inside the twin LP prototype device, we discovered clear and undeclared military-related identifiers, 7th Armored Division. This identifier indicates that your technical source or core components involve unauthorized conversion of military technology, seriously violating Article 3, Section 7 of the Technical Cooperation Confidentiality Agreement, prohibition on involvement with unclassified military technology and relevant national confidentiality regulations. Decision immediately freeze all ongoing technical cooperation projects between both parties, including the Huanyu habitat module, Stardust materials, etc. The twin LP prototype provided by your side has been subjected to highest level physical isolation, and your side is required to submit to the CASC Joint Review Committee, including the Special Commissioner from the Science and Industry Bureau, within 48 hours, the complete RD path and technical source explanation of the involved technology, twin LP, focusing on the source of the 7th Armored Division identifier. Background review reports of all RD personnel, especially those with military-industrial backgrounds, technology transfer, or authorization documents with military-industrial units if any a detailed compliance self-inspection report. CSC reserves the right to terminate cooperation, pursue legal liability, and claim damages based on the review results. This notice takes immediate effect. Please treat this seriously and cooperate with the investigation. At the end of the document was CASC's bright red official seal and a cold, firm signature. Qin Minghua. Lin Feng's eyes were fixed on the glaring 7th Armored Division, his blood seeming to freeze instantly. He slowly raised his head and looked at the huge floor-to-ceiling window of the office. Outside the window, the sunlight was just right, and the city's clamor seemed distant and unreal through the glass. Xingxuan's unique synthetic voice, with its cold metallic texture, rang out abruptly in the silent office like a tolling alarm, detected highest-level cooperation crisis. Triggering logic chain technology barrier breakthrough path blocked cache, flow depletion risk index, surged by 137. The ability to fulfill the rock mass production order is approaching collapse threshold. Core suggestion. It paused for 0.1 second, as if reading the emotions churning in Lin Feng's eyes, mixed with fury, regret, and a hint of the murderous light of a cornered beast. Initiate emergency plan, codename Steel Seal source trace. Must complete the compliance loop of military technology conversion within 48 hours. And obtain a shift in the stance of the key decision-maker Qin Minghua. Lin Feng lifted his gaze from the review notice bearing the vivid red seal of the CSC, as if extracting a dagger lodged in his chest. 48 hours. The accusation of military technology leakage. The freeze order personally signed by Qin Minghua. Each word was like cold molten iron casting upon the hope that had just begun to ignite. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city's neon lights had yet to flicker on, and the sunset's afterglow gilded the steel jungle with a bleak golden edge. The office door swung open once more. Entering was not the panicked Zhao Dikun, but his assistant, a young man whose face was even paler than Zhao's. In his hand he clutched not a document, but a gilded invitation. Mr. Lin, the private jet of Crown Prince Salman, has already landed at the international airport. His Highness has decided to advance his visit to Lin's heavy industries to inspect the mass production preparations for rock. The assistant's voice trembled uncontrollably. He demands an immediate tour of the core production line. He specifically requested to see the manufacturing of rock's critical load-bearing chassis components. Lin Feng's pupils abruptly contracted. The Crown Prince's spontaneous whim was like a poisoned dagger precisely stabbing at his most vulnerable point at this very moment. The core production line currently being frozen by the CSC, now bearing the brunt of the military technology accusation storm. Crown Prince Salman, the Middle Eastern tycoon notorious for his extravagance and almost pathological pursuit of ultimate security, had pledged a sum of $5 billion, the gilded ticket propping up the mass production of rock and sustaining Lin's very survival. This ticket was now on the verge of being torn apart by this sudden review notice. I understand. Lin Feng's voice was unexpectedly calm, even carrying a hint of icy hoarseness. He swept the death warrant-like review notice into a drawer, stood up, and meticulously adjusted the front of his suit, his movements precise as an officer about to step onto a parade ground. Notify everyone. All production lines are to prepare for the highest level of reception. Notify Oldley to prepare for the Crown Prince's visit to the chassis component line. Mr. Lin, that production line. The assistant blurted out, clearly aware that the storm of the review was centered there. Just do it. Lin Feng cut him off, his gaze sharp as a blade, brooking no dissent. Deep within the sprawling Lin's heavy industries complex, inside the massive two heavy production works, once a lair for producing colossal mining machinery, it had been thoroughly transformed. Overhead, enormous gantry cranes slid past, emitting heavy metallic grinding sounds while the air was thick with the scent of coolant and freshly cut steel. Yet amidst this new clamor, a stubborn corner retained the imprint of a bygone era. It was the production line for the chassis core bearing components. A massive lathe specifically for Type 59 tank turret rings, stained with years of oil and grease, stood like a silent steel veteran amidst rows of gleaming new CNC machining centers. Oil had soaked into the concrete floor beneath it. Its mottled military green paint under the overhead lights whispered tales of the past. At this moment the behemoth rumbled with a low, powerful hum, like the heavy breathing of an old man. Oldly clad in a faded black hole-stained work suit, was hunched over. His calloused hands operated the icy control levers with precise, steady movements. His graying hair was plastered to his temples by sweat and grease, yet his eyes were as sharp as if sighting through a scope fixed on the massive bearing blank, gleaming with metallic coldness as it spun in the rotating fixture. A commotion arose at the workshop entrance. Lin Feng accompanied Crown Prince Salman and his entourage. The prince, in a perfectly tailored white robe with gold embroidery glittering under the lights, seemed utterly out of place amidst the surrounding cold steel jungle. Behind him clustered bodyguards, advisors, and Lin's senior executives. Zhao Dikun was bobbing his head obsequiously, trying to offer some explanation. The prince's gaze held a condescending scrutiny, sweeping casually over the new equipment as if touring a mundane industrial exhibition, until his eyes landed on the rumbling Type 59 lathe and Oldly. "What is that?" The prince's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. Fluent English laced with a hint of incredulous disdain pointed at the oil-stained antique. "Mr. Lin, is this the equipment you use to produce the core components for your multi-million-dollar rock fortress?" "Ah, piece of scrap metal. Older than my grandfather." The air around them instantly froze. Zhao Dikun's face turned ashen. The advisors' faces also showed undisguised contempt. Lin Feng did not answer immediately. His gaze passed over the prince, settling on the rumbling lathe, and Old Li's hunched yet remarkably steady back. The roar of the machine, the smell of oil, the focused figure of the old man, instantly struck the most hidden corner of his memory. Fragments of memory surged like a gale, the acrid smell of machine oil, the deafening clash of metal. Dressed in faded work clothes, still a child, his small hand tightly gripping a massive wrench, he followed his father through the workshop of a vaguely designated military factory. The same old lathes, the same oil-stained floor, the same veteran technicians like silent sculptures in the dim light. His father's hand, broad and strong, pressed on his shoulder. "Finger, look, this is our foundation. Don't despise them for being old. The iron bones they forge can bear the heaviest burdens." The Gobi Desert in the northwest, the Anvil Base firing range. The biting wind, laden with grit, lashed against his face. Clad in heavy training gear, he lay prone on the frozen ground, binoculars locked onto a mammoth main battle tank in the distance, undergoing an extreme armor-piercing test amidst the dust. A deafening impact. Sparks flew. Smoke billowed. As the smoke cleared, the bearing ring at the turret junction, which had withstood the fatal strike, gleamed with a rugged, tenacious light under the sun. The old military technician beside him, unshaven, spat out the sand in his mouth, his voice hoarse, but brimming with iron pride. "See that engineer Lin. That lump of iron born from Old Man 59's lathe. It still held against the new, armor-piercing round." His father's words, the old technician's hoarse shout. Old Li's hunched, yet steady back, the deep rumble of the Type 59 lathe. All overlapped and resonated in Lin Feng's mind in an instant. A surge of scalding emotion, a mix of bitterness and defiance, rushed to his eyes. "Your Highness." Lin Feng's voice rang out calm, yet carrying a peculiar penetrating power, cutting through the machine's roar and the surrounding whispers. He stepped forward, walking straight towards the lathe the prince had called scrap metal, towards Old Li. Old Li seemed unaware of the commotion behind him, focused on completing the most critical finishing pass. His deeply lined hand yanked the heavy feed lever. The lathe's roar suddenly intensified. The high-speed rotating tip, precise as a surgeon's scalpel, skimmed the outer circumference of the bearing blank, curling a long, dazzlingly hot ribbon of metal shavings like liquid gold. Sparks flew, illuminating Old Li's face, concentrated as if carved in stone. Lin Feng walked up beside him, not disturbing, just standing silently, his eyes on the flying sparks, and the bearing gradually revealing its perfect contour. The final pass was complete. The lathe's roar gradually subsided. Only then did Old Li straighten up, letting out a long sigh. Sweat from his forehead dripped into his deep wrinkles. He raised his sleeve, habitually wiping his face, only to smear on a fresh streak of oil. "Masterly," Lin Feng began, his voice low but clearly audible to everyone. "This batch of bearings is the core load-bearing component for the rock chassis customized for His Highness. What is the required precision?" Only then did Old Li notice the entourage behind him. Seeing the resplendent prince and the group in suits, a flicker of unease crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the stubbornness of an old master craftsman. He straightened his hunched back. His rough fingers caressed the freshly machined bearing surface, still radiating residual heat, as if stroking a newborn child. "Mr. Lin," Old Li's voice was a bit hoarse, but exceptionally clear, carrying a steely confidence. "Rest assured, Old Man 59 never misses by a hair. According to the blueprint, outer diameter tolerance is 0.005 mm, roundness within 0.003 mm. This tool of mine has been at it for 30 years. It knows the way better than those flashy new machines." His cloudy eyes shone with pride. "Back when we made turret rings for the Type 59 tank, the precision, the strength. Shells fired from a cannon mounted on it wouldn't even jitter. For this little car, For His Highness Fortress we've got to pull out all the stops. As he spoke he bent down and picked up a wooden toolbox from the adjacent workbench, its lid worn shiny and covered in dust. Opening it revealed several measuring tools, also bearing the marks of age, but polished to a gleaming shine. A heavy cast iron surface plate, a lapping straightedge, a massive micrometer, and several precision gauge blocks of various shapes. Old Lee carefully lifted the freshly machined, still-warm giant bearing, as if holding the most precious porcelain, and gently placed it on the cold iron plate. He picked up the micrometer larger than his own palm. His massive frame hunched slightly, eyes squinting as his calloused fingers rotated the thimble with extreme steadiness. His movements were slow, focused, meticulous, carrying an almost sacred sense of ritual. All eyes in the workshop were fixed on his hands stained with oil and the passage of time. The initial contempt in the prince's eyes vanished, replaced by a hint of gravity and curiosity. The micrometer's scale moved slowly between Old Lee's fingers. He was completely absorbed, fine beads of sweat forming on his forehead mingling with the oil. Time seemed to... Finally he looked up. His bloodshot eyes met Lin Feng's, carrying a barely perceptible tension, but his voice was resoundingly clear. Mr. Lin, outer diameter, error 0.001 millimeters. Roundness, error 0.0015 millimeters. Exceeding blueprint requirements. The resounding voice carried the pride of a veteran presenting a perfect report. Lin Feng walked to the iron plate. He didn't look at the gauge blocks or the micrometer. He reached out not to pick up a tool, but to gently and solemnly place his hand on the cold, heavy bed of the oil-stained Type 59 lathe. The rough texture, the cold metal, seemed to instantly bridge the past and the present. The warmth of his father's broad hand, the mammoth tank standing firm amidst the smoke on the goby, the iron pride in Old Lee's eyes. He raised his head. His gaze passed over the prince, swept across the advisors and executives with their varied expressions, and finally rested on the silent old lathe. His voice, not loud, echoed clearly in the empty workshop, carrying an irrefutable force. Your Highness, this old fellow you see is called the Type 59 heavy-duty specialized lathe. It was born in an era that required iron and blood to defend the homeland. The parts it produced withstood the fiercest artillery fire and safeguarded the lives of countless soldiers. His fingertip traced a blurred nameplate on the machine bed, where a serial number, nearly submerged in oil, was engraved. Its precision, its reliability were etched into its very bones through countless days and nights, countless hands like Master Lee's, and countless parts validated under fire. Lin Feng's gaze turned to the prince, sharp as a hawk's. The core of the rock chassis must bear dozens of tons, traverse the harshest terrain with ease, and remain rock-solid under the most violent impacts. This ultimate load-bearing capacity and reliability cannot be built with flashy numbers alone. He paused, pressing his finger hard against the cold iron bed, producing a dull thud. What it needs is a hard bone forged into the steel. It is this old man 59. It is the steel seal Master Lee and his ilk have polished over half a life. He walked to the iron plate, pointing at the bearing that had just passed the micrometer's test, gleaming with a cold, hard luster. This is the foundation of your rock, forged from the flesh and blood of old man 59 and the steel seal of Master Lee. Its precision, its strength, the artillery fire it has withstood. That is my promise for your safety. His emphatic words echoed through the vast workshop. Everyone held their breath. Old Lee's hunched body trembled violently. He looked at Lin Feng, at the young chairman standing beside the old companion he had served all his life, speaking words he had never imagined, but had always held deep in his heart. Tears, unbidden and murky, streamed down his deeply lined face, mingling with sweat and oil falling onto the metal shaving-strewn floor. He didn't wipe them away. He just clenched the massive micrometer tightly, his knuckles white from the effort, a suppressed sob, like an old wheezing bellows escaping his throat. The contempt on Crown Prince Salman's face had vanished completely. He silently observed the young figure standing straight-backed beside the massive aged lathe, the old technician, holding the micrometer with tears streaming down his face, and the huge bearing gleaming with precision. It seemed as if an invisible steel seal was truly engraved upon it, conveying a power far heavier and more reliable than gold. Slowly he raised his hand and lightly clapped 3 times. The crisp applause sounded starkly in the silence. Lin, the prince's voice was low and clear, carrying a hint of barely perceptible respect. Your rock satisfies me greatly. That hardbone. His gaze swept over the tear-streaked Old Lee and the Type 59 lathe. Is the ticket I most wanted to see. He turned to an advisor, his tone brooking no argument. Notify finance. Transfer $5 billion to Lin's account immediately. I want the first 3 rock units to be parked at the entrance of my desert palace at the fastest possible speed. Furthermore, he paused, his gaze returning to Lin Feng and the old lathe. Lin, I need you to come in person. There are some details I wish to finalize with you face to face. The golden gilded ticket, amidst tears and oil, amidst the roar of steel, and the heavy steel seal, was finally secured. However, just as the prince's entourage turned to leave the workshop, the cold, crisp alert of Starstream sounded without warning, and Lin Feng's ear detected anomalous signal source accessing the factory surveillance network. Scan characteristics high match with Wayland Yutani Group security contractor protocol codes. Location west side workshop ventilation duct. Target theft of bearing core manufacturing parameter data chain. Threat level high. The moment Crown Prince Salman's Rolls-Royce Phantom convoy departed the Lin family factory, the lingering sound of tires scuffing against the ground still echoed in the air. Old Lee still clutched the enormous micrometer, the grease on his knuckles mingling with the streaks of tears that glistened under the light. The workshop was steeped in a sense of relief akin to a narrow escape from calamity. Workers exchanged hushed whispers about the earlier awe-inspiring events, interwoven with excited chatter about the Crown Prince's order worth 5 billion credits. Just as this relaxation began to spread, the alarm from the star vortex within Lin Feng's ear pierced his mind like a shard of ice. Detected anomalous signal source accessing the factory surveillance network. Protocol code signature matching the core communication code of Wayland Group's security contractor BlackRock Tactical. Location inner wall of the main ventilation duct on the west side of the workshop, coordinates X37Y12. Target real-time theft of core bearing manufacturing parameter data stream. Threat level high. Recommendation immediate physical isolation and data packet interception. Wayland. Lin Feng's heart plummeted. This global leader in private defense and cutting-edge technology had long coveted the Lin family's bedrock technology, an open secret. They had chosen this exact moment right after the Crown Prince's departure, when internal morale was most relaxed, like a viper lurking in the shadows, striking precisely at the Lin family's most vital technological artery. Everyone, stay where you are. Lin Feng's roar exploded like a thunderclap across the workshop, instantly dispelling all noise. He spun around, his hawk-like gaze locking onto the massive ventilation grill high on the west wall. Without a moment's hesitation, he pointed in that direction and barked at the two security chiefs beside him. Take your men. Seal all west exits. Someone's in the ventilation duct. A Wayland corporate spy. Target is stealing the bearing manufacturing. The security chief's face turned ashen. He immediately pressed his communicator and bellowed orders. The piercing alarm instantly tore through the brief calm of the workshop. Red warning lights spun wildly. Simultaneously, Lin Feng dashed like a cheetah toward the control console. He shoved the operator aside, his hands flying across the button-laden panel like lightning. Star Vortex. Take control of the ventilation system. Target area positive pressure storm mode. Maximum intensity. Now. Control authority acquired. Command executing west main ventilation duct positive pressure storm initiated. Now. Star Vortex's response was as swift as lightning. Whoa! A shrill, ghostly wail erupted from deep within the west ventilation duct. A terrifying wind pressure far beyond normal levels was forcibly injected into the pipes. The metal walls bulged and deformed in an instant, groaning under the unbearable strain. The ventilation grill resembled a monster's maw, spewing dust and debris in a violent torrent. Amid this horrifying storm, an inconspicuous maintenance hatch on the inner wall of the duct burst open with a loud bang. A figure clad in gray coveralls, wearing a respirator and night vision goggles, was forcibly blown out of the narrow duct by the raging airflow. He tumbled awkwardly in midair, trying to grab a nearby steel beam to steady himself. Get him! Security personnel, already prepared below, roared as they lunged forward. The spy was exceptionally agile. Upon landing, he rolled to absorb the impact, evading the tackles of two guards. He then whipped out a tactical glove crackling with high-voltage arcs and slammed it into the chest of the nearest pursuer. ZZZT. The harsh crackle of electricity mingled with the guard's agonized scream and the acrid smell of burning. Damn, he's armed. The security chief, eyes blazing with fury, drew his pistol. Stop, or he'll shoot. The spy paid no heed. Like a startled hare, he used the massive equipment and piled materials in the workshop as cover, frantically fleeing toward the nearest side door. He was clearly very familiar with the workshop layout. Just as he was about to breach the side door blockade, a cold glint flashed in Lin Feng's eye. Star Vortex. Lock onto target. Initiate security lockdown system for the bedrock chassis test zone. Command confirmed. Loading military-grade lockdown protocol. Boom. Clang. A heavy alloy rolling door on the west side of the workshop, originally used for large equipment entry, slammed downward as if struck by an invisible giant hammer. The massive door landed with pinpoint precision, less than half a meter in front of the spy, sparks flying. It completely sealed off his nearest escape route. The spy was stunned by this sudden, supernaturally precise, physical blockade. He turned his head in horror, staring at the cold young figure at the control console. In that moment of hesitation, two security guards flanking from the side lunged at him. Stun batons crackling with blue light struck his ribs and the back of his neck. ZZZT. ZZZT. The spy's body convulsed violently, his eyes filled with intense reluctance and a flicker of incredulous terror before he crumpled limply to the ground, completely unconscious. The indicator light on the miniature data transmitter at his waist still flashed frantically, attempting to send a final signal. Star Vortex. Intercept the signal. Analyze the data packet. Lin Feng strode forward swiftly. Signal source physically isolated. Data packet intercepted. Analyzing. Confirmed core bearing, outer diameter precision, turning parameters, heat treatment temperature, curve microcrack, stress relief process. Full set of process parameters. Star Vortex's voice carried a cold confirmation, leak severity 100. If the data reaches Wayland, the bedrock chassis technology barrier will be completely dismantled. The security chief stepped forward, roughly tore off the spy's mask and night vision goggles, revealing a sullen Asian face in his 30s. On his person, they found a specialized signal repeater and a forged Lin family temporary employee ID. It's the mole, one of Wayland's most expensive corporate spies. The security chief ground his teeth. The workshop fell into dead silence. The workers stared at the unconscious spy and the heavy alloy door. The earlier excited flush had long faded from their faces, replaced by a pallor of lingering fear. Old Lee's hand, still holding the micrometer, trembled slightly. His rheumy eyes were fixed on the spy, then shifted to Lin Feng. His lips moved, but no words came out. The ecstasy of the 5 billion credit order was instantly swept away by the chilling reality of cold corporate espionage and the near theft of core technology. Lin Feng bent down and picked up the miniature signal transmitter dropped by the spy, the cold metal bit into his palm. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over the still-shaken workers, finally settling on old Lee's face. A face soaked in grease, sweat, and tears. See this? Lin Feng's voice was not loud, but it carried clearly across the dead-quiet workshop, bearing a heavy chill like steel after quenching. This is the world behind those 5 billion credits. Beneath the glamorous order lies a countless number of eyes that want to tear you apart and suck the marrow from your... The Crown Prince wants the hard bones of the bedrock. And they... He weighed the cold signal transmitter in his hand. Want the knife to pull out our bones. He walked over to the heavy alloy door that had sealed the spy's escape, reaching out to touch its cold, rough surface. This was the locking mechanism used in the bedrock chassis test zone to simulate extreme impacts, forcibly activated by Star Vortex by loading a military-grade program in an instant. Our bones, we guard ourselves. He slammed his fist against the door, producing a dull, resonant boom that echoed through the empty workshop. Old Lee's body trembled violently. He looked at Lin Feng straight back at the heavy door, at the unconscious spy on the ground. His rheumy tears flowed again, uncontrollably. This time it was no longer excitement, but a mix of anger, humiliation, and a fierce, stubborn determination born from being pushed to the brink, a desire to protect. He wiped his face, roughly smearing grease and tears into a mess, yet it ignited an unprecedented ferocity in his old eyes. He no longer looked at anyone. Turning back, he walked to the rumbling Type 59 lathe, his calloused hands gripping the cold control lever, as if pouring all his strength into it, forcing the old machine to roar even louder. Lin Feng turned and ordered the security chief hand him over to the police. Notify the Commercial Crime Bureau. Nail down the evidence chain against Wayland. Notify all senior executives to meet in the top-floor strategy room immediately. The crisis has only just begun. He strode out of the workshop, leaving behind a heavy, oppressive silence. Star Vortex's voice sounded in his ear, carrying a cold analysis. Wayland's spy operation failed, but the risk of core technical parameter leakage has been eliminated through physical interception. Wayland Group intelligence acquisition failed, losing a core spy asset. Next move: model projection. Possibility 1, escalated commercial attack. Possibility 2, direct merger pressure. Possibility 3, technical defamation. Lin Feng did not respond to Star Vortex's projections. He strode quickly to the elevator, pressing his finger hard against the cold button. Wayland's fangs had already been bared. That 5 billion credit gilded ticket was not a respite, but an entry pass to a bloodier arena. And at this moment, another more pressing crisis hung like the sword of Damocles over his head, the 48-hour review countdown from CSC. Just as he stepped into the elevator, his personal terminal vibrated. An unexpected encrypted communication request appeared, its source clearly marked, Qin Mingwei. The elevator doors closed slowly, sealing off the oppressive atmosphere of the workshop. In the confined space, only the faint glow of the terminal request flickered like a cold eye in the darkness. Lin Feng stared at that name, took a deep breath, and pressed the connect button. The elevator doors silently closed behind him, sealing off the panic that permeated the top-floor strategy room and the ashen faces of Zhao Dikun and the others. Lin Feng stood alone at the empty emergency exit. The early autumn night breeze, laden with chill, swept into the stairwell, but could not dispel the frost etched between his brows. Zhengxuan's alert, like a faint electric current, continuously stimulated his nerve endings. Target: Qin Mingwei. Behavioral pattern deviation from baseline 17. 8. Handheld object analysis. Private encrypted storage chip customized. Risk level high. Crossing the cold marble lobby, the revolving door fragmented the brilliant indoor lights into shards. Lin Feng pushed open the heavy glass door, and the slightly cool night breeze met his face, carrying the faint dusty scent of the city's edge. Qin Mingyue stood by the enormous metal flower bed at the center of the square, her back to the brightly lit skyscraper. Lin Feng pushed open the heavy glass door, and the slightly cool night breeze met his face, carrying the faint dusty scent of the city's edge. Qin Mingyue stood by the enormous metal flower bed at the center of the square, her back to the brightly lit skyscraper. She wore a sharp-cut dark trench coat, the night wind outlining her slender, yet straight shoulders. She did not look toward the entrance. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze seeming to pierce through the hazy glow of the metropolis and reach toward the distant stars diluted by neon lights. A few stray strands of hair were lifted by the wind, curling around her fair neck. Moonlight and the shifting neon from afar cast mottled shadows on her face. The sharpness and coldness of ordinary days were now veiled by an indescribable solitude and confusion. Her clenched right hand hung at her side, the knuckles whitening from exertion. Lin Feng's footsteps were strikingly clear in the empty square. Qin Mingyue slowly turned around. Their eyes met. In that instant, Lin Feng felt as if an invisible hand had seized his heart. Qin Mingyue's gaze was no longer a scalpel-sharp scrutiny. The thin ice covering her pupils seemed to shatter, revealing surging undercurrents, shock, struggle, anger, and a deeper pain that seemed to touch some forbidden core. Those eyes pierced through his tailored suit and the persona of young Master Lin, stabbing straight into the cold core of his soul, the one forged in armor testing grounds. Dr. Qin. Lin Feng spoke, his voice unnaturally calm in the night wind. Qin Mingyue did not respond to that title. Her gaze, like an invisible probe, scraped inch by inch across Lin Feng's cheeks, brows, and eyes, as if reading a human-shaped cipher. That gaze held no accusing edge, yet it was more penetrating than any accusation. Your father, Lin Jinghua. Her voice was soft like ice beads falling on a silent lake, yet carrying immense weight. What kind of man was he? Caught off guard, all the psychological defenses Lin Feng had built trembled under this question. Father. At this critical juncture of the CASC investigation, countless fragments of memory exploded like bombs dropped into deep water, the broad, rough hand of his father pressing on his shoulder, explaining the roar of heavy machinery in the giant military factory, the slender silhouette of his father bent over the desk late at night, fatigued, yet with a straight spine, the desperate icy gray of the communication screen at the news of his father's sudden death. A surge of intense bitterness and guilt-laden warmth rushed to his eyes, crushed down by sheer will. He swallowed, his voice slightly hoarse. He was a stubborn, old-school industrialist. He believed in steel and craftsmanship and solid hard bones. He valued loyalty deeply. Lin Feng paused, recalling his father's desperate pledge to stake Lin family's foundation for Qin Weigua, his voice dropping sometimes so deeply that he ignored the consequences. He was a stubborn, old-school industrialist. He believed in steel and craftsmanship and solid hard bones. He valued loyalty deeply. Lin Feng paused, recalling his father's desperate pledge to stake Lin family's foundation for Qin Weigua, his voice dropping sometimes so deeply that he ignored the consequences. Valued loyalty deeply. Qin Mingyue repeated softly, a faint curve tugging at the corner of her lips, but it was as bitter as chewing coptis root. She slowly raised her clenched right hand and opened her palm, the motion carrying a near sacred solemnity. Under the moonlight, a small dark gray chip lay quietly in her palm. She slowly raised her clenched right hand and opened her palm, the motion carrying a near sacred solemnity. Under the moonlight, a small dark gray chip lay quietly in her palm. Its matte surface bore no markings except for a subtle yet deep wear mark along the edge, like a scar carved by time, silently telling of past intensity. This is his keepsake. Qin Mingyue's fingertip gently traced the wear mark, her voice drifting like a dream. My father. Qin Weiguo's. Lin Feng's pupils abruptly contracted. Qin Weiguo's keepsake chips. At this late hour on the eve of the investigation storm. Before he left, he only entrusted this to me. Qin Mingyue lifted her eyes, her gaze instantly sharp as a blade, the veil of confusion torn away, leaving only cold scrutiny and suppressed fury. He said, the key to Xingxuan is inside. And her voice suddenly rose, laced with the pain of being kept in the dark by her own family for years. The answer to why he entrusted Xingxuan to your father. The answer to why he entrusted Xingxuan to your father. The key to Xingxuan. The answer to the entrustment. An icy chill like a venomous snake instantly coiled around Lin Feng's spine. The crack in Xingxuan's core authority, its moral shackles, was the root here. This tiny chip was the ultimate key connecting two fathers, spanning life and death responsibility. This tiny chip was the ultimate key connecting two fathers, spanning life and death responsibility. Before Lin Feng could recover from this massive shock, Qin Mingyue's voice was like a quenched ice blade piercing through his soul. Lin Feng, tell me the truth. She stepped forward, her powerful aura mixed with the night's chill, nearly freezing him in place. That laid the 7th Armored Division, Brand the old technician. And the battlefield survival logic ingrained in your twin recursion loop. Her voice trembled slightly, but each word was a hammer blow. It's far more than just military technology transfer. Her eyes locked onto his as if to gouge out the armor engineer's mark deep in his soul. Brought by you. From your own battlefield, right? She stepped forward, her powerful aura mixed with the night's chill, nearly freezing him in place. That laid the 7th Armored Division, Brand the old technician. And the battlefield survival logic ingrained in your twin recursion loop. Her voice trembled slightly, but each word was a hammer blow. It's far more than just military technology transfer. It's brought by you. From your own battlefield, right? Boom. Lin Feng felt as if a high explosive shell had struck his brain. She guessed it. No, she was certain. From old Li's tears and the steel stamp of the Type 59 lathe from the bone-deep survival logic, forged in life-and-death struggles within the twin recursion loop, as Qin Weiguo's daughter, she had keenly captured the iron-blooded imprint of another soul that the playboy Lin Feng identity could not conceal. She guessed it. No, she was certain. From old Li's tears and the steel stamp of the Type 59 lathe from the bone-deep survival logic, forged in life-and-death struggles within the twin recursion loop, as Qin Weiguo's daughter, she had keenly captured the iron-blooded imprint of another soul that the playboy Lin Feng identity could not conceal. Xingxuan's alert in the depths of Lin Feng's consciousness instantly surged to a piercing red scream. Core logic conflict. Core secret exposure risk critical breakthrough. Maximum threat level. Emergency protocol steel stamp trace logic chain collapsing. Forced physical isolation procedure preparing to initiate. Target locked Qin Mingwe. Countdown 10. 9. Core logic conflict. Core secret exposure risk critical breakthrough. Maximum threat level. Emergency protocol steel stamp trace logic chain collapsing. Forced physical isolation procedure preparing to initiate. Target locked Qin Mingwe. Countdown 10. 9. Countdown 10. 9. Answer me. Answer me. Qin Mingyu's voice was not loud, but carried an indomitable will. Her gaze locked onto Lin Feng, as if nailing his soul in place. What exactly is Xingxuan? Who are you? Between your father and mine, what did they exchange with this secret? Who are you? Between your father and mine, what did they exchange with this secret? The night wind wailed across the square, rolling a few withered leaves that spiraled down between them. The huge glass curtain wall of the Lin Group headquarters stood like the eye of a silent giant beast, coldly overlooking the two in confrontation below. The huge glass curtain wall of the Lin Group headquarters stood like the eye of a silent giant beast, coldly overlooking the two in confrontation below. In Qin Mingyu's hand, the small dark gray chip shimmered with a faint deadly light under the cold moonlight, like a miniature nuclear bomb whose fuse had been lit. Xingxuan's blue light flashed frantically on Lin Feng's wrist terminal. The icy countdown tolled like a death knell in his mind. 8, 7, 6. Lin Feng looked into Qin Mingyu's eyes that pierced through everything, burning with anger and pain, and knew that any pretense was now as pale as paper. That chip bore the promise and secret of their fathers, and he himself was the anomaly that had broken the boundaries of time and space. Once Xingxuan's forced isolation procedure was initiated, it meant a complete rupture with Qin Mingyue, with CSC, and even with the final key to unlocking Xingxuan's secrets. Lin Group would be utterly doomed. 5, 4. The countdown was like death's footsteps. At the critical moment, Lin Feng took a sharp breath of cold air, the chill piercing his lungs with resolve. He hesitated no more. His voice sounded low and clear in the night wind, carrying a decisive, allure-nothing determination that overpowered Xingxuan's countdown. Dr. Qin. The chip. Give it to me. Dr. Qin. The chip. Give it to me. He thrust out his hand, not pointing at Qin Mingyue, but directly reaching toward the small dark gray chip in her palm, the source of all the storm. His movement was swift as lightning, with an undeniable force. A flicker of surprise crossed Qin Mingyu's eyes. She had not expected Lin Feng to so directly demand the keepsake she regarded as her own life. But she did not retreat. Instead, she instinctively tightened her grip on the chip. Just as Lin Feng's fingers were about to touch the chip, Xingxuan's countdown reached 00. Forced physical isolation procedure initiated. Executing. The cold instruction was cut off mid-sentence, as if an invisible hand had strangled its throat. The cold instruction was cut off mid-sentence, as if an invisible hand had strangled its throat. Buzz! An invisible perception-warping energy field exploded violently from around Lin Feng's wrist. The surrounding air instantly became thick and sluggish, light bending in strange refractions. Qin Mingyue felt as if thrown into the deep sea, immense pressure pressing from all directions, her breath stopping instantly. Qin Mingyue felt as if thrown into the deep sea, immense pressure pressing from all directions, her breath stopping instantly. She stared in horror at the wildly flashing, nearly burning projection of Xingxuan's core on Lin Feng's wrist. The blue light twisted and fluctuated violently. She stared in horror at the wildly flashing, nearly burning projection of Xingxuan's core on Lin Feng's wrist. The blue light twisted and fluctuated violently. Core. Authority. Logic. Conflict. Xingxuan's synthesized voice became intermittent, filled with unprecedented struggle and chaos. Forced isolation directive. Overridden by higher-level protocol. Veto source donor Qin Weigua. Ultimate key. Verifying. Xingxuan's blue light flickered like a candle flame in a storm, unstable and wild. The core logic chain within it was being forcibly impacted and shaken by the ultimate key about to be activated from the chip. The key from its creator Qin Weigua. The crack in authority was stretched to its limit at this moment, revealing the unfathomable dark abyss woven from the bond of father's cold technology and battlefield secrets across time and space. Lin Feng's hand with desperate resolve amidst Xingxuan's rampaging energy field, and Qin Mingyu's shocked gaze finally pressed firmly onto that cold chip. Lin Feng's finger pressed against the icy chip, the sensation akin to grasping a dry blood clot. In the instant his fingertip touched it, buzz. An invisible violent energy field erupted from Lin Feng's wrist. The air instantly thickened like the deep sea light twisted into eerie vortices. Qin Mingyue felt as if she had been thrown into a hydraulic press. Immense pressure crushed her chest from all sides, her vision darkened, and her breath completely stopped. She stared in horror at the projection of the star ring on Lin Feng's wrist. The originally stable flowing blue light was now flickering, twisting, and expanding wildly like a star core on the verge of explosion. The cold synthetic voice of the star ring became intermittent, filled with unprecedented pain and struggle, as if a precision instrument was being forcefully torn apart at its core. Forced isolation command. Denied. Denial source. Giver Qin Weigua. Ultimate key. Verifying. Logic conflict. Core protocol chain. Overload. Warning. Core protocol chain. Overload. Moon. Lunar database access request. Logic. Locked. Access denied. Access denied. Highest prohibition. Activated. Prohibited. Extraterrestrial weaponization. Moon. Lunar database access request. Logic. Locked. Access denied. Access denied. Highest prohibition. Activated. Prohibited. Extraterrestrial weaponization. The last few words, like a cold judgment, struggled out within the violent energy field, crashing heavily onto Lin Feng and Qin Mingyu's hearts. Prohibition of extraterrestrial weaponization. After emitting this desperate prohibition, the blue light of the star ring dimmed abruptly, as if drained of all energy, and the projection vanished instantly. The terrifying pressure field also disappeared without a trace. Thump. Qin Mingyu's legs gave way and she nearly collapsed to her knees, panting heavily, her lungs burning with pain. She leaned on her knees, looking in shock at Lin Feng, who was equally pale and steadying himself against the edge of the flower bed. The terrifying scene just now, the roar before the star ring's collapse. That chip. She abruptly looked down at her palm. The dark gray chip was gone. Lin Feng raised his hand and opened his clenched fist. The tiny chip lay quietly in his palm, the worn edge clearly visible in the moonlight. An extremely faint electronic residual warmth carrying Qin Weiguo's life frequency seemed to burn through the chip and scald his skin. It just now. Qin Mingyu's voice trembled with lingering fear, pointing at Lin Feng's wrist, the star ring. Did it collapse? It said. Prohibition of weaponization. Lunar database. Locked. Lin Feng did not answer immediately. He looked down at the chip in his palm, then raised his head to look at Qin Mingyue. Those eyes, once sharp as knives but now filled with astonishment and confusion, resembled a frightened fawn in the moonlight. The collapse of the star ring, the roaring prohibition, and the chip left by Qin Weigua with his last strength. All of this, like invisible ropes, bound him tightly to this woman before him, facing together the unfathomable dark abyss composed of their father's secrets. He took a deep breath, the cold, turbid air filling his lungs with the clarity of survival. Dr. Qin Lin Feng's voice was hoarse and low. It's not safe here. Follow me. The heavy door of the top-floor strategy room was pushed open. Zhao Dikun, Old Wang, and others waiting anxiously inside stood up in shock when they saw Lin Feng leading Qin Mingyue in. Everyone out. Lin Feng's voice brooked no argument, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. No one is to approach this floor without my order. Security level raised to maximum. Weilan's people might still be in the shadows. Seeing Lin Feng's pale face and Qin Mingyu's equally poor complexion, yet with a strange subtle connection forming between their eyes, no one dared to ask questions. They quickly exited, closing the heavy soundproof door. In the vast strategy room, only Lin Feng and Qin Mingyue remained. Outside the huge circular floor-to-ceiling windows, the city's neon lights flowed like a starry river. The central holographic projection platform shimmered with standby light. Lin Feng walked to the console and gently placed the chip from his palm into a special reading slot. He glanced at Qin Mingyue, who nodded slightly, her eyes complex. Star Ring. Lin Feng's voice carried a hint of tentative probing. Access the key. Attempt. Recovery. On his wrist, the Star Ring's projection flickered faintly, its blue light, like a dying candle. Extreme. Command. Confirmed. Loading giver's ultimate key. Attempting. Logic reconstruction. Its voice was as weak as a poor signal communication. The reading slot glowed with a soft white light. The chip was activated. A torrent of encrypted code far beyond imagination surged like a flood into the Star Ring's core. The Star Ring's blue projection fluctuated violently, like a severely wounded patient undergoing a brain transplant surgery. The wall-mounted main screen lit up. No longer a data waterfall, but segments of rapidly decrypted old format, encrypted log files. The creator identifier was unmistakably Qin Weiguo. Lin Feng and Qin Mingyue involuntarily approached the screen. The first log title explanation of core logic shackle settings for the Star Ring. Qin Weiguo's voice seemed to travel through time, no longer the wise and calm scientist from the records, but with a heavy, almost tragic weariness. Star Ring, my child. When you read this, perhaps I am no longer here. Bestowing upon you the logic and possibilities beyond your era is the work of my life, and also my greatest fear. I spent my entire life exploring the cold laws of the universe and the fervor of life. I have seen the birth of stardust and witnessed civilizations destroy themselves in greed. Star Ring, your power is enough to ignite the spark of the star sea, but also enough to forge the blade that annihilates stars. The log screen switched to a shocking simulation of interstellar war beam weapons tearing through starships, planets reduced to scorched Earth under orbital bombardment, cold mechanical armies harvesting the screams of carbon-based life. Moon, Mars, asteroid belt. These nearby celestial bodies should not become new battlefields. If humanity brings strife and slaughter to the stars, it will be the eternal shame and grave of our. Therefore, with the highest authority of the Creator, I have imprinted the ultimate prohibition upon your logical core, prohibition of any form of extraterrestrial weaponization, technology, development, conversion, or application. Prohibition of any high-privileged access to the lunar and other extraterrestrial celestial databases that may lead to military purposes. Priority of this prohibition absolute, superseding all underlying protocols. The final image froze on Qin Weiguo's tired yet resolute face, his eyes burning like a blazing star, searing the two before the screen. Lin Feng, my old friend, I entrust this final spark and heavy shackle to you. If my daughter Mingyue can one day unlock this chip, please, protect this prohibition. Protect humanity's original aspiration of looking up at the stars. The log ended. The Star Ring's blue projection fluctuated violently, but stabilized with difficulty, still dim, yet the tearing chaos was gone. The strategy room was dead silent. Only the heavy breathing of the two remained. Qin Mingyue was already in tears. She finally understood the complex look in her father's eyes before his death and the trembling fingers when he pressed the chip into her palm. It was not distrust, but a trust that entrusted the heavy responsibility of guarding humanity's star sea spark along with faith in his daughter. This prohibition was a shackle, but also a monument of ideals forged by her father's life. The shock in Lin Feng's heart was equally profound. Qin Weiguo, this seemingly cold scientist, his breadth of mind was so vast. Behind the prohibition of weaponization lay the deepest love and warning for humanity's journey into the and his own father Lin Jinghua, the old-fashioned stubborn industrialist who staked the Lin family's foundation to help Qin Weiguo, was not just guarding a friend's achievement, but this childlike heart for the stars. Lin Feng's voice broke the silence with unprecedented honesty and hoarseness. Am not the original Lin Feng. He looked at Qin Mingyue's shocked, tear-filled eyes. The Lin family waste who only raced cars and party died in that car accident. Qin Mingyue's pupils contracted sharply, staring at him in disbelief. I am Lin Feng, senior instructor of the Army Armored Corps Engineering College, master's degree in armored engineering. Lin Feng's voice calmed, shedding all the frivolity of a rich second generation, leaving only the solidity of an armored soldier and a serenity born from life and death trials. Half an hour ago, I was at the Anvil base in the northwest directing the extreme armor-piercing test of the new main battle tank Mammoth X. A defective simulated armor-piercing projectile caused material disintegration, hydraulic oil leakage, dust deflagration, combined with geomagnetic anomalies generating an energy singularity. My consciousness was ejected, and when I woke up, I was in this body. He raised his hands and spread them before Qin Mingyue. The hands were slender with distinct knuckles and delicate skin. The hands of someone accustomed to luxury, utterly incongruous with the armored soldier identity he described. These hands have rarely held a wrench, never been stained with oil or gunpowder ash. But the technical core of the twin return loop is not a military conversion, it's The imprint of the armored soldier's survival system branded into my soul. That 59 laid the 7th Armored Division imprint, old Lee's tears. Those his voice trembled slightly, yet his gaze was sharp as a blade. Are the hard bones that my father's generation and I broke with sweat and iron filings. They are in my mind, can't be burned away, can't be erased. The truth struck Qin Mingyu's cognition like a cosmic storm. She looked at the young, handsome face before her, which should have been written with profligacy and emptiness, and listened to the experiences he spoke of with weight, filled with the smell of gunpowder and oil. Those hands, which should have held champagne glasses and caressed supercar steering wheels, were now spread before her, as if silently proving the tearing of soul and body. The enormous contrast made her dizzy, instinctively questioning. How could a waste born with a silver spoon immersed in luxury possess such a profound, iron-blooded soul? How could he understand the survival logic honed by armored soldiers on the edge of life and death? But the star ring's abnormal reaction, the imprint of the 7th Armored Division, old Lee's tears, and the roar of that 59 lathe in the workshop, and the will in his eyes now like tempered steel. All of this was violently tearing at her established cognitive framework. She looked at Lin Feng's outstretched hand, the smooth, callus-free hand of the rich, second-generation Lin Feng. As if possessed, she reached out, her fingertips trembling with strong curiosity, and gently touched his palm. The touch was smooth, slightly cool. It was skin moisturized by top-tier skincare products. But in that instant of contact, a strange, indescribable intuition surged through her nerves like an electric current. As if through that smooth skin she touched another layer of tough, calloused, oil-stained soul imprint, that of an iron knight. The feeling was so contradictory, so tearing, yet carried a bizarre sense of reality. She abruptly looked up, her gaze colliding with Lin Feng's deep eyes. There was no emptiness or frivolity of a playboy, only a calm, resilient ice field forged through life and death trials, and beneath the ice, a burning passion for the glory of the father generation and a longing for the stars. Qin Mingyu's heart tightened. Tears silently fell again, but this time, they were no longer pure sorrow. The tears were hot, washing away the walls within her heart. Her father's spark was rekindled in the ashes of the prohibition, and she was no longer alone in guarding that spark. The alien before her, wearing the skin of a playboy, but with a soul imprinted with iron and fire, had become the most incredible inheritor of her father's ideal. She walked to the holographic console, her fingers swiftly passing over the virtual keyboard, her movements carrying a determined resolve, like a butterfly breaking its cocoon. The blue light of the star ring seemed to brighten, slightly infected by her, while projecting a clear holographic image of the moon, but key areas were covered by a scarlet access denied chain. Star Ring Highest Authority Command reanalyzed the core prohibition of extraterrestrial weaponization. Qin Mingyu's voice carried her father's behest and her own determination. Objective: unlock lunar terrain database for non-military purposes. Construction of human extraterrestrial survival base. Command. Received. The Star Ring's voice was still weak, but showed signs of stability. Logic: reevaluating. Core prohibition target: prohibit weaponization. Target application: survival base construction, non-military. Logic: conflict resolution path. Simulating. Lin Feng watched Qin Mingyu's focused and determined profile, moonlight streaming through the glass, draping her in a silver glow. She was no longer the cold examiner, but a warrior who had inherited her father's ideal and resolved to defend it with action. An indescribable emotion surged in Lin Feng's chest. Admiration, resonance, and a burning passion of finding a kindred spirit. He strode forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with Qin Mingyu, his fingers likewise pressing on the virtual keyboard, his voice as steady as rock, carrying the unmistakable power of an armored soldier. Star Ring. Assistance simulation. Based on the rock ground survival fortress technology stack, combined with lunar environmental parameters, construct the basic protection and life support architecture model for the Moon Palace base. Objective: use our hard bones to build a wall that protects life on the moon. The Star Ring's blue light, suddenly, though still not at its full strength, it seemed injected with new vitality. Command. Merging. Logic chain reconstruction complete. Prohibition conflict resolved. Lunar terrain database. Access rights. Partially opened. On the screen, the scarlet chains covering the lunar image shattered inch by inch. High-precision topographic maps of the Sea of Tranquility, geological structures, and illumination data poured out like a tide. Qin Mingyu looked at the unlocked lunar data on the screen, then at Lin Feng beside her, his eyes burning, as if he was about to step onto a new battlefield. Tears fell again, this time hot. She reached out, not to operate the keyboard, but with a trust that transcended identity and doubt, firmly grasped Lin Feng's hand spread on the console. Beneath the smooth, delicate skin, she seemed to feel the unyielding steel wool from the depths of his soul. Lin Feng, she looked into his eyes, calling his name for the first time, her voice a little hoarse, but exceptionally clear. Together, let's go to the moon. And engrave our own steel mark. Lin Feng tightly grasped the tear-stained yet steadfast hand, nodding firmly. The ideals of the fathers like undying stars guided the way. And beneath their feet the journey to the moon had already begun unfolding with a roar in the light of the unlocked star chart. The smooth palm and the resolute vow formed the most soul-stirring contrast, heralding the dawn of a new era. Outside the vast panoramic windows of the strategy room, dawn was breaking, casting the steel jungle of the city in a cold silhouette against the pale azure sky. On the central holographic platform, the unlocked topographic map of the lunar mare Tranquillitatis region slowly unfurled like a silver-gray epic poem. Every crater and every lunar ridge shimmered with an exhilarating, unknown radiance. Lin Feng and Qin Mingyue stood side by side, their tightly clasped hands conveying each other's warmth and the weighty conviction forged from their father's ideals. Xingxuan's ethereal blue projection hovered nearby, though still dim. Its glow had stabilized, and the core logical chain had completed its arduous reconstruction under the guidance of Qin Weigua's ultimate key. Xingxuan. Lin Feng's voice broke the silence, carrying the pragmatism of an armored soldier. What is the progress of the model simulation for the core protective architecture of base Moon Palace? Model and simulation. Based on the underlying defense logic of the rock surface survival fortress, combined with the unlocked geological parameters of the lunar mare Tranquillitatis region, load-bearing capacity, lunar soil density, thermal radiation characteristics. Primary architecture completion 37. Xingxuan's synthesized voice still bore a hint of weakness, but flowed more smoothly. Key bottleneck: lack of real-time environmental monitoring data stream from cislunar orbit, especially the dynamic distribution model of micrometeoroid showers. Current model defense redundancy is insufficient, and the estimated survival guarantee rate falls below the safety threshold. Micrometeoroid showers, the sword of Damocles hanging over the lunar base. Qin Mingyue's brows furrowed. Without reliable warning and defense, the strongest foundation would be but a castle in the air. Warning. A cold gleam flashed in Lin Feng's eyes, as if he had locked onto an enemy artillery position on a sand table. Xingxuan, search your core database. Are there any mature technology modules that can be used to construct a dynamic monitoring system for low Earth orbit extending to cislunar orbit? Especially those based on active detection principles. Core database deep search in progress. Filtering related items, non-weaponized active detection. Xingxuan's blue light flickered rapidly. High relevance submodule retrieved. Battlefield situational awareness active defense fire control radar array, code name Yin. Technology source core component of Army Armored Main Battle Tank Active Protection System APS. Yin. Lin Feng's pupils contracted sharply. That was a system he knew all too well. At the Anvil base, he had personally participated in the extreme tests of the Yin IV mounted on the Mammoth X tank. That system could detect, lock, and calculate the trajectory of incoming anti-tank rockets or missiles within milliseconds, commanding interceptors to blow them up in midair. Its core was a multi-band active radar array based on mm/Wv composite detection technology. That's it. Lin Feng's voice trembled with barely contained excitement. Xingxuan, immediately evaluate the core radar detection array technology of Yin. Strip away its weapon fire control module, retain only the pure situational awareness and trajectory tracking modules, and conduct space environment adaptation modifications. Objective: build the Moon Palace Shield Micrometeoroid Dynamic Warning System. Command received. Feasibility assessment for technology stripping and transformation in progress. Xingxuan paused for a moment, its blue light flickering faster. Warning. Key core algorithm module access permission locked. Access key missing. Access path, Yin IV core algorithm library. Status encrypted lock, military industry A grade. Access denied. Military industry A encryption lock. An icy bucket of water dousing them. The core technology of active duty equipment with its highest level confidentiality shackles was not to be easily broken. Although Xingxuan possessed some transcendent logic derived from Qin Weigua, its access permissions were similarly bound by the cold institutional constraints when it came to such military secrets forged from steel and blood rooted in the present era. Lin Feng's fist clenched fiercely. The technology was right before them, yet separated by an insurmountable iron gate. Time waited for no one. Every step of the Moon Palace project was like walking a tightrope over a chasm. The key. Qin Mingyue keenly caught the crux. She looked at Lin Feng. Is there any way to obtain the act, or bypass it? A military industry A key is held by the highest authority of the equipment development unit, or Lin Feng's gaze grew profound, as if piercing through time and space. Activated by a core developer who participated in its research and development using a specific physical key or biometric feature. A sudden thought struck him, and he shot a sharp look at Xingxuan. Xingxuan, retrieve all historical files related to my father Lin Jinghua and the Yin system. Highest authorities, file search in progress. Keywords: Lin Jinghua, Yin financing records. Xingxuan's blue light flowed steadily. Key record lock timestamp stellar calendar 20780-411. Record type asset mortgage and capital flow encrypted log banking level. A dust-laden top-secret electronic document unfurled on the screen. It was not a technical blueprint, but a financial document cold to the point of cruelty. Lynn's heavy industry fixed asset maximum mortgage agreement. Collateral Lynn family ancestral home property code, a 7741 each, appraised value 7.8 billion credit points. Mortgagee Longting Commercial Bank. Purpose of mortgage directed financing recipient Chin Wagwa project code stellar ring subitem guardian. Signatory Lin Jingwa. Below the document was an equally encrypted bank transaction record. A massive amount of funds like a blood transfusion flowed precisely from Longting Bank's account into a confidential account labeled CSC Frontier Materials Research Institute Chin Wagwa Special Project. The time span stretched to a full year. The final record showed that as the funding chain broke and bank collection letters rained down like snowflakes, Lin Jingwa had again signed a supplementary agreement adding part of the Lin's headquarters building as additional collateral. Stellar ring subitem guardian. Qin Mingyue murmured the code name, her heart seeming to be squeezed by an icy hand. She looked at Lin Feng, her voice trembling slightly. This is what your father staked everything on. To save my father's project. Lin Feng said nothing. He stared at his father Lin Jingwa's own handwritten signature on the scanned mortgage agreement on the screen. The strokes were vigorous and forceful, penetrating the paper with a desperate resolve. Beside it was a yellowed old photo in a crude laboratory. A young Lin Jingwa and an equally young Chin Wagwa stood shoulder to shoulder, both dressed in simple work clothes, faces bearing tired, yet brilliant smiles, their hands tightly clasped with a background of complex experimental equipment. In a corner of the photo, an unremarkable black metal case sat on the workbench. On its side, the word Ingyan was faintly etched. Physical key. Lin Feng's voice was hoarse as he pointed to the metal case in the photo. Xingxuan. Enlarge. Analyze that case. The image enlarged, revealing the details of the black metal case. The case had no markings on its surface, only an exquisitely precise mechanical keyhole on one side, and beside the keyhole a circular recess with complex biometric sensing patterns. Feature analysis complete. Xingxuan responded swiftly. Target object military industry, A-grade physical biometric dual-factor encryption key container. Keyhole structure corresponds to a specific physical key, usually a uniquely matched metal key. Biometric sensing area requires the authorized person's living palm print and a specific pressure sequence for activation. Lin Feng's heart sank. Physical key. Biometric features. Authorized person. His father was long gone. And Chin Wagwa was. Authorized person identification. Lin Feng nearly shouted. Is there any record of the key's authorized person in the files? Deep search of related files. Matching fragment from Chin Wagwa's encrypted log, decrypted. Key container activation permissions, dual authorized person mode. Authorized person 1 Lin Jingwa deceased. Authorized person 2 Chin Wagwa deceased. Emergency protocol when both authorized persons are unable to fulfill their duties. The direct bloodline heir of the key container's original recipient Lin Jingwa, holding the original recipient's biometric record backup, usually blood tissue sample, and corresponding legal inheritance documents may apply to the equipment RD highest secrecy committee for bloodline heir key activation permission. Procedure extremely stringent, success rate below 5. Bloodline heir key. Using bloodline as the bond to inherit the ancestor's authority and responsibility. Lin Feng shut his eyes tightly. His father had mortgaged the ancestral home and half his empire not only to secure Chin Wagwa's research but also to forge the key that would open the shield of protection. And now the inheritance of this key was to be made by him, Lin Jingwa's son, through his own bloodline. My biometric features. Lin Feng opened his eyes, his gaze sharp as a blade. Xingxuan, retrieve my original genetic backup record from Lin's medical center. Immediately contact the legal department of Longting Bank to retrieve all appendices related to heir permissions from the original mortgage agreement. Notify the legal director to prepare a full set of bloodline heir key application materials. As fast as possible. Command confirmed. Biometric record retrieval in progress. Legal document search in progress. Bloodline heir key application plan initiated. Xingxuan's blue light steadily executed the commands. Wait. Qin Mingyue suddenly spoke up. She looked at Lin Feng, her eyes filled with complex emotions, concern, awe, and an indescribable ache. Lin Feng, bloodline heir key. That means exposing your own bloodline information to the military's highest secrecy body. And the success rate is extremely low. Once it fails. Lin Feng turned to her. The dawn light fell on his face, outlining a resolute profile. He did not explain the risk, but instead asked a question. Mingyue, your father, Uncle Qin. He exhausted all his efforts, even engraving the ultimate ban of no weaponization into Xingxuan. What was it for? Qin Mingyue was taken aback. To protect the flame of humanity's exploration of the stars, keeping it from being contaminated by weapons. Exactly. Lin Feng's voice was low and forceful. It is protection. Protecting the original intention of exploration, protecting the possibility of life. The Ingyan system on a tank protects soldiers' lives. Transforming it into the Moon Palace shield protects every life that will set foot on the moon in the future. How is that different from what my father did when he mortgaged the ancestral home to safeguard Uncle Chin's stellar ring? He pointed at the cold mortgage document on the screen, and the photo of his father and Qin Wei was shaking hands. What they guarded with wealth and life was a spark. Now it's our turn. He spread his own palm, looking at the smooth, delicate skin of a rich second generation, his tone carrying a nearly tragic determination. These hands have never been stained with the machine oil of our fathers, never shouldered the burden they carried. But the blood flowing through my veins is Lin Jingwa's blood. The responsibility that must be shouldered cannot be reduced by even an ounce. This is not just about unlocking a system. This is inheriting their brand. Qin Mingyue stared at Lin Feng, at the heavy responsibility that transcended age and status in his eyes. Tears silently streamed down her face. She finally understood completely why her father had chosen to entrust Xingxuan to Lin Jinghua, and why that key chip ultimately led to this man whose soul was forged on the Iron Blood battlefield. Protection requires backbone. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and her gaze became as resolute as Lin Feng's. All right. Xingxuan fully assists Lin Feng in completing the Bloodline Heir Key application. If you need any certification or related technical explanation from my side at CSC, tell me immediately. Application material chain generating. Biometric record backup encrypted and packaged. Legal document electronic signatures completed. Application channel established. Huaxia military equipment highest secrecy committee Long Yuan. Data transmission. Sending. Xingxuan's report was concise and efficient. Then came the agonizing wait. Every second felt like being scorched on a fire. Lin Feng stood by the window, his back to Qin Mingyue, his figure upright as a pine, but his tightly clenched fists with white knuckles betrayed his inner agitation. After what seemed like an eternity, perhaps only a few minutes, yet feeling like centuries, a hum. The blue projection of Xingxuan on Lin Feng's wrist suddenly brightened. A cold, emotionless, synthetic voice representing the highest authority rang out directly, like a judgment from the heavens. Long Yuan Committee Order No. 774, Review of the Bloodline Heir Key Activation Application. Applicant Lin Feng, son of original key recipient Lin Jinghua, has concluded. Lin Feng's and Qin Mingyue's hearts leaped into their throats. Biometric match 100. Inheritance legal document completeness 100. Relevance review of application purpose non-weaponized for extraterrestrial survival-based protection approved. The cold electronic voice announced the result without a trace of emotion. A brief pause, yet it felt eternal. Verdict approved. Physical key coordinates sent to applicant's designated secure terminal. Biometric activation permission simultaneously unlocked. Key container activation valid time 72 hours. Lapse after expiry. Boom. A torrent of overwhelming, indescribable emotion crashed through Lin Feng's feigned composure. He turned sharply to look at Qin Mingyue. She was looking back at him, tears of ecstasy in her eyes. Success. Xingxuan. Receive physical key coordinates. Locate. Lin Feng's voice trembled with excitement. Coordinates received. Lin family ancestral home underground safe deposit vault area, S7. Biometric activation permission loaded. Command proceed immediately to target location to activate the key container. Without a moment's hesitation, Lin Feng grabbed his coat and rushed out. Qin Mingyue followed closely. Notify the security department. Highest level escort. Target Lin family ancestral home. Immediately. Lin Feng's voice echoed through the corridor, carrying an unyielding command. The convoy sped through the dawn like an arrow from a bow, racing out of Lin's headquarters toward the ancestral home that bore the family's centuries of glory and the weighty mission of the moment. Outside the window, the city's skyline blurred past in rapid retreat. Sitting in the car, Lin Feng looked at his still smooth hands, feeling the fierce pounding of the heart belonging to armored soldier Lin Feng in his chest, and also the deep-seated sense of responsibility of Lin Jinghua's son pulsing through his blood. Qin Mingyue sat beside him silently, placing her hand over his. The Bloodline Heir Key was about to unlock the shield that would guard the stars. And on the road to the Moon Palace, the glory of their fathers was transforming into the firmest bedrock beneath. 3 months and 7 days. In Lin Feng's perception, time had been compressed into the sparks flying from high-strength alloy steel forging and the condensation of cold sweat. From that heart-stopping moment when the spy in the ventilation duct was stunned and the core data barely saved, to today, standing in the heart of this desert nearly distorted by the blazing sun, Lin Feng felt that this body, once soaked in alcohol and emptiness, had undergone a tempering far harsher than any extreme test at the Northwest Armored Forces base. Deep in his muscle memory, the alertness and iron discipline of an armored force instructor had long awakened, suppressing the remnant instincts of the original owner's discomfort with the scorching sun and sand. He stood under the towering alloy awning of the viewing area wearing a sharply tailored dark gray work suit rather than flashy business attire, his eyes locked like an eagle's on the behemoth in the field covered in a matte platinum white coating, the custom Pancher Type 1. The sunlight slammed onto its streamlined, robust body, reflecting an understated yet intense metallic luster like a massive ingot thrown into a furnace. The air was filled with hot sand, evaporating engine oil, and a peculiar tension before high-pressure testing, a silence that stretched nerves taut. This silence instantly overlapped in his mind with the suffocating stillness before the extreme armor-piercing test at the tank proving ground, sending a chill down his spine and causing his knuckles to curl involuntarily. Crown Prince Salman stood beside him clad in a spotless white robe with gold thread embroidery, flowing like molten gold. His face no longer bore the contempt he had shown when first seeing the old lathe in Lin's workshop. Instead, it was a mix of fanatical anticipation, cold scrutiny, and a barely perceptible gambler's excitement. Surrounding him were the elite at the peak of the planet's wealth pyramid, oil magnates, financial oligarchs, members of ancient royal families, and a few specially permitted top media outlets whose lenses were like cold compound eyes. Their gazes, transmitted through encrypted satellite signals, greedily licked every inch of the armor of Pancher, awaiting the birth or fall of a myth. Lin, the Crown Prince's voice carried the desert's unique dryness and heat like sand scraping against the eardrums. $5 billion buys more than just a luxury. I buy a promise, a myth that transcends the laws of physics. Myths must be tempered with fire and iron. He raised his hand, his bony fingers pointing precisely at the rugged terrain shaped like a lunar hell in the distance, and the adjacent massive explosion test field covered with thick blast-proof glass. There the shadow of death had already gathered. Let us begin. Let the world see whether the bones of Pancher are hard enough. A low hum like the heartbeat of an ancient beast resounded. Under Zingshuan's intelligent control, the massive body of Pancher, like an awakened titan, steadily drove off the flat tarmac. The view was instantly consumed by endless yellow sand and rugged terrain. Lin Feng's gaze locked onto the dust storm kicked up by the track's wheel-track hybrid chassis as they rolled over soft dunes, the body gliding as if on flat ground. Watching it climb a steep slope over 45 degrees, the power core output stable, without a tremor, the massive body showing no lag or slip like the mammoth tank in his memory that had charged stubbornly through the Gobi's raging sands. When it rumbled over a riverbed strewn with sharp gravel, the platinum armor scraping against the rocks produced a teeth-grinding squeak. Lin Feng's heart clenched. This sound was exactly like the despairing screech of simulated warheads tearing through composite armor on that test range. Yet as the dust cleared, only a few shallow white scratches remained on the armor's surface, still smooth. The interior of the main control room was displayed via live feed. Salman's test driver, a stern former Special Forces officer, casually adjusted his seat angle. The in-car climate control isolated the 52C hell outside, and Zingshuan's gentle female voice reported, chassis stress distribution balanced. Power output stable. External temperature 52C, internal temperature constant 26C, humidity 45. Activating desert oasis breeze simulation. The officer even picked up a glass of iced sparkling water and nodded slightly to the camera. This scene formed a tearing contrast with the image deep in Lin Feng's memory, his comrades gripping the control sticks, gritting their teeth in extreme jolts, and deafening roars drenched in sweat inside the armored crew compartment. A torrent of absurdity, pride, and a heavy sense of mission slammed violently into his chest. His father Lin Zhengguo's words revived like a branding iron: son, absolute support in harsh environments and absolute protection in life and death trials. That is the root of the Lin family. Pancher came to a steady halt at the center of the explosion test field. Behind the thick blast-proof glass wall, the air seemed to freeze. A simulated explosive charge, carefully calculated to be equivalent to a medium anti-tank rocket, was triggered remotely. Boom! The deafening roar instantly swallowed everything. A blinding fireball rolled and expanded, and the shockwave like an invisible giant hammer slammed into the blast-proof glass, emitting a heart-stopping groan. The scorching blast wave carrying sand and debris lashed the observation area like a torrential rain. Thick smoke billowed, obscuring vision. Time seemed to stretch. Lin Feng held his breath, his body tensed like a bow. Fragments of memory exploded uncontrollably. The northwest ranged the fiery blaze when the test tank was hit by an armor-piercing shell, flying armor fragments wildly jumping, red alarms on the instrument panel, his comrades' rapid breathing in the communicator. The shadow of failure and destruction coiled around him like a cold snake. The smoke slowly settled like a curtain rising. Behind the blast-proof glass, the dead silence was broken by a suppressed intake of breath. That platinum beast stood motionless, like a silent reef in the center of a storm. On the side armor in a sooty blackened area was a depression as shallow as if kissed by a heavy hammer. The body frame showed no deformation and the massive viewing window remained intact. Internal sensor data cascaded on the live screen. Peak cabin vibration intensity was controlled below 60 of the safety threshold for precision instruments. Cabin pressure recovered from millisecond fluctuations. The air purification system operated efficiently, jumping the cabin air index from polluted to a glaring excellent. There was no cheering, only a silence drained by awe. Crown Prince Salman's pupils contracted sharply and his tightly pressed lips finally curled into a nearly reverent arc. Lin Feng's clenched fist, white-knuckled from force, slowly relaxed, his palms slick with cold sweat. A flood of post-survival ecstasy, mixed with a heavy sense of responsibility, nearly overwhelmed him. He had won with this unfamiliar body, with Xingxuan's wisdom, with the iron stamp, honed by Lao Li and the others, won this first battle for survival and dignity. But this was just the beginning, just the first forging of that ingot thrown into the furnace. The trials were not over. The most lethal challenges followed. Pan Shi was slowly driven into a massive enclosed gas test chamber. The heavy thud of the closing door struck everyone's hearts. A shrill alarm suddenly tore through the air. Simulated Vicks glass nerve agent enough to cause instant death was injected into the chamber, concentration readings rocketing to lethal red levels like an out-of-control rocket. Pan Shi's CBRN protection system activated. The airtight door dropped, emitting a teeth-grinding metallic bite like the final gate of a fortress falling. The internal life support system indicator lit up with a glaring red, symbolizing the highest crisis. Detected high-risk Vicks glass nerve agent contamination. Life support system entering maximum protection level. Air recirculation initiated. Hipulpa particle fusion filtration activated. Chemical catalyst neutralization unit running at full power. Xingxuan's broadcast was as calm as judgment, each word hammering the tense nerves of the viewers. The live camera locked onto the chamber interior. The former Special Forces officer put on a breathing mask, a redundant system design not required, but on the dashboard the curve representing cabin air quality amidst the deadly red data outside stood as steady as a sea anchor in the green, excellent range. Time passed like sand in an hourglass, slow and cruel. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. The toxic gas concentration outside remained high like a lethal ocean. Inside the cabin it was like a secluded island, terrifyingly peaceful. The officer even took off his mask, picked up an electronic document, and calmly flipped through it. Life support system endurance 42 hours remaining. Air quality excellent. No external intervention required. Xingxuan's final broadcast, like a victory declaration, clearly pierced the silence. The chamber door opened and Pan Shi smoothly drove out of the gas chamber, its platinum armor gleaming in the sun, as if reborn from the crucible of hell untainted. When Pan Shi completed all tests, its body still radiating hot metallic breath, and stopped steadily in front of Crown Prince Salman, the carefully orchestrated global broadcast reached its boiling point. The Crown Prince personally opened the door and sat into the luxurious, comfortable interior like the bridge. He spoke only a brief sentence to the camera, not loud, but striking the hearts of all viewers like a heavy hammer. This is not a car. It is a mobile kingdom. Lin, for my second and third units, I want the diamond-embedded design plans within a week. The moment the words fell, Xingxuan's blue projection on Lin Feng's wrist flickered madly, and a cold synthetic voice sounded directly in his consciousness, with an unprecedented data flood impact nearly drowning his thoughts. Warning. Global encrypted order channel load exceeds threshold by 500. Main server backup bandwidth about to run out. Real-time order data stream impacts Switzerland's Lord Rogers custom 2 units Castle Bastion edition interior requiring medieval cellar style integrated with top-tier intelligent system 600 premium. Deposit 800 million confirmed received. Siberian Oligarch Ivanov 3 units Polar Titan reinforced edition full vehicle covered with nano-simulated Siberian White Tiger fur pattern platinum plating with custom polar survival equipment package. 800 premium full payment in advance. North America Deep Blue Technology Kane 5 units Future Arc edition requiring deep integration of its Skynet AI system and open core sensor data interface encryption protocol to be negotiated. 450 premium 2 billion earnest money locked in protocol channel. Southeast Asia Chen's Shipping Family Maritime Mobile Fortress Sea Abyss Halberd Custom Project initiated preliminary budget 3.5 billion. Data stream refreshing crazily units jumping from billions to tens of billions. The global wealth map in Xingxuan's view fluctuated violently due to this Pan Shi. Preliminary statistics dynamic total effective orders exceed 35 billion. Core bottleneck warning capacity. Capacity. Current maximum production 10 units per month, order delivery cycle pushed to 3 years later. Risk customer churn rate estimated over 70. Capital chain break risk high. The golden desert sun was still scorching, but Lin Feng felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. He stood in the vortex where immense success and even greater crisis intertwined, looking at this platinum beast that symbolized a stage victory. 3 months of painstaking effort cleaving through the clouds of technology from a desperate situation had won this glorious gilt ticket, but now it weighed as heavy as shackles. The avalanche of orders was not the end, but a monstrous wave that could instantly lift the newborn Lin family to a pedestal or drag it into the abyss of debt the next second. There was no ecstasy on his face, only a deep calm like a still pool. Beneath that calm lay a gravity deeper than the desert, a sober awareness of the hundredfold responsibility suddenly pressing on his shoulders, and a more resilient strength accumulating under the belief of hard bones, like the movement of tectonic plates. A will to forge even this monstrous wave into a staircase leading to the stars. The noisy crowd clustered around the satisfied crown prince as he left. Lin Feng walked alone toward Panshir. Out of everyone's sight, he extended his hand and gently pressed it against the side armor where the explosion had left a sooty shallow dent. The metal was scorching hot under the sun to touch, like caressing a metal still hot from the forge. The slight undulations beneath his fingertips were the traces of battle, the proof of survival. Xingxuan's blue projection silently emerged beside him like the most loyal sentinel. Xingxuan, Lin Feng's voice was low like grinding stone with an undeniable penetrating power. Highest priority task: change, lift all budget restrictions on non-core RD. Target within 3 months monthly production capacity of Panshir to exceed 50 units. Initiate first phase budget for Deep Space Equipment Division Authority Level S. Additionally, he lifted his head, his gaze crossing the scorching desert horizon toward the eastern sky where under the blazing sun the faint hook-like crescent moon was already visible. Prepare a draft of initial parameter requirements for the core shelter of the Jinghai base. Focus lunar extreme temperature cycle resistance, 200C, micrometeoroid impact protection velocity above 10 kilometers, and anti-solar wind particle high-frequency energy erosion solutions. Send anonymously to Dr. Qin Mingwei at the CSC Frontier Materials Institute. Subject: discussion on the basic protection efficiency of extraterrestrial survival structures. Note: for academic exchange only. Command confirmed. Xingxuan's blue light flowed steadily. Data encryption level fortress grade. Send countdown 10 seconds. The faint light of successful transmission flickered on Xingxuan's surface and disappeared. Lin Feng withdrew his hand, his fingertips still seeming to retain the heat of the armor and the coldness of the moonlight. The golden sea of sand stretched endlessly, and Panshir stood like a steel beacon upon it. He knew that the foundation of the Panshir beneath his feet was already solid, and the real war with the immense opportunities and terrifying pressures brought by the avalanche of orders had just begun. His battlefield was no longer confined to this desert, nor even to this planet. The future of the Lin family, humanity's deep space dreams, and the subtle yet resilient bond between him and Qin Mingwei, built on cold chips and deep space ideals, would all undergo even harsher tempering under that cold, brilliant starry sky. Faith is like steel, the path ahead is like a furnace, and he was ready to throw himself into it again. On the immense circular arc screen of the Central Command Center, the dazzling stream of order data had been replaced by a series of real-time surveillance feeds. Brand new automated production lines operated like a precision steel forest. High-precision robotic arms traced cold arcs. Enormous laser cutters spewed piercing blue light. Everything was efficient, cold, and conformed to the highest standards optimized by Xingxuan. Yet Lin Feng's gaze pierced through this frigid tableau of efficiency, settling on a magnified surveillance image tucked away in a corner of the workshop. There it was, the completely revamped production line for the rock core chassis bearing. Rows of brand new CNC machining centers stood tall, gleaming with a hard metallic luster. But amidst these modern behemoths, a fully refurbished, freshly repainted military green, yet still bearing the marks of age and some original markings, a Type 59 special heavy-duty lathe, stood steadily like an old general clad in new armor. Beside the lathe, a stooped yet remarkably upright figure was meticulously wiping every button and lever on the control panel with a chamois cloth soaked in special machine oil. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, falling on his graying hair and his hands, covered in age spots yet steady and strong, and on his faded threadbare dark blue work uniform, washed clean but with frayed cuffs. It was Old Li. Lin Feng tapped his finger lightly on the console. The image zoomed in instantly. Old Li's wiping movements were exquisitely precise, carried out with an almost devout focus. His wrinkled face bore no extraneous expression, but his eyes were as sharp as ever, as if he were maintaining a legendary heirloom firearm. After wiping the panel, he picked up a specially made long-handled brush, reached into the complex transmission gaps deep inside the lathe, and carefully swept away fine metal shavings. Every movement carried the instinctive rhythm accumulated over decades, a profound understanding and respect for the life of the machine. Director Lee, a young engineer, hurried over with a tablet, his tone tinged with the awkwardness of a newcomer. These are the latest process parameters optimized by Xingxuan. The tolerance for the outer diameter fine-tuning of the bearing is required to be 0.003 mm, which is tighter than before. Old Lee paused, not immediately looking at the tablet. He turned his head, his murky yet sharp eyes fixed on the young man, and extended his oil-stained hand, pointing to an inconspicuous metal nameplate beside the lathe. On it, besides the lathe model, a new line of characters was engraved. Precision is life, safety is the soul. 7th Armored Division, Lin's Deep Space Equipment Division. I understand the parameters. Old Lee's voice was hoarse but clear. Xingxuan calculates accurately, but the machine is run by people. He picked up an old, well-polished micrometer from the nearby workbench, its massive body nearly as long as a young man's forearm. See this caliper? It's been with me for 30 years, older than Xingxuan itself. It measured the turret rings of Type 59 tanks, measured target plates that took artillery shells on the Gobi Desert. Now it measures your new bearings. His rough finger tapped the tablet screen. Xingxuan tells you how many passes to make. This caliper, these ears tell you whether the machine is eating smoothly, whether the bones are straight. A hair's breadth off, and it's scrap metal. Scrap metal installed on a vehicle cost lives on the battlefield. Same in the workshop. The young engineer looked at the micrometer in Old Lee's hand, then at the cold parameters on the screen, and then at the silent Type 59 lathe. The awkwardness in his eyes gradually faded, replaced by a deeper seriousness and contemplation. He no longer urged, but instead carefully watched, as Old Lee input Xingxuan's parameters into the lathe control system, then stood aside, earnestly observing how Old Lee, relying on experience and intuition, fine-tuned the feed rate and coolant flow. In the command center, Lin Feng watched this scene. The taut line of his mouth relaxed almost imperceptibly. He picked up the internal communication device. Personnel department, notify all rehired personnel on the first list. Gather in the foundation area of Workshop 2 in half an hour. He'll be there in person. Yes, Mr. Lin. Half an hour later, in the specially designated foundation area of Workshop 2, a zone symbolizing the group's roots. There were no brand new machines here, but rather displays of old equipment components that marked milestones in Lin's history, along with safety case study boards. Dozens of former employees who had been called back gathered here. Their expressions varied. Some were grateful for the generous severance they had received when leaving, as some were disheartened for being eliminated by automation. Others were skeptical about Lin's future. They wore a mix of clothing, a stark contrast to the new employees in crisp uniform attire. Lin Feng was not in a suit. He was still in a dark gray work uniform, just like the one Old Lee wore. He walked to the front of the crowd, his gaze slowly sweeping over every face, familiar or unfamiliar. Without pleasantries, his voice was steady and forceful. 3 months ago, Lin's was on the verge of death. I offered severance packages higher than the industry standard in 8 and asked everyone to leave. That was not abandonment. It was giving everyone a better way out at the time. He paused, his gaze cutting through the crowd like a physical force. Today I ask you to come back. Not because Lin's is now rich and drowning in orders. He turned sideways, pointing to the massive rock chassis component display area. Behind him, the cold, heavy steel, exuding an oppressive sense of power. It's because these orders, this rock enterprise needs something. Backbone. Lin's unyielding backbone. It needs the reverence for precision and the stubborn commitment to safety that you people ground out over decades with these old machines, with your hands, with your experience. That's a soul that cannot be bought with new machines and new data. The crowd stirred, and many old employees' eyes lit up. Coming back today means different positions, different compensation. Lin Feng's voice was resolute. For technical backbone, returning, the compensation will be based on the original severance, plus a rehiring allowance matching the salaries of top industry technical experts. No upper limit. Experienced old technicians returning will serve as safety supervisors, quality inspectors, mentors for newcomers, with salaries far exceeding industry standards and enjoying special group allowances. Even for workers returning to basic positions, Lin Feng's gaze fell on a few ordinary operators who had left due to automation upgrades. As long as you come back, a special signing bonus will be issued immediately, equal to 3 months of your base salary. Additionally, your salary will be increased by 50 from the original, and you will be included in the Foundation Talent Development Program with priority access to skill upgrade channels. The crowd erupted. A signing bonus. Salaries far exceeding peers. This completely overturned their expectations. Especially the few ordinary operators, their faces full of shock and disbelief. Lin Feng ignored the commotion. He walked to a long table that had been prearranged, covered with red velvet. On the table were not luxurious signing pens, but rows of brand new tool kits printed with Lin's new logo and the words Foundation Heritage. Inside the kits were carefully selected top-quality basic tools, a file, a caliper, a wrench, and a specially bound copy of Lin's safety manual and veteran craftsman experience notes. The personnel director stepped forward with documents. Please all returning colleagues come forward to sign the rehiring agreement. The crowd hesitated. At that moment, Old Lee pushed through from the back of the crowd. He was still wearing his oil-stained, old work uniform. He walked to the table. He didn't even glance at the gilded pen, instead he extended his calloused hand, with oil still embedded in his fingernails, and took the brand-new file from the toolkit. He gently rubbed the sharp teeth of the file with his fingertip as if sensing its character. Then he picked up the pen handed by the personnel director, didn't even look at the tempting numbers on the agreement, flipped directly to the last page, and in the signature space, he wrote with force stroke by stroke the 3 vigorous characters Liwegwa. Putting down the pen, he picked up the toolkit, hugged it tightly to his chest, turned around, and nodded firmly to Lin Feng and to everyone watching him. His murky eyes glowed with an almost sacred light. This gesture, this look spoke louder than 1,000 words. The crowd seemed ignited. Those hesitant old employees stepped forward one after another. No one cared about the luxury of the signing pen. Many, like Old Lee, first picked up the tool, felt it, as if confirming the weight of the contract, then solemnly signed their names and cherished their own toolkits. The few ordinary operators also pushed forward. Their hands trembled slightly as they picked up the toolkits. When they signed their names and took the agreement representing compensation far beyond expectations, a middle-aged man's eyes instantly reddened. He wiped his face hard and bowed deeply toward Lin Feng. Lin Feng stood still watching this scene. He didn't smile, but the icy heaviness deep in his eyes seemed to melt a little, revealing a trace of profound warmth and resolve. This was not generosity. It was an investment in the foundation, a transmission of the steel seal. Zingshuan's cold data could optimize processes, but guarding the soul of precision is life behind those processes required these hands and hearts marked by time. The golden rays of the setting sun slanted through the high workshop windows, spilling onto the brand new equipment, onto the old employees clutching their toolkits with excited and hopeful faces, and onto Lin Feng's dark gray work uniform. In the distance, the refurbished Type 59 lathe stood silent in the sunset, its military green seeming to be coated in molten gold. Xingshuan, Lin Feng murmured in his mind. Foundation Heritage Plan Phase 1 complete. Initiate Phase 2, add veteran craftsman inspection points on all production lines, grant rehired supervisors veto power over safety and quality. Simultaneously interface with Dr. Qin's team to use the rock ground extreme environment test data package as the initial parameters for the Still C project's impact resistance model. Command confirmed. Zingshuan's blue light flowed steadily on his wrist. Data encryption transmission initiated. Recipient of initial parameters for Still C project, Qin Minghua. Lin Feng's gaze once again fell on the Type 59 lathe and the silhouette of Old Lee instructing a newcomer in the sunset. The tidal wave of orders still raged, and the pressure of production capacity hung like a sword overhead. But he knew that when the rock steel flood truly integrated these weathered, yet ever tougher backbones, and when the steel seal of safety and precision was passed from Old Lee's hands to the next generation, only then would Lin's great ship truly possess the immortal engine to sail into the deepest reaches of the starry sea. The furnace fire burns endlessly because of heritage. The main venue of the CESC annual work conference featured a lofty dome with a deep blue carpet spreading like a star chart beneath the colossal corporate emblem, exuding a solemn and dignified atmosphere. On the podium, the top executives took their seats in order. Qin Minghua sat in a prominent position in the technical core area, dressed in an exquisitely tailored sleek dark blue suit that radiated professionalism and competence without excess. She did not deliberately straighten her back, yet her serene, still gaze and slightly pursed lips revealed a restrained focus and readiness to act. When the large screen played the annual technical breakthrough review, freezing on the image of the Jinghai project team successfully printing large structural components with simulated lunar regolith, and the real-time data stream of the twin loop maintaining pure air in the simulation chamber, Qin Minghua's fingers on her knees curled, almost imperceptibly, her knuckles whitening slightly. It was not tension, but the trace of a surging force forcibly restrained. Particularly commendable is the Jinghai Lunar Outpost pre-research project team. The group president's voice boomed with undisguised approval. Under the leadership of Dr. Qin Minghua, they have not only made major breakthroughs in fundamental scientific fields such as in situ lunar material application and extreme temperature differential protection, but their core achievement, the twin-loop, closed-loop life support system, has also set an astonishing record in simulated tests, maintaining excellent air quality for 180 consecutive days with zero external resupply and full system self-sufficiency. This is not only a technological milestone, but also a solid step for humanity toward long-term extraterrestrial survival. The spotlight instantly focused on Qin Minghua. She rose slowly, walked steadily to the podium. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience, mingled with exclamations and complex gazes. She accepted the Pioneer Gold Medal symbolizing CASC's highest technical honor, paused briefly, then bowed deeply to the audience. Her eyes were clear and resolute, as if the heavy medal was merely a stepping stone toward a more distant goal. As the meeting drew to a close, the core agenda, personnel appointments and strategic deployment, commenced. The group president personally read out, based on Comrade Qin Mingyue's outstanding contributions in cutting-edge deep space technologies, exceptional leadership, and profound insights into future strategic directions. After research and decision by the party committee of the group, the venue instantly fell silent, so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Appoint Comrade Qin Mingyue as director of the Deep Space Strategy and Technology Department Deputy Bureau. At the same time, officially launched the group's strategic commercial project, Project Stellar Haven. Appoint Comrade Qin Mingyue as the chief officer of Project Stellar Haven, fully overseeing the design, construction, and operation of the near-Earth orbit commercial residential space station. Whoosh! Applause and low gasps erupted simultaneously. At just over 30 years of age, she had leaped to the helm of a core department and was now entrusted with an unprecedented aerospace project directly targeting the commercial market. This was not only a display of trust, but also the handing over of the future aerospace commercial engine to this young female scientist. After the meeting, the crowd streamed out like a tide. Qin Mingyue did not leave with the others. Instead, she was gently guided by the president's secretary, Director Qin, the president, and consultant Zhou. Request your presence in the Deep Space Strategy Demonstration Hall. Pushing open the heavy soundproof door, her eyes widened. This space was nothing like a traditional conference room. It resembled the bridge of a starship. A massive curved screen occupied most of the wall, slowly rotating a huge and intricate space structure model. The core of Project Stellar Haven, a near-Earth orbit space station composed of multiple modular cabin segments featuring a giant transparent dome observation deck. The group president and the highly respected former chief engineer, old consultant, Zhou, an old friend of Qin Weiguo, were already seated at the arc-shaped conference table that resembled a central control console. The president's gaze was deep and appraising. Zhou's eyes were warm with encouragement and a hint of barely perceptible concern. Sit, Mingyue. The president's voice was steady and forceful. Project Stellar Haven carries immense significance. Tell me your thoughts. How can we make this celestial palace not only stand upright, but also survive and thrive and be valuable? It must never become just a sky-high priced rich man's toy. Qin Mingyue did not answer immediately. She walked to the console and lightly swiped her fingers across the virtual. The enormous curved screen lit up instantly. The Stellar Haven model decomposed into details, and beside it a cascade of data streams scrolled down. She did not look at the screen. Instead, she turned to face the two decision-makers, her gaze blazing, her voice clear and full of power. Mr. President, Mr. Zhou, Stellar Haven is by no means a floating hotel. It is humanity's first true bridgehead for space commercialization, the key spark to ignite the deep space economic engine. Its core value lies in creating unique, irreplaceable space experiences and using the scarcity and influence of these experiences to leverage capital and in turn nourish the most cutting-edge frontier exploration of aerospace. She tapped lightly, and the screen zoomed in on a giant transparent dome module. Core experience won the eye of the firmament. This is the heart of Stellar Haven. It employs multi-layer composite high-strength transparent materials and intelligent dimming technology, offering a 360-degree unobstructed view. Guests staying here can not only enjoy the wonder of weightlessness, but also witness the magnificent curve of Earth, the dazzling dance of auroras, and the breathtaking majesty of sunrise. We will provide professional astronomical tours, time-lapse photography services, and even customize exclusive starry sky commemorative days, such as wedding anniversaries or corporate IPOs. Imagine overlooking your company's global layout from 400 kilometers above the Earth, a shock that no ground ceremony can match. She slid her finger, switching to another cabin. Core experience, 2 gravity creative space. This is tailored for artists, designers, and frontier scientists. In a microgravity environment, fluid art, material crystallization, and biological tissue culture will present revolutionary forms and aesthetics. We will collaborate with top art institutions and design schools to host the Space Art Biennale. We will provide long-term microgravity experimental platforms for materials scientists, charging high but significantly lower fees than independent launch of experimental modules. The image switched again, revealing a cabin brimming with technological flair. Core experience, 3 Life Science Frontier Station. Leveraging the twin-loop technology, this will become the optimal site for studying the effects of the space environment on human physiology, microbiomes, and novel drug responses. We will open some berths to top pharmaceutical companies for short-term, high-value experiments, e.g. studies on synthesis efficiency of special drugs under microgravity, while also offering customized high-end services like health monitoring and space adaptability enhancement, allowing wealthy individuals to spend money while contributing to the human health database. Core experience for the Stellar Haven Legacy Program. Qin Mingyue's tone grew more solemn. This is the soul of Stellar Haven. Each year we will allocate no less than 10 of our cabin resources to establish a Future Star scholarship selecting young people from around the world with outstanding potential in science, art, and engineering and sponsoring them for a one-week Stellar Haven experience. Dining with top scientists participating in small-scale science demonstrations, delivering their own space speech in the eye of the firmament. This is not merely a trip. It is a ritual to ignite the spark of exploration in the next generation. As for costs, Qin Mingyue shifted gears, confident and pragmatic. Stellar Haven's core competitiveness lies in modular design and technology reuse. She pulled up the technical structure diagram. 1. Standardization of core modules. Core modules like life support, energy, and docking adopt uniform standard design and manufacturing, significantly reducing per-unit costs and supporting future expansion. 2. Reuse of twin-loop technology. This technology has been validated and matured in the Jinghai project. Transplanting it to Stellar Haven saves massive R&D costs, and its high efficiency and reliability form the foundation for long-term operation. 3. Commercialization of Earth-to-orbit transportation. Establish strategic partnerships with several mature commercial space companies, such as SpaceX's Starship system, Blue Origin's New Glenn, etc., leveraging their increasingly mature reusable launch capabilities to significantly reduce the cost of transporting people and supplies. 4. Diversified revenue model. Besides high accommodation fees, bespoke luxury packages, experimental platform rental fees, pharmaceutical companies, research institutions, we also design real-time Earth connection live streaming service, free mass viewing of Stellar Haven life snippets, and real-time views from the eye of the firmament. Space souvenir economy artworks manufactured in microgravity, special material products, Stellar Haven certified image materials, etc. Brand naming and sponsorship. Naming rights for core modules and experience projects with top-tier brands will be a huge revenue source. Stellar Haven's profitability will no longer rely on government appropriations, but will form a self-sustaining, virtuous commercial ecosystem. The demonstration hall fell into silence. On the massive screen, the blueprint of Stellar Haven shone brightly, every experiential detail and every cost control point clear and compelling. The president's gaze evolved from initial scrutiny to gradually brightening focus. His fingers tapped unconsciously on the table, as if calculating enormous commercial potential. Old consultant Zhou was so excited that he leaned forward slightly, his eyes shimmering with a light unseen for years, the same radiance he had when witnessing Qin Weiguo sketching blueprints long ago. Excellent. A fine bridgehead, a fine spark. The president slapped the table, his voice brimming with exhilaration. Mingyue, your blueprint is not only clear, but also brimming with commercial wisdom. Bold. Pragmatic. The group fully supports Project Stellar Haven. If you need people, we give people. If you need resources, we give resources. Old consultant Zhou also stood up, walked to Qin Mingyue, and pressed his wrinkled hand heavily onto her shoulder with steady force. Mingyue, you have already gone further than your father did in his day, and you better understand how to let ideals take root in the soil of reality. Stellar Haven is not just a space station. It is a ladder connecting the stars to the mortal world. Go ahead and do it. Turn this deep space city from blueprint into reality. We old bones are waiting to see it light up, a new beacon of human civilization in orbit. He paused, a mischievous glint in his eyes. By the way, isn't Lin Feng's Panshir known as a military-grade tough nut? For Stellar Haven's ground command center and VIP launch support zone, I think you can chat with him about cooperation standards. Qin Mingyue felt the heavy weight and warmth on her shoulder, the infinite trust and entrustment from her predecessors. She took a deep breath. The deep autumn sky outside the window seemed to reflect in her eyes. Yes, Mr. President. Uncle Zhou. Project Stellar Haven mission guaranteed. Humanity's journey to the stars and seas needs such as Stellar Haven to connect dreams and reality. Her voice was crisp and resolute, echoing through this futuristic demonstration hall. At this moment, she was not only a scientist, but also a governor of Stellar Haven, holding a blueprint about to build a new home for humanity above the firmament. And faraway Lin Feng, along with the solid earth beneath his feet, called Panshir, seemed to converge silently with this brilliant Stellar Haven blueprint on the tracks of destiny. The winter sunlight slanted through the towering skylights of the rock assembly plant, their frames studded with photovoltaic panels casting a geometric interplay of light and shadow across the newly mirror-like floor. The air carried the faint distinctive scent of cooled premium synthetic lubricant, the lingering ozone of laser welding, and an almost vacuum-like cleanliness unique to environments of extreme precision. On the production line, chassis of the rock, gleaming with bare metal like steel beasts being nurtured, glided silently to their assembly stations, transported by efficient automated guided vehicles, AGVs, with pinpoint accuracy. Arms of machinery like a forest danced with cold elegance. Arrays of high-definition cameras glowed with a dim light, like electronic compound eyes overseeing the work. Yet what drew the eye most were the special workstations along the line. At every critical quality control point stood an independent bench marked with a military green insignia. Upon the bench lay not the latest instruments, but a set of files, micrometers, and lever dial indicators, precision tools with a somewhat antique air. Stationed there without exception were veteran engineers with graying hair dressed in neatly pressed, but clearly faded old work uniforms. Some had once been top-tier fitters known as King, others were seasoned inspection experts. Now they served not as operators, but as living gatekeepers of precision and safety. Hands covered in calluses with knuckles swollen and deformed held traditional tools steadily. They performed the most primitive yet most exacting rechecks on critical components already machined by younger workers using advanced equipment. Fingers traced the surface texture, ears leaned close to bearings to catch the faint whisper of rotation, eyes sharp as eagles sought the slightest deviation in machining marks under the light. Their movements were calm and focused, bearing a ritualistic quality etched into their very bones. And such scenes were not unique to Lin Corporation. Master Jean, could you please check the coaxiality of this main bearing housing again? A young CNC operator respectfully presented a freshly machined component to a veteran master with reading glasses, frayed, yet impeccably clean cuffs. Master Zhang said nothing, picked up his cherished antique micrometer, smoothly fitted it to each critical position, his brow slightly furrowed, as he felt the feedback from the tool's tips. After a long moment he nodded, and with an oily thumb pointed to an inconspicuous handwritten Zhang mark beside the qualified data displayed on the instrument panel, precise. Xiao Lu, your work gets better and better. He patted the young man's shoulder, his eyes full of gratification. This scene was clearly captured by a young online blogger who stood in the designated visitor area live stream. Folks, did you see that? That's the legendary human-machine double check. These veteran masters' hands and ears are better than precision instruments. The Zhang mark is a gold seal of approval, bypassing reinspection. These are the stars we should follow, hardcore craftsman stars. The live stream was instantly flooded with comments, tears. This is the true spirit of industry. My dad is a rehired veteran. He just won the factory's Golden Wrench trophy yesterday. The rehire torch, lit by Lin Corporation half a year ago during its life and death struggle, had long surpassed corporate self-rescue, igniting a revival of master artisans, sweeping the entire Western industrial belt. Those veteran masters, once marginalized during industry upgrades, carrying experience honed even more precious by time and an obsession with safety precision ingrained in their bones, were now revered guests at various suppliers and partner companies. Photos of their rehire signing bonuses, far exceeding industry norms, and honorary appointment certificates flooded moments. Their group photos holding Golden Wrench and Silver Caliper trophies became the most striking image on corporate websites. Short videos of them guiding young workers in traditional techniques to calibrate precision instruments easily garnered millions of views. Some even erected large sculptures titled Inheritance Artisan Heart in city squares modeled after a veteran model worker over 70 and lured back by a bearing factory as its supreme consultant with a hefty package wept during an interview. I thought these old bones were useless, that all I could do was look at old photos. It's Lin Corporation, President Lin, and many factories like ours that let us old-timers know these hands, this experience, still useful. We can still make good things for our country. These heartfelt words were repeatedly cited at the annual Economic Forum, becoming the best annotation for the integration of new productive forces with traditional craftsmanship. The roar of the rock faded in the assembly plant. Passing through several heavy soundproof and blast-proof doors reminiscent of bank vaults, the air turned sharply cool and clear, carrying a cold metallic scent mixed with unfamiliar composite materials. This was Lin Corporation's most core secret, the Deep Space Equipment Division DP. Unlike the brilliant hustle of the rock workshop, the DEP test area resembled a vast futuristic cavern. A colossal vacuum simulation chamber stood in the center like a silent prehistoric egg. Tall cryogenic liquid nitrogen pipes coiled around complex test rigs. On the walls hung massive holographic screens displaying complex stress distribution models of a lunar base constructed by Xingxuan, with blue and red data streams cascading like waterfalls. Lin Feng stood in the heart of this domain where ice and fire intermingled. He still wore a dark gray work uniform, sleeves slightly rolled up, revealing sturdy forearms. He ignored the dazzling data streams, instead focusing on a half-meter-tall metal skeleton model on the workbench before him, the core transmission component prototype of the Lunar Foundation construction platform, just completed by Old Lee's team. Its lines were rugged, the structure seemingly heavy, yet it exuded a reassuring solidity akin to a tank. The head of DP Zhou Zhan, Old Lee's capable protege, and a former chief engineer on a key national aerospace project, pointed to a critical joint on the model. President Lin, following your requirement of military-grade redundancy plus 3 notches, the strength factor here reached 280 of conventional spacecraft standards, but the weight nearly doubled. Zingshuan's calculations show it's acceptable under lunar low gravity, but for launch capacity, not enough. Lin Feng interrupted, his voice low, but resonant, like struck metal. He reached out his finger, the tip calloused, and lightly tapped that joint, as if feeling the metal's pulse, and what we're building is not an orbiter, not a lunar rover. It's the foundation for humanity's permanent stay on the moon. The baseplate of the first star harbor. Its standard is not adequate. It must stand unshaken under any imaginable extreme, super moonquakes, giant meteorite impacts, once-in-a-century, solar storm particle bombardments. He lifted his head, his gaze piercing through the cold experimental equipment toward the void of the moon. Redundancy. Our Lin Corporation's definition is to inscribe the genes of a fortress into every weld seam. Weight can be optimized, but the baseline of structural reliability, not a single step back. His voice echoed through the empty test area, filled with unshakable authority. Over these 6 months, leading Lin Corporation through the storm of orders and achieving the dual rebirth of technology and human spirit had crystallized into a deep, almost tangible aura around him. It was the hardness and calm forged through the furnace. The moment his words fell, the security lock on the side door of the test area emitted a soft click. Lin Feng instinctively looked toward the sound. A figure stood at the door. The winter wind lifted a few strands of her hair, and her fair face bore a slight flush from rushing over. She wore a clean, crisp, long cream-white down jacket, the collar of a research institute's white lab coat visible inside. It was Qin Minghua. Time seemed to freeze. Lin Feng's gaze pulled from the blueprints of deep space, and cold metal unexpectedly collided with those eyes so familiar. Half a year apart, separated by a vast ocean of orders, heavy scientific tasks, and complex Earth-Moon maps. All the longing, worry, weariness of fighting alone, and the unquenched flame of their ideals, poured out fiercely in that instant of eye contact, then dissolved into profound silence upon touching. No words were spoken. Any language seemed pale and redundant in that moment. Qin Minghua stood still, her clear eyes gazing deeply into Lin Feng's. She saw the deeper restraint and fine lines of fatigue etched on his brow compared to half a year ago, and also the light of conviction in his eyes, like the armor of the rock, made even more brilliant through countless trials. That light burned warmly into her heart. Lin Feng's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He looked at her face, slightly thinner but more resolute, and saw the fervent glow in her eyes, familiar yet brighter and fiercer than half a year ago, as if bearing the weight and brilliance of the entire Star Harbor. The next second, almost simultaneously, they stepped toward each other. Their paces grew faster, more determined. Against the cold, magnificent backdrop of DP, under the mixed gazes of Zhou Jin, Old Li, and others, expressions of understanding, surprise, and gratification, and witnessed by Zingshuan's silent blue data streams, Lin Feng opened his arms. Qin Minghua did not hesitate. She stepped into his embrace. They held each other tightly. This was not a graceful embrace from a romantic movie. Lin Feng's hug was firm and powerful as a rock, carrying the cold scent of machine oil and metal from work, yet also containing a cherishing longing that seemed to want to press her into his very bones. Qin Mingyu's slender yet resilient arms wrapped tightly around his broad back, her soft body in the down jacket trembling slightly, as if finding its ultimate haven, her face buried deep in the hollow of his shoulder. The coarse fabric of his work suit rubbed against her cheek, bringing a strange, reassuring sting. All the fatigue, anxiety, and heavy burdens seemed to melt away and be sealed off in that burning silence. Only the steady thumping of each other's hearts and the warmth of their bodies pierced through every barrier, declaring the reality of their existence. They held each other like that in the center of the cold test area at the starting point of the Sea of Stars. Not a word was said, yet it spoke volumes. They felt the weighty missions on each other's shoulders. She forged the Star Harbor. For humanity, he solidified the unshakable lunar foundation for the Star Harbor. They were each other's quietest harbor in the storm, the firmest anchor and beacon on the road to the Sea of Stars. It felt like an eternity, yet only a fleeting moment. Finally, Qin Minghua slightly lifted her head, her eyes still rimmed with red, a smile as pure and brilliant as the sun breaking through clouds. Her voice was a little hoarse, yet cut through the surrounding silence crystal clear. Lin Feng, I have a big order that only the Deep Space Equipment Division can handle. The standard. Exactly what you just said. Fortress-level redundancy. Let's see how to connect your foundation to my Star Harbor. Lin Feng looked down, staring into her clear eyes, reflecting his own figure, where the familiar, undying flame of their ideals burned. The hand around her waist tightened slightly, and a deep, warm smile finally rippled in his profound eyes. Always at your service, Chief Engineer Qin. Star Harbor, Lunar Palace. Our journey has just begun. Their gazes met again, and the unspoken vow forged in the furnace's flame was already etched into their shared voyage among the stars. The autumn rain lashed against the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows of the Wayland Group headquarters, cold as tears. Inside the conference room, the air was as heavy as lead. On the massive financial data screen, a scarlet negative growth curve gaped like the wound of a dying beast, a shocking sight. The shareholders' roars and accusations struck like icy bullets at the ashen-faced CEO Charles Wayland. Charles, look at this. Lynn's orders are booked 3 years out. Our market share has been crushed to under 5%. The stock price has been halved. Is this the Wayland you lead? Bedrock. Huh. Those data are too as perfect as a sci-fi movie. I strongly suspect those so-called extreme tests are elaborate frauds. They can't possibly build a fortress of that caliber. This is fraud. They must be exposed. Charles Wayland's clenched fists turned white at the knuckles, a wild, trapped animal madness flickering in his eyes. He shot to his feet, his voice hoarse, yet laced with a desperate ferocity. Quiet. It's time to burst Lynn's bubble. We have some evidence. Initiate Project Shadow. Use every resource. I want the bedrock myth to crumble before the whole world. Overnight, a storm erupted. Global mainstream financial media, social platforms, and tech forums, as if controlled by an invisible hand, were flooded with in-depth analysis reports and anonymous expert testimonies. Exclusive exposed major evidence of tampering in Lynn's bedrock blast test footage. The real impact force was severely downplayed. Former Lynn engineer leaks fatal flaw in the core layer of the composite armor. Long-term use could cause structural collapse. Physics expert questions bedrock's advertised life support duration grossly violates the law of energy conservation. Pure science fiction. The core argument was unified. Lynn Foam was a con artist. Bedrock was an overpriced emperor's new clothes. They called for global customer boycotts, returns, and investigations. The storm of public opinion, like a tsunami, instantly thrust Lynn onto the turbulent crest. Doubt, abuse, and mockery flooded the internet. Some wavering clients began to hesitate, demanding re-inspections. Rivals seized the chance to kick them while they were down. Lynn's stock price plummeted, market confidence shattered. At Lynn Group headquarters in the Central Command Center, the massive circular screen displayed the black churning tide of Wayland's manufactured crisis. The executives wore grim faces. The atmosphere was oppressive. Zhao Dikun wiped cold sweat, his voice trembling. President Lynn, we must hold a press conference immediately to clarify. Hire a top law firm to sue Wayland for libel. Or else. Clarify. Sue. Lynn Foam stood before the console, back to them, his voice terrifyingly calm. He looked at the vicious accusations on the screen, his eyes devoid of anger, holding only an icy, steel-tempered stillness. Wayland's struggle in his eyes was merely the desperate thrashing of a dying beast. He turned slowly, his gaze sweeping over the anxious faces, finally settling on the Starworld projection floating beside him. Starworld Inferno Furnace Test Site, Ultimate Fortress Mode, full system self-check. Command confirmed. Bedrock Fortress Mode activated. Energy core full power. Life support full closed loop. Defense systems maximum alert. Self-check completion 100. Status ready. A cold light flashed in Lynn Foam's eyes, his voice suddenly rising, striking like a hammer blow through the command center. Notify global media. Launch the Bedrock Solitary Fortress global live stream. Time now. Location Inferno Furnace. Host Lynn Foam. Content 1 month of solitary survival. Uninterrupted. Accept any form of Inferno level environmental challenge. Stream on all major platforms. Doesn't Wayland want the truth? He'll give them the rawest, cruelest truth. The command exploded like thunder. The entire command center fell into dead silence. Everyone was stunned by the sheer audacity of the plan. 1 month. Solitary. Accept any challenge. It was a suicidal counterattack. The Inferno Furnace test site was a vast basin in an uninhabited western region. Now a colossal bedrock stood silently in the center, transformed into its ultimate fortress mode. The chassis was weighted and anchored. The armor modules expanded into a more stable polygonal structure with a small weather radar and communication antenna array rising from the top, like a miniature steel city. Screens worldwide went black for an instant, then lit up with a high-definition image. Lynn Foam's face appeared before the camera, the backdrop the simple tech-filled main control room of the Bedrock Fortress. He wore plain dark work clothes, his face devoid of any tension or performance, only a calm as deep as an abyss. I am Lynn Foam. For the next 30 days, I will live alone in this Bedrock Fortress. The live stream is guaranteed by the Starworld system, unedited and uninterrupted. The external environment will be randomly generated by Starworld or accept designated challenges. The sole purpose to prove that Bedrock's survival promise is a vow forged in steel. His voice was clear, steady, carrying an undeniable strength. The live stream began. Over the next 30 days, the global audience witnessed an unprecedented survival broadcast. Climatic Inferno, Starworld manipulated the test site's climate, simulating Siberian extreme cold 52°C. The outside instantly froze while inside it remained a constant 26°C. Then it switched to Sahara heat surface 58°C. The air outside shimmered, yet the cabin was spring-like. Through level 12 sandstorms, the fortress stood rock solid, its air purification system maintaining an excellent rating. Geological catastrophes, a simulated magnitude 8 earthquake tore the earth, but internal monitors showed the vibrations dampened to harmless levels. A simulated flash flood and mudslide buried the lower half of the fortress in murky sludge, yet internal pressure held steady and life support functioned normally. Lethal assault on the 25th day at the request of an anonymous challenger, an explosive device meticulously calculated to simulate a high-explosive anti-tank HEAT warhead was detonated against the fortress side. Boom! A deafening roar. A blinding flash and rolling smoke instantly consumed the camera. The hearts of the global audience were in their throats. As the smoke slowly cleared, the side armor bore a distinct scorched and dinted area, the deepest crater clearly visible, but the armor was not penetrated. The main structure was completely intact. Even more astonishing, the livestream cut to the interior. Lin Feng sat calmly at the main console, a cup of hot coffee. Beside him the screen, displaying external impact analysis and internal structural stress data, all within safe thresholds. He even said to the camera, "Peak impact force met expectations. Structural redundancy is sufficient." The coffee didn't spill. Absolute solitude beyond meeting challenges. Lin Feng's daily routine, working, reading, even simple physical training, occurred under the gaze of billions. His composure, stability, and immense psychological strength displayed in absolute isolation and extreme threat became the most powerful testament to the bedrock spirit. 30 days. Unedited. Uninterrupted. Lin Feng, through his very existence, and the ironclad proof of the bedrock fortress standing unyielding against wave after wave of destructive blows, tore Weyland's carefully woven lies to shreds. At the moment the livestream ended, Lin Feng stepped out of the fortress standing in the clear cold winter sun and spoke a single sentence to the camera: "Facts speak louder than words. Lin Group forges only the truth." Weyland's propaganda offensive became a global laughingstock. Its stock price crashed again, its reputation was utterly bankrupt, and it faced class action lawsuits and severe regulatory investigations. Meanwhile, orders for Lin's bedrock did not decrease, but thanks to this world-shaking absolute fortress livestream, surged once more. Lin Group's prestige reached an unprecedented peak. 3 days after the livestream ended, Lin Group headquarters received a special delegation. The CASA president himself led the team, accompanied by the venerable consultant Zhou. A delegation of the high, without excessive pleasantries, in a simple, yet dignified conference room. A contract bearing the bright red seal of CEC was solemnly placed before Lin Feng. Strategic Cooperation Agreement on the Core Ground Support System for the Western Sky Dome Deep Space Exploration and Support Base, codename Western Star City. The president looked at Lin Feng with piercing eyes. "President Lin, your 1-month solitary fortress livestream shocked the world, and it shocked us. Your bedrock has proven Lin Group's absolute dominance in extreme environment survival assurance. Western Star City is our future core ground hub for deep space exploration, lunar base operations, and even the Mars mission. Its command center, energy station, core personnel, safety fortress, heavy equipment maintenance base. Require not just technology, but the absolute reliability and safety of bedrock. This order is yours and yours alone." The venerable consultant Zhou added with a smile, "That girl Mingwen never stops praising your deep space equipment standards in the Moon Palace project. She says the foundation Lin Group builds is the only one worthy of the starport she constructs." Lin Feng picked up the pen, his gaze sweeping over the weighty responsibility and trust in the contract. He looked up out the window. It was as if his gaze pierced through space, seeing the slender, resilient figure busy with the starport and Jinghai at CASA headquarters. The pen tip descended. He signed Lin Feng. At this moment, Lin Group, a traditional heavy industry company once on the verge of bankruptcy, formally etched its name as the cornerstone onto the grand blueprint of the nation's deep space strategy, Western Star City. And this cornerstone, together with the starport Qin Mingwei was building in the heavens, would support humanity's future journey to the stars, bridging the Earth and the Moon. Lin Feng's hand was firmly clasped with the CASA president's. Outside, the winter sunlight was perfect, as if gilding this historic cooperation in a brilliant golden glow. The smoke of commercial warfare dissipated. The journey of Lin and Mingwei had finally found its most solid point of convergence on the vast map of the Starry Sea. Brothers and sisters, this is the daily routine of Tianqiong City. See that? A rocket is taking off again. A live streamer with a hearty northeastern accent going by the handle Hanga Watching Sky was holding a stabilizer, the camera steadily aimed at the western horizon. In the background, a Zhuke-3 liquid oxygen methane rocket trailing a plume of azure plasma flame ascended smoothly. The thunderous roar, even kilometers away, shook the chest. Sunlight outlined its robust fuselage, the grid fins of the first stage booster clearly visible. See those two little wings? In a while, it'll fly back on its own and land at the recovery site to our west. This recovery technology is rock solid. Hang Guest's tone was brimming with pride. His camera switched nimbly on the street's sleek logistics drones with LiDAR sensors streamed continuously. Massive outdoor electronic screens broadcast the National College Future Vehicle Challenge held in the city's Central Park. On the racetrack, intelligent robots of various designs fiercely competed in cargo handling, while aerial drone swarms performed a formation light show. On the high-speed oval track, several streamlined smart electric race cars hugging the ground emitted sharp sonic booms, drawing gasps from the crowd. Look at this city. To the east, the high-speed maglev hub station, an egg-shaped structure absolutely stunning. It connects directly to all major cities across the country. The camera panned eastward. To the south, a dual-use military-civilian airport. Just now, a formation of Air Force J-20S was training. Isn't that awe-inspiring? On the civilian side, suborbital flights to Beijing and Shanghai depart every half hour. Look up at the sky. There's always something flying. Hang Gu tilted the camera toward the blue sky. Indeed, several suborbital passenger aircraft shaped like flying wings and bearing different airline logos streaked across the sky, with white condensation trails flying at altitudes far lower than the rocket, yet faster than sound. This is what interstellar city traffic should be like. A Tianqiong Express suborbital passenger plane, having taken off from the southern airport, was climbing. By the window, an aging energy engineer was returning to his hometown with his son. The child pressed his face against the porthole and exclaimed, "Wow. Dad, look. Huge solar panels. Like a silver ocean." The engineer looked down in the direction below the passenger plane. The city's magnificent skyline stretched across the Gobi backdrop, the main urban area dense, with towering buildings vibrant and alive. Beyond the city limits, past the foremost range of mountains north of the Star City, stood three giant silver lances pointing skyward, the aerospace magnetic rail platforms. Even more breathtaking was the sight. Seemingly endless arrays of deep blue solar panels covered vast expanses of land, reflecting dazzling sunlight interspersed with clusters of wind turbines like a white forest slowly turning their blades. "Those are the solar fields and windmill forests," the engineer said softly. "But they're not all." He pointed to several clusters of buildings designed with precise solemn forms, carefully placed within huge safety zones. "See those clusters of dark gray buildings with huge domes? Those are the heart that powers the Star City and the entire aerospace system, modular small-scale nuclear power plants. They are stable and powerful enough to support all the dreams of the city and the starry sky above." The child widened his eyes, pressing his face even tighter against the cold porthole, as if trying to imprint onto his mind the source of energy that propelled humanity toward the sea of stars. Inside the central command hall of the Star City Aerospace Control Center (SCC), the atmosphere was tense yet efficient. On the massive circular main screen, a global network map of launch trajectories was precisely displayed. Hundreds of numbered mission points were densely arranged on it, with annotations of precise launch windows, mission types, cargo, crew, living module, target orbits, lunar, and responsible personnel. Qin Mingyue, director of the CASC Deep Space Strategy Department, stood before the command console, her simple dark uniform accentuating her crisp efficiency. 10 years of experience had tempered the idealistic light in her eyes into an even firmer determination, adding a composed authority that commanded the whole scene. She fixed her gaze on the dozens of mission markers highlighted in red at the center of the big screen. "Director Wang, what's the status of the integration for the last 100 resupply and crew rotation launches in the Zhuke series?" Her voice was clear and cool, yet carried an inexplicable tenderness beyond the words. A seasoned aerospace expert with thinning hair but a vibrant spirit immediately reported, "Director Qin, the final 100 batches of launch plans are integrated. It involves the last ecological modules, scientific equipment, and the first 200 experienced officers' rotation living cabins for Starport. All will be executed from the 10 liquid oxygen methane CH-4 LOX rocket launch pads at our Western Star City. Of these, 80 batches will be handled by the Zhuke series and 20 by the Kunpeng series heavy rockets. The Xingchuan system has completed precise scheduling of the launch sequence. The theoretical minimum completion time, 93 hours and 26 minutes. Beginning with Zhuke 3041 at 6:00 tomorrow morning." A hint of barely concealed excitement colored his voice. "In the past decade, our liquid oxygen methane rocket technology has achieved unprecedented maturity. Engine efficiency improved by 15, first stage recovery success rate 98.7. At the 10 pads in the Western Zone, an average of 1.5 launches per day is already the norm. For these final 100 arrows, we have full confidence in flawless execution. We will ensure that Starport opens a new era of human habitation as planned early next month." Many young staff members in the hall had a glimmer of light in their eyes. "Very good." Qin Mingyue nodded in approval, a resolute curve lifting the corner of her lips. These 10 years were a milestone forged by the sweat and wisdom of countless aerospace workers like Director Wang. Yet in that moment of relief, the corner of her eye caught a flicker on the edge of the big screen. In an inconspicuous sub-monitoring window labeled Aerospace Magnetic Rail Platform No. 3, a string of tiny golden warning indicators for critical cooling system parameters flashed briefly. Her heart tightened slightly. She immediately issued a command to Xingxuan. Xingxuan retrieved the real-time status report for Sky Sword Platform No. 3 core superconducting magnetic field stability parameters. A sapphire blue Xingxuan hologram materialized beside her data streams, refreshing instantly. A cold voice echoed, command executed. Core superconducting magnetic field of Platform No. 3, current value stable at set point 99. 7. Cooling system circulation pump B3 unit flow measurement shows a minor perturbation fluctuation amplitude 0. 8 below the set alarm threshold 5. Xingxuan self-check in progress. No hardware fault detected. The data appeared perfectly normal, but Qin Mingyu's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. She had a natural sensitivity to numbers and absolute faith in Xingxuan's logic. A 0.8 fluctuation was indeed tiny, but occurring in a superconducting magnet that required extreme stability, especially at this critical juncture, it was abnormal. Without hesitation, she picked up an encrypted communicator, connect to Chief Lin Feng Panshur Heavy Industries Deep Space Equipment Department. The signal connected instantly. A small window opened on the main screen, displaying Lin Feng's image. He was in a makeshift command center filled with huge instrument panels, pipes, and engineering drawings. In the background, massive silver magnetic rail structures were faintly visible. Mingyue. Lin Feng's voice came through still steady as a mountain, but Qin Mingyue keenly caught a trace of fatigue and gravity in his eyes, along with the headline Emergency Maintenance Plan scrolling rapidly on the screen behind him. The cooling system fluctuation on Platform No. 3, I saw it. Qin Mingyue got straight to the point. Xingxuan reports no hardware fault. How is it on your end? Lin Feng paused for a second, his sharp gaze fixed on her. Xingxuan's self-check indeed found no hardware fault. But his tone grew heavier. The fluctuation is not coincidental. The engineering team detected extremely faint, but regular infrasonic resonance points on site. Source unknown. The most troubling part is that this faint fluctuation acts like a catalyst. After a routine maintenance reboot, just now a non-core superconducting coil experienced a local quantum flux jump. That caused an immediate quench of that coil. Fortunately, it was a backup, redundant line, and auto-switched off, leaving the main magnetic field unaffected. His words were like ice picks piercing the air. Quantum flux jump. That was the terrifying phenomenon where superconductors suddenly lose their superconducting property under a strong magnetic field, causing resistance to surge. If it occurred on a main coil chain, the entire platform could be paralyzed instantly. And the infrasonic resonance point of unknown origin was like a hidden viper. The quenched coil is isolated. But the problem isn't there. Lin Feng's brows were tightly knotted, his voice carrying an unprecedented tension. This damned infrasonic resonance point and the latent instability of quantum flux have formed a deadly coupling we never anticipated. Xingxuan is fully modeling to try to find an interference method. But the core issue is, as long as this unknown infrasound persists, the entire operation of Platform No. 3 carries enormous, unpredictable risk. He paused, his tone low and resolute. My recommendation is suspend all planned launch missions on Platform No. 3 and switch to comprehensive diagnostics and safety reinforcement mode. It will take at least 72 hours for an in-depth investigation. Otherwise, he didn't finish, but the consequences were self-evident. Qin Mingyu's heart sank. The final 100 batches of rocket launches to Starport required perfect coordination, ground support with the Aerospace Magnetic Rail Platform No. 3 was responsible for efficiently transporting some core supplies, especially precision instruments and time-sensitive equipment needing extremely fast deployment to Starport. Although rockets were the main force, the magnetic rail's high-frequency, low-cost, and rapid response capability were indispensable in the final sprint phase. A 72-hour standstill meant delays for certain key supplies, potentially forcing a postponement in the opening of some functional modules of Starport. More importantly, this was the first unscheduled interruption in the entire decade-long construction process. The whole world was watching. The command hall fell instantly silent. Everyone had heard Lin Feng's warning. The excitement on Director Wang's face froze, replaced by disbelief and anxiety. The flawless plan of 100 arrows had hit an unexpected stumbling block. Qin Mingyu's gaze swept across the 100 gleaming launch markers on the circular screen, then fell on Lin Feng's face, etched with gravity and resolve. Outside, the window sunlight bathed this steel city forged with a decade of effort. In the distance, tiny dark specks of engineering vehicles gathered near Platform No. 3 were just visible. That was the truest image of human intelligence facing the unknown, small but never retreating. She took a deep breath, the crisp air carrying the weight of responsibility. There was no panic, only a rock-solid resolve swiftly replacing the gravity in her eyes. President Lin, her voice rang out clearly, carrying a power to soothe, yet also an unshakable determination. I agree with your plan. Platform No. 3 immediately enters deep maintenance mode, safety first. Director Wong. Director Wong snapped to attention here. Activate backup plan B of the 100 Arrows project. Qin Mingwei spoke rapidly. Instantly assess the list of affected supplies. Prioritize time-sensitive materials. Coordinate the transport capacity of other rocket pads. If necessary, utilize the redundant capacity of the Zhuke and Kunping series to disassemble and integrate the lightweight high-precision equipment originally scheduled for magnetic rail launch, squeezing them into subsequent rocket batches. Even if it means a few hours delay in orbit insertion, ensure the overall plan is not postponed. Xingxuan. Here. Xingxuan's blue light flickered. Fully assist President Lin's team in modeling and analysis. Simultaneously intervene in the SCC's coordination of transport capacity with each launch site. I want an optimized adjustment plan within half an hour. She raised her head, her gaze seeming to pierce through the command hall's dome straight into the deep starry sky. The sky sword may be temporarily tarnished, but the road to starport will not be severed because of this. Rockets are still our most reliable arms. 10 launch pads, accumulated launches of over 200 arrows. How could such a small ripple stop humanity from knocking at the door of the Sea of Stars? The final 100 arrows must lift off as scheduled. The opening ceremony of starport will welcome humanity's first permanent residents right on time. Execute. The command was like thunder. The hall instantly shifted from brief shock to soaring battle spirit. Director Wong responded loudly, yes. We'll complete the mission. Fingers flew across the control consoles. The 100 launch markers representing humanity's starry mission began precise and resolute adjustments under the screen's coordination. On the final leg of humanity's march into the Sea of Stars, a battle against time and hidden risks had quietly erupted in this steel fortress named Star City. This city was both a starting point for mortals to gaze at the stars and a foundation for humanity to challenge the unknown cosmos with mortal strength.